Chapter 40-25. Isn't this the young man from the Hong Chamber of Commerce? How did he get beaten up like this? Ning Xuefei was shocked and confused. Because she wanted to buy the best elixirs from the Hong Chamber of Commerce, she had a deep impression of Hong Zhong and Lin Yi, especially Lin Yi, who had just fought with Zheng Tianjie during the day. Zheng Tianjie, a fool, was forced to buy a 10-piece set of casting equipment with a base price of only 10,000 spiritual jades at the sky-high price of 500,000 spiritual jades. Ning Xuefei was so amused that she almost went crazy on the spot. In Ning Xuefei's eyes, an idiot like Zheng Tianjie was not a good guy, while Lin Yi was a clever young man from the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Obviously he was not a bad guy. Could it be that someone is going to rob the best elixirs from the Hong Chamber of Commerce, so they want to force this young man to commit a crime, but this young man doesn't obey them and escapes desperately? Ning Xuefei's thoughts were so imaginative. She wanted to buy elixirs from the Hong Chamber of Commerce, so she thought that others were thinking the same thing. So in the blink of an eye, she had already imagined a thrilling chivalrous scene. From beginning to end she did not associate the loud noise with it. She thought it was just an ordinary earthquake in the far north island. She never thought that it was caused by something. Just when Ning Xuefei was fantasizing, there was a sudden knock on the door, followed by the voice of the Northern Guard. "You inside, open the door. We are the Northern Guard and we suspect that an assassin has sneaked in." "Hey, I'm taking a shower. What do you want?" Ning Xuefei wrinkled her nose and shouted discontentedly. Hearing this answer, the man at the door suddenly hesitated, but he seemed to be unwilling to give up. But another man's voice sounded next to him. "Pockmark, forget it. This is Miss Ning's boudoir in West Island. How dare you check it? Do you want to die?" "Yes, this is a big shot in West Island. Even Steward Song has to welcome her with a smile. This room is specially prepared for Miss Ning. No one else is allowed to stay here. We can't afford to offend her. Besides, we can't be sure that there is an assassin in here. Maybe your eyes were playing tricks on you." The other Northern Garrison guards also tried to persuade him. Finally, the Northern Guards gave up on the idea of searching the house. They apologized to Ning Xuefei through the door and left for the scene. Ning Xuefei heaved a sigh of relief when she heard the voices outside the door gradually fade away. Looking down at Lin Yi in his bathtub, he shook his head speechlessly. "This guy can't drown here, can he? How am I supposed to take a bath with him here?" Ning Xuefei paused for a moment. It was a little awkward, but Lin Yi was a man after all. As a girl, she couldn't just continue soaking in the same tub as a stranger, no matter how insensitive she was. She couldn't just continue soaking in the same tub as a stranger, could she? He climbed out of the tub, dried himself quickly and put on his clothes. Ning Xuefei turned her head again and looked at Lin Yi for a while. Then she reached out and dragged Lin Yi out of the tub. After all, the water in the tub was not deep, but it was not shallow either. With Lin Yi's current miserable state, if she left him lying in the tub, it was not impossible for him to drown. After dragging Lin Yi out, Ning Xuefei didn't do anything further. She just squatted aside. Holding her head, she continued to look at Lin Yi. After all, she was a girl and a lady who never served people. Asking her to help a strange man like Lin Yi dry his body so that he wouldn't catch a cold was too much. It was already a great kindness for her to cooperate and not throw Lin Yi to the Northern Garrison guards. At the same time, the Heroes Gathering Hall outside was in a complete mess. After finding out that the person in trouble was Zheng Tianjie, the young master of the Alchemy Hall, the entire Heroes Gathering Hall was surrounded by countless Northern Garrison guards. Housekeeper Song and the big shots from all the islands were all there, but the rest were stopped outside by the Northern Garrison guards. It was related to Zheng Tianjie, a key figure. Before Housekeeper Song and the others came to a clear and unified conclusion, they had to strictly block all news. Otherwise, if the news spread like wildfire or even to the Middle Island, it would be out of control. Leaving the situation outside aside, Lin Yi, who was in Ning Xuefei's boudoir, had been in a coma for 4 hours. He didn't wake up until the sky outside was turning bright. "What's your name?" Ning Xuefei, who was squatting aside until her legs were numb, quickly asked. Her eyes lit up. However, Lin Yi didn't respond to her. He closed his eyes and turned a deaf ear to her. After turning over, he sat down with his legs crossed and started the mantra. When he was in the space of the jade pendant, he had almost recovered from his injuries, but he still hadn't recovered his strength and genuine qi. "What? You're ignoring me?" Ning Xuefei pursed her lips, but she didn't say anything. She just squatted aside and watched. Girls who were insensitive were often more reasonable than most people, especially in such an abnormal situation. If it were someone else, they would have thrown Lin Yi to the Northern Garrison guards. Why would they keep such a suspicious stranger in their boudoir? In fact, Lin Yi didn't mean to ignore Ning Xuefei. It was just that he was at a critical moment. Not only was he recovering his strength, but the genuine qi in his body was expanding. This was a sign that he was about to break through. Counting the days, it hadn't been a long time since Lin Yi broke through to the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage. This time he didn't take any elixirs to help him level up, and he was seriously injured. Lin Yi never thought that he would break through again so soon. However, although this was unexpected, it made sense when he thought about it carefully. For cultivators, every time they tried their best to be seriously injured, they could further explore the potential in their body. It was a rare transformation. It was not unusual to take this opportunity to break through. Lin Yi himself had experienced this many times. From the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment stage to the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage was an extremely difficult threshold to cross. However, in comparison, from the middle stage to the peak of the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage was much easier. With Lin Yi's strong foundation, it was natural for him to break through this stage quickly. Under Ning Xuefei's gaze, Lin Yi urged the genuine qi in his body to move around his body over and over again, looking for a good opportunity to break through in one fell swoop. After a long time, Lin Yi's aura suddenly skyrocketed, startling many of the small ornaments in the room. They all trembled. If Ning Xuefei hadn't protected them with her body, her beloved ornaments would have been destroyed. This state lasted for a while. Finally, Lin Yi slowly withdrew his aura and returned to his usual reserved state. However, the occasional light in his eyes was obviously purer and more terrifying than before. Chapter 40-26. He let out a long breath, feeling refreshed as he stood up. He looked at the curious Ning Xuefei beside him, thinking back to what happened last night. He couldn't help but feel a little awkward. His consciousness wasn't clear at the time, but he could still remember a little of what happened. He broke into a strange woman's room and fell into her bathtub. More importantly, she happened to be taking a bath. Lin Yi could not help but feel guilty just thinking about it. Just when Lin Yi did not know what to say, there was a sudden rush of footsteps outside the door. They were well trained. It should be the Northern Garrison Guards. This is the place. I told you there was something wrong here. The first voice sounded familiar. It was the Northern Garrison Guard who called the door last night, pockmarked. Lin Yi was shocked. The Hall of Heroes was on high alert. It was not surprising that the Northern Garrison Guards were attracted by the spiritual energy fluctuation caused by the breakthrough. However, it would be really troublesome if they were caught like this. After all, the Northern Garrison Guards were elites. They had been scared off by Ning Xuefei's background once last night, but now they were suspicious again. Moreover, such a big thing had happened. It was unrealistic to drive them away with just a few words. However, Ning Xuefei winked at Lin Yi, asking him to find a corner to hide. She got up and opened the door. Facing the suspicious Northern Garrison Guards, Ning Xuefei did not give them any chance to ask questions. She started to complain. What are you doing? Yesterday I just bid for 2 best-grade foundation building barrier-breaking pills, and I was at the critical moment of taking them to break through, but I was interrupted by you guys. Now I failed to break through and all my efforts were wasted. How can your extreme North Island be like this? Ning Xuefei said with a wronged expression. Miss Ning? The Northern Guards looked at each other. Given Ning Xuefei's status, it was not something that they could bear to be the scapegoat for. You came to disturb me last night. It's not even dawn yet, and you're here to make trouble again. Is this how the extreme North Island treats its guests? Make your steward song pay for my pills tomorrow. Ning Xuefei scolded her angrily. She turned her head and instructed the young servant girl who heard the commotion next door and ran over to serve her. Xiaoling, go and call the staff of the Hong Chamber of Commerce over. I'll ask him if there are any more top-grade pills. So annoying they're all wasted. Yes. Little Ling shrunk her head and hurriedly left with small steps. When the Northern Guard saw this, they did not dare to stay any longer. They bowed and apologized to Ning Xuefei, and then hurriedly scattered. Half an hour later, Xiaoling came back to report. Miss, I didn't find the employee from the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Why don't I go ask him again when the sun is up? Ning Xuefei waved her hand and said, There's no need. I've already sent someone to find him. There's nothing for you to do here. You can leave first. Yes. Xiaoling immediately left obediently. Only Ning Xuefei and Lin Yi were left in the room. Ning Xuefei blinked her big eyes and pouted at Lin Yi as if she was asking for credit. Hey, are you alright? Don't I look very smart? I'm fine. Thank you for your help, Miss Ning. Lin Yi nodded gratefully. Ning Xuefei's response had not only gotten the Northguard off the hook, but also given him a legitimate reason to go back later. He didn't expect her to be so resourceful even though she seemed to be so insensitive. Just as he was worrying about how to repay her, Lin Yi suddenly caught a glimpse of a small wooden box with the Hong Chamber of Commerce's name engraved on the cabinet next to him. It was the 2 top-grade bottleneck-breaking pills that Ning Xuefei had just mentioned. Lin Yi's heart moved and he immediately said, "I will remember Miss Ning's help. If there is any need in the future, Miss can go to Hong Zhong of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. No matter what elixir you want to refine, don't hesitate to ask, just say that I agree." Ning Xuefei's beautiful eyes suddenly lit up. She was just thinking about this. She had taken the initiative to help Lin Yi just now because of this consideration. She did not expect that Lin Yi would take the initiative to ask. She could not help but nod and say, Okay, I won't stand on ceremony." Lin Yi immediately laughed. This girl's temperament was quite similar to his senior sister Shanghai Laner from the towering pavilion in the North Island. She should also be from a famous cultivation sect. But Shanghai Laner was not so insensitive. Looking at the gradually brightening sky outside, Lin Yi took out the 1,000 silk mask and was about to put it on. He was about to leave. He had forced himself to take off the 1,000 silk mask when he entered the room yesterday. His purpose was to let Miss Ning recognize him instead of driving him out. Otherwise, he could not guarantee that Miss Ning would not betray him to a complete stranger. Although he was grateful to Miss Ning, this place had become a troublesome place. It was easy to get into trouble if he stayed too long. Moreover, Lin Yi deliberately did not ask about her identity. He only knew that the Northern Guard said that her surname was Ning. It might not be a good thing to chat too much at this time. If he wanted to thank her, he could find another chance in the future. "Are you leaving now? Let me see you off. There are many Northern Guard outside. Ordinary people can't go in and out as they please." Ning Xuefei did not try to persuade him to stay. "Then I'll have to trouble you." Lin Yi thought about it and didn't reject the offer. The guy had given him a legitimate excuse, but he was still a stranger. He might give himself away if someone were to come back and check him. The two immediately went out. As expected, the security outside was much tighter than usual. Every corner was guarded by fully armed Northern Guard. Not even a fly could escape. However, when Ning Xuefei saw Lin Yi out from the back door, the Northern Guard did not question him. They just looked at Lin Yi from head to toe, bowed to Ning Xuefei and raised their hands to let them go. It seemed that Ning Xuefei's performance just now had worked. Otherwise, even if Ning Xuefei was accompanying him, they would not let him go without asking questions. After leaving the Gathering Heroes Hall successfully, Lin Yi let out a sigh of relief. Not only was he relieved, but more importantly from the attitude of the guards, it was obvious that the temporary camouflage he made yesterday had worked. That was to say, Steward Song and the others should have concluded that Zheng Tianjie died because of an explosion. Chapter 40-27. As Lin Yi expected, as soon as Ning Xuefei returned to her residence, the elder who accompanied her in West Island came to find her. "Miss, Zheng Tianjie from the Middle Island Alchemy Hall died in an explosion yesterday. Did it affect you?" "Zheng Tianjie? The loud noise yesterday was caused by the explosion of this guy's alchemy furnace?" Ning Xuefei was stunned, then shook her head and said, "No, I thought it was an earthquake. I thought it was just an earthquake." But in private, Ning Xuefei couldn't help guessing that Zheng Tianjie's death might have something to do with the young man from the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Although she was insensitive, her imagination was super strong. Ning Xuefei was just guessing, but at this moment Tian Chan, who was also in the Heroes Gathering Hall, was shocked when she heard the news from her master, Lian Xin. When the accident happened last night, the scene was quickly blocked by the Northern Guard. Tian Chan had no way to know the specific situation. She tossed and turned all night, worrying about how to deal with Zheng Tianjie, and whether Zheng Tianjie would deal with Lin Yi. She didn't expect that after one night, Zheng Tianjie was actually dead? And he was directly killed because of the explosion of the alchemy furnace? Wasn't this the same way as the junior brother of the alchemy hall who was framed and killed by her before? In an instant, a figure suddenly appeared in Tian Chan's mind. It was Lin Yi, whom she had just met last night. "Chan, what's wrong with you?" Seeing that Tian Chan was in a daze after hearing the news, Lian Xing couldn't help but ask curiously. "No, nothing, I just feel that this thing happened too suddenly." Tian Chan quickly covered it up. Recalling the situation when she met with Lin Yi last night, although she felt it was unbelievable, she was almost sure that Lin Yi must be behind this matter. After all, Zheng Tianjie, a master in the early stage of the Gold Core realm, died because of the explosion of the alchemy furnace. This kind of thing was very strange no matter how she thought about it. In particular, he had a furnace explosion record, so it was hard not to be suspicious. Lien Xan nodded and sighed. Indeed, everything was still fine yesterday, but in the blink of an eye, something like this happened. It can only be said that fate is fickle and nature makes fools of people. However, Zheng Tianjie's death is not necessarily a bad thing for you, Chanair. I know that you don't like him and that his character is vile. He is indeed not a good choice for a good man. This way it will save you a lot of trouble. Master, Zheng Tianjie died because of a furnace explosion during alchemy. Has this matter been settled? Tian Chan cautiously inquired. That's right. This is the unanimous conclusion of Housekeeper Song and the leaders of the other forces. Furthermore, there are indeed traces of a furnace explosion at the scene. There are also large scorch marks on Zheng Tianjie's corpse. This is something that I, along with your martial uncles, can confirm. We can eliminate the suspicion of murder. Lien Xian nodded with certainty. In that case, could it be that Zheng Tianjie was the one who suffered retribution, and it really had nothing to do with Lin Yi? There were so many big shots at the scene, including her own master Lien Xian, who was an expert of the pill hall. If even they were deceived by someone, it would be extremely difficult. Tian Chan couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. However, she still couldn't help but suspect that Lin Yi was related to this matter. However, this was also good. At least, no one would investigate the murderer behind the scenes, and she didn't have to worry about Lin Yi anymore. However, Lien Xian's next words made Tian Chan's heart hang in the air again. Of course, this is only our preliminary conclusion. The real conclusion can only wait until we return to the pill hall. Maybe there will be an unexpected discovery. Tian Chan was immediately on tenterhooks. The pill hall, as a top force of the Middle Island, had a lot of true experts. If this matter was really done by Lin Yi, even if he could deceive these people in the extreme North Island, it was impossible for him to deceive so many experts of the pill hall. Once this matter was exposed, Lin Yi would be in trouble. Alright, this matter happened too suddenly. We can't continue to participate in the following auctions. Chanair, hurry up and pack your things. We're going back to the Middle Island soon. Lien Xian hurriedly instructed, then immediately turned around and left. Yes. Tian Chan responded absent-mindedly. Her mind was filled with Lin Yi's figure. If it wasn't for the fact that the conditions didn't allow it, she really wanted to find Lin Yi and ask him in person if he did it, so that she wouldn't have to be so worried. An hour later, the group of people from the pill hall gathered at the main entrance of the Heroes Gathering Hall. They brought Zheng Tianjie's charred body and set off for the Middle Island. Watching the people from the pill hall fly away, Lin Yi didn't worry too much. Even if he knew that there were many experts in the pill hall, he was still very confident in his ability to fake the scene. Don't forget that he was a miracle doctor back in the common world. After that, he even obtained Zhang Liju's personal notes. As a result, regarding the situation of Zheng Tianjie's body, even if he didn't dare to say that it was flawless, very few people would be able to see through it. Unless that person was his chief Shifu, Zhang Liju himself, or old Lin also came from the common world to the Middle Island. Compared to Zheng Tianjie's death, Lin Yi was more worried about Tian Chan's situation. Although he didn't have Zheng Tianjie to worry about from the past actions of his grandpa, the vice elder of the pill hall, he shouldn't be a good person. When the time came, it wasn't impossible for him to vent his anger on Tian Chan. After all, everyone knew that the reason why Zheng Tianjie had opened the cauldron to concoct the beauty pill was to make Tian Chan happy. He died from the cauldron explosion, and it was almost obvious that the vice elder of the pill hall would vent his anger on Tian Chan. However, with Lin Yi's current strength and background, he couldn't even go to the Middle Island. No matter how much he worried, it was futile. For now, he could only hope that Tian Chan could deal with it herself. Just as Lin Yi raised his head and watched Tian Chan and the others leave, Hong Zhong appeared behind him with a face full of joy. He said excitedly, "Young hero Lin, your appointment letter has been sent back to the Middle Island headquarters. It has been officially registered." So fast? Lin Yi was slightly startled. From last night until now it had only been 12 hours. The reaction speed of the headquarters of the Hong Merchant Association was really shocking. This is actually not strange. Our Hong Merchant Association is the second top merchant association in the Merchant Alliance. The auction this time is of great importance. If we reacted slowly, wouldn't we be sitting ducks? To be honest, this time even our president himself was personally waiting by the teleportation circle for news. This time he was also the first to see the news. Hong Zhong smiled. Chapter 40-28. Same to you. From now on, Young hero Lin will be the honorary vice president and a member of the senior management of our Hong Chamber of Commerce. Among the 3 pavilions on the North Island, you're the only one with such an honor. Hong Zhong sighed from the bottom of his heart. Lin Yi, a newcomer of Blue Cloud Pavilion, had become the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. It was a legend if it was spread out. I'm just an honorary vice president while you, Mr. Hong, are the vice president with real power. We're not at the same level at all. I'll have to ask you to take care of me in the future, Lin Yi said modestly. This was the truth. Although the credit belonged to Lin Yi, the biggest beneficiary was Hong Zhong. He was promoted from the manager of the North Island branch to the vice president of the headquarters of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, second only to the president and the executive vice president. He was almost the third in command. This kind of promotion speed was no different from riding a rocket. Young hero Lin, you're flattering this old man. With young hero Lin's shocking ability, not to mention the vice president, even if I were to sit in the president's position, I would still have to rely on you. Hong Zhong shook his head and burst into laughter. Then he sighed and said, however, it's true that time makes the hero. I've been working hard for decades, but I've been stuck in the position of the manager of the North Island branch. Now that I've experienced a crisis, I'm suddenly promoted to the position of vice president. It's unreal. There's an old saying in the secular world, risk and benefit are always proportional. Lin Yi nodded. Thanks to young hero Lin, I was able to get out of danger this time. Otherwise, I'm afraid I wouldn't even be able to keep my position as the manager of the branch. I would have become a scapegoat for those above me. I wouldn't have the glory I have today, Hong Zhong said with lingering fear. There were no flashes of swords in the business world, but the dangers within were far greater. Even Hong Zhong couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat when he thought about the sudden crisis. Thank goodness he had Lin Yi with him. While the two of them were talking, the new day of the auction had already begun in the clamor. Hong Zhong immediately suggested, although the mission has been completed, the 4 Islands auction is a rare opportunity. If young hero Lin has no objections, we can stay on this extreme North Island for 2 more days. If you see anything good on the way, young hero Lin can just tell me and I will definitely help you get it. It will be a token of my gratitude. Young hero Lin, please don't refuse. Seeing that Hong Zhong was so sincere, Lin Yi naturally couldn't refuse. He nodded and said, well, thank you in advance, Mr. Hong. I also want to see what good is there. This time he owed Hong Zhong too much. If he didn't let Hong Zhong compensate him in private, the other party would feel apologetic. This kind of feeling might not be a good thing if it accumulated for a long time. Moreover, it wasn't suitable for long-term cooperation in the future. He might as well let Hong Zhong ease his feelings a little. In any case, Hong Zhong didn't look like someone who lacked spiritual jades. Compared to yesterday's auction, although the scale of today's auction was a bit lower, if one were to talk about the oddities of the items being auctioned, it would definitely surpass the previous one. It was an eye-opener. There were many things that even the professional experts present couldn't explain. They could only vaguely evaluate that this item was extraordinary, and the specific uses needed to be explored. Lin Yi had always been very interested in these strange things. Even if he couldn't figure out the truth, there was still a ghostly thing that had lived for thousands or tens of thousands of years in the space of the jade pendant. He could more or less see something. If he wasn't careful, he might accidentally find a treasure like the star ink stone. Wouldn't that be a big profit? However, it wasn't only Lin Yi who was interested in these strange things. The others also had the same thoughts of picking up leftovers, especially Nan Tianba's group. Because of the existence of Wuxia, who had read a lot, their ability to pick up leftovers was far beyond that of ordinary people. While Lin Yi was busy picking up leftovers with these people, Tian Chan had already followed the people from the Pill Hall and Zheng Tianjia's corpse back to the Middle Island. After hearing the news of Zheng Tianjia's death, the Pill Hall, which had always been quiet, suddenly erupted. Especially Zheng Tianjia's grandfather, the vice head of the Pill Hall, Zheng Dongjue, almost fainted on the spot. Zheng Tianjia was the only master of the Golden Core stage among his grandchildren, and he was also a refiner. He had unlimited potential and he had always had high hopes for him. He was being groomed as a successor, and now, after a trip to the extreme North Island, he came back as a charred corpse. How could he accept this? Who did it? These 2 words came out of Zheng Dongjue's hoarse voice as if it came from hell. It made all the disciples of the Pill Hall tremble in fear. Other than Zhang Liju and a few other disciples, everyone else was trembling under Zheng Dongjue's aggressive gaze. In the end, an elder who led the team to the northernmost island this time had no choice but to bite the bullet and stand up to explain, Deputy Hall Master, young Master Zheng's death was not a homicide, but when he was refining pills last night, his cauldron accidentally exploded. Cauldron exploded? Zheng Dongjue looked at him coldly and raged. Tianjie was a level 4 refiner and a master of the golden core stage. How dare you say that he died from a cauldron explosion? Why don't you blow one up for me? This elder was so scared that he shrunk his neck, speechless. One couldn't blame Zheng Dongjue for reacting like this. In fact, even these people found it hard to believe at first, but after checking the scene and the corpse, they finally came to the conclusion that it was a cauldron explosion. I don't believe this stupid conclusion of yours at all. Go get all the elders here, I'll check again. Zheng Dongjue gritted his teeth and roared. As the vice head of the pill hall, when Zhang Liju wasn't here, Zheng Dongjue was pretty much the final decision maker in the pill hall. Even those elders with high positions wouldn't go against him easily, much less something like this. Seeing that all the elders had arrived, Tian Chan's heart suddenly jumped to her throat. Everyone in front of her was a famous big shot in Middle Island. Putting aside their identity as super alchemists, whether it was their strength or their foresight, they were far from ordinary people. Especially when it came to the inspection of a cauldron explosion, they were the experts among the experts. Holding her breath, Tian Chan watched as all the elders went up to check the corpses one by one. She had never felt so nervous before, afraid that these people would notice something unusual. Chapter 40-29. How is this possible? Zheng Dongju did not give up and personally went forward to check on his grandson's body. However, judging from the various signs on his body, especially the burns that were clearly caused by the pill fire, any expert alchemist could see that Zheng Tianjie had indeed died from the explosion of the furnace. This time, Zheng Dongju himself was speechless as he fell to the ground in a daze. If Zheng Tianjie was killed by someone else, then no matter how he flared up, no matter how he pursued the matter, it would not be too much. But now that he died from the explosion of the furnace during alchemy, other than blaming himself for being stupid, who else could he blame? Tian Chan heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that. As long as it had nothing to do with Lin Yi, then no matter how Zheng Tianjie died, it didn't matter. This was the retribution that God gave him, he deserved to die. However, Zheng Dongju was silent for a moment before he suddenly stood up from the ground and said, any alchemist, unless they have no other choice, would absolutely not refine pills in an unfamiliar place. They are afraid of accidents like the explosion of the furnace. Now, this hall master wants to know, for no reason, why did Tianjie suddenly think of refining pills in the northern island? Everyone who was going to the northern island couldn't help but focus their eyes on Tian Chan. Tian Chan was shocked. Just now she was still worried for Lin Yi and she didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, she would be in danger. Zheng Dongju was not a good person to begin with, and now that he was immersed in the pain of losing his grandson, once he vented his anger on her, he could do anything. Could it be because of you, bitch? Zheng Dongju's gaze suddenly turned cold. Of course, he knew what kind of person his grandson was. Previously, for the sake of this woman who came from the secular world, he disregarded his dignity and pestered her. He even wanted Zheng Dongju to put down his old face and help him get engaged. In order to please this bitch, he opened the furnace to refine pills in the northern island. Only Zheng Tianjie would do such a stupid thing. Zheng Dongju's face was unfriendly as he approached Tian Chan step by step. He didn't like this lowly woman who came from the secular world. Now he even caused the death of his most beloved grandson. How could he allow such a scourge to remain in the pill hall? Vice Hall Master, Zheng Tianjie clearly died because his cauldron exploded while he was refining pills. If you want to blame Chan, a woman, don't you think it's a little embarrassing? Lian Xian saw that the situation was bad. He quickly stepped forward and stood in front of Tian Chan. You didn't teach your disciples properly. This hall master hasn't even settled the score with you, yet you still dare to stand out and protect my traitorous disciple. My great-grandson died in the hands of you bitches. The heavens were truly blind. Men, arrest the two of them for this hall master. Zheng Dongjue waved his hand and ordered in an overbearing manner. Lian Xian and Tian Chan looked at each other, their hearts sinking. Now that the head Zhang Liju wasn't here, and the other disciples were all staying out of this, the entire hall of elixir had become Zheng Dongjue's word. If they really were to be arrested and punished like this, they wouldn't be able to escape. The consequences of having one's cultivation and even one's divine sense crippled were unimaginable. However, if they dared to resist in public, the consequences would be even more severe. No one would dare say no even if they were to be killed on the spot. Just as the two of them were stuck between a rock and a hard place, a voice came from the door, causing everyone present to freeze. Just because of a little bit of anger you want to be punished by the hall law? I don't even know when the pill hall became a gang? The voice came from the doorway. However, by the time everyone reacted, this figure had already appeared in the middle of the lobby. He was wearing a familiar black robe looking like an immortal. Out of this world, this was the head of the Elixir Hall, the legendary Elixir Saint Zhang Liju. Greetings, head. Everyone present knelt down at the same time and kowtowed respectfully. Even Zheng Dongjue, who had always been high and mighty, could only obediently pay his respects with a stiff expression. Zhang Liju, this miracle Dr. Dan wasn't just a legend on the outside, he was a god within the Hall of Elixir. All the disciples worshipped him from the bottom of their hearts, and his fame and reputation were far above that of the vice-head Zheng Dongjue. Zhang Liju had always been secretive, and when he was out, Zheng Dongjue could do whatever he wanted, but now that he was back, Zheng Dongjue didn't even dare to fart. Zhang Liju didn't even need to do anything, just a word from him was enough to make him fall to the ground. Get up. Zhang Liju waved his hand and looked at Lian Xan and Tian Chan. Don't be scared, our pill hall is a place for elixirs. As long as you don't go against your masters, no one will dare to do anything to you. Lian Xan and Tian Chan were overjoyed and nodded. Yes, thank you for your kindness, head. Zheng Dongjue gritted his teeth on the side, but there was nothing he could do. Even if he had 10 times more courage, he wouldn't dare go against Zhang Liju's words in front of everyone. He could only hold it in. With that, Zhang Liju turned his head and looked at Zheng Tianjie's body in front of him. He looked at the wounds on the body and couldn't help but think, a playful smile on his face. Zheng Dongjue thought that Zhang Liju had found something fishy, and since it was his grandson's death, he didn't dare to be careless. Head, is there anything wrong? Wrong? Zhang Liju glanced at him. Of course not. He's a 4th-level refiner and he died from an explosion. Since when did our pill hall become so lousy? Zheng Dongjue, there's something wrong with your management. What? Zheng Dongjue almost choked to death. He couldn't hide the sadness on his face. His grandson died and he said there was something wrong with his management? However, Zheng Dongjue didn't dare say anything in front of Zhang Liju. He could only hold his nose and admit, "You're right, head, I will try my best to improve in the future. I won't let you down." Tian Chan looked at Zheng Dongjue's reaction and couldn't help but feel happy. At the same time she was a little puzzled. Looking at Zhang Liju's reaction, it was obvious that he had found something, but for some reason he didn't say anything. What she didn't know was that Zhang Liju had indeed found something strange on Zheng Tianjie's body. As the publicly recognized pill saint, no matter how good Lin Yi's disguise was, there was no way he could hide it from him. Chapter 40-30. But, the combination of qi and refinement fire would produce unparalleled power, and this was something very few people in the world knew about. Even Zhang Liju himself had only discovered it by accident and recorded it in his notes. The chances of a normal person knowing about this was next to nothing. So, although Zhang Liju was confused, he didn't say it out in front of everyone. Alright, this matter ends here. You can all leave now. Zhang Liju waved his hand and dismissed the crowd. With him saying it himself, no matter how much Dongjue disagreed with him, he couldn't do anything about it. Zheng Tianjie's death was final. After saying that, Zhang Liju disappeared right in front of everyone's eyes. He came and went without a trace, just like a master. According to his usual style, after disappearing, he would most likely travel the world again. Who knew how long it would be before he showed up in front of everyone again? But even if Zhang Liju was nowhere to be seen, since he had already said this, no one would dare disobey him. Even if Zheng Dongjue wanted to go against him, he wouldn't have the guts to do so. Zheng Dongjue stared at Lian Xan and Tian Chan with hatred in his eyes. Alright, since the hall master has forgiven you 2 of your sins, I can let it go, but Tian Chan and my grandson Tianjie had an engagement. Although he's gone now, the engagement is still valid. I want to hold a ghost marriage for them. As soon as the words were spoken, everyone at the scene was stunned speechless. The so-called engagement was just something that Zheng Tianjie had been pestering Tian Chan, wanting Dongjue to help them get engaged. Until now it was just a one-sided talk. There was no actual ceremony at all, and he had the cheek to say that there was an engagement? Zheng Tianjie died from the explosion of the furnace, but Tian Chan, a beautiful girl, had to marry a dead man for no reason at all. Zhang Liju had just left. Zhang Liju had just left, and Zheng Dongjue was acting like a tyrant. Wasn't he a little too much? No, this is Chan'er's lifelong happiness. Vice Hall Master, don't go too far. Lian Xan hurriedly stood up and stopped him. With her status and strength, although she was far from being able to go against Zheng Dongjue, she was still Tian Chan's master. She couldn't turn a blind eye to this matter. Humph, do you think you have the right to speak here? Why aren't you scramming to the side? Zheng Dongjue's eyes flashed with a vicious glint. Although Zhang Liju had said in front of everyone that he couldn't punish the master and disciple, if he really wanted to. There were at least 100 ways to make these two bitches live a life worse than death, and no one could find fault with them. Lien Xen still wanted to insist, but at this time Tian Chan, who was behind her, gently tugged on her sleeve. Master, there's no need. Your disciple will agree to him. What? Everyone was shocked again, including Zheng Dongjue. They could not help but be slightly taken aback. Any normal girl wouldn't agree to a ghost marriage with a dead person so easily, right? Not to mention, the so-called marriage contract that Tian Chan was carrying was a non-existent thing from start to finish. If that's the case, then prepare yourself. The day of the burial is the day of the marriage. According to my original plan, you should be buried alive with Tianjie to accompany him. But in order to not let the hall master misunderstand, I'll let you stay alive to guard his coffin. Zheng Dongjue looked deeply at Tian Chan. Tian Chan nodded silently. With Zhang Liju's words as a guarantee, Zheng Dongjue definitely wouldn't let her be buried with Zheng Tianjie. This was something that she had expected, and that was why she agreed to it. Marrying a dead man in the prime of her lifetime, this was an extremely tragic thing for anyone, especially Tian Chan, who was a disciple of the Hall of Elixirs with a bright future. This was a nightmare, but in Tian Chan's eyes this was even better. Middle Island was the gathering place for various forces. Naturally, there were many hedonistic young masters like Zheng Tianjie. As the saying goes, beauty is the source of trouble. With Tian Chan's beauty, it was easy for her to attract trouble. Even if Zheng Tianjie died, there would be a second and a third one in the future. Now, with the title of widow coupled with Zheng Dongjue's influence, no one would dare to pursue and harass Tian Chan in the future. Plus, the situation just now was very clear. If she rejected, Zheng Dongjue could find even more vicious ways to punish her and her disciple. Tian Chan might as well just agree. As for this so-called engagement, when her strength reached a certain level in the future, she could cancel it with just a word. Just like Zhang Liju, who dared to go against his words. So the only thing she had to do now was to endure, train hard, and wait patiently for that day to come. Zheng Tianjie's death had finally come to an end. Because of Zhang Liju's silence, Lin Yi, who was far away in the North Island, had successfully escaped. But now he had encountered a new problem. Because he had successfully gotten rid of Zheng Tianjie, not only did he solve Tian Chan's problem, but he also got back the 10-piece weapon set that he had lost. For Lin Yi, this trip to the Northern Island could be said to be a success. However, where there were people, there would be Jianghu, and where there would be Jianghu, there would be conflicts and killings. Especially this time, Nan Tianba and the others had also come to the extreme North Island. In the next few days of the auction, with Hong Zhong's support, Lin Yi could be said to have gained a lot. He got his hands on a few rare treasures. Although he couldn't tell what they were used for, at least he could be sure that the items that Lin Yi had his eyes on were not ordinary useless items. In the future, if there was a suitable opportunity, they might shine brightly. Whatever Lin Yi had his eyes on, Yuzha from Nan Tianba's group also had their eyes on. It was a pity that their wealth was not on the same level as Lin Yi's backer, Hong Zhong, who was a super tycoon. Hong Zhong wanted to repay Lin Yi wholeheartedly. Because of this, how could he easily let the things that Lin Yi had his eyes on go to someone else? Unless he met a sucker like Zheng Tianjie, otherwise, Nan Tianba and his group had no ability to compete with him at all. Damn it, every time I saw a treasure it was taken away by that bastard. If I didn't guess wrong, those treasures are not only useful for the masters at the foundation establishment stage, but even for the masters at the golden core stage or higher, they should have unexpected uses. They are all good things that can only be found by luck. Yuzha rolled his eyes and gritted his teeth. Chapter 40-31. Haha, it's good that he won it. We don't have to waste our spiritual jades. Later we'll snatch them all together with the star ink stone. Nan Tianba sneered indifferently and glanced at Lin Yi and Hong Zhong in the distance. The two were receiving the auction items and seemed to be ready to call it a day. Just as they guessed, Lin Yi and Hong Zhong were ready to go home. Lin Yi was still a newcomer in the welcome pavilion. Even if he had the help of his senior brother, he couldn't leave for too long. Hong Zhong was going to report to Middle Island soon, so they all had their own things to do. After saying goodbye to Steward Song, the two immediately boarded the flying spiritual beasts and set off for North Island. Young hero Lin, it seems that this return trip won't be so peaceful. Hong Zhong suddenly looked back and shook his head slightly. Indeed, we've just left the patrol area of the Northern Guard. These people are really impatient. Lin Yi nodded. This time he had broken through to the peak of the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm, so his range of perception had increased a lot. He had already noticed the people following behind him. Before he finished speaking, the flying spiritual beasts behind him suddenly sped up and caught up with them in the blink of an eye. Moreover, there was more than one of them. "Old man over there, hurry up and hand over the spiritual jades and treasures, or I'll throw you down to feed the sea monsters." A masked man with a hedgehog's head laughed hideously. Then, on the other flying spiritual beast, a feminine man with wavy long hair sneered, "Don't even think about running away. It's useless. The flying spiritual beasts under your feet are just the most useless ones. You want to get rid of the flying spiritual beasts under our feet? That's just a pipe dream, so I advise you to be sensible. If you cooperate, I can guarantee that I'll only rob you of your treasures, not your lives." Lin Yi and Hong Zhong looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. There were 4 or 5 people standing on the backs of the 2 flying spiritual beasts in front of them. Although each of them was not weak, they were at least in the late stage of the Foundation establishment realm. The leader, the man with the hedgehog's head and long hair, was at the peak of the Foundation establishment realm. However, with just this level of strength he dared to rob the 2 of them. They really didn't know what to say. It would have been fine if they had only targeted Lin Yi, but now that an unfathomable super expert like Hong Zhong was right beside them, they actually had the guts to rush over. Their courage was simply commendable. Little did they know. This group of people were fearless because they didn't know. Hong Zhong had always hidden his strength and had always presented himself as an amiable businessman. Very few people knew of his true strength. In the eyes of outsiders, Hong Zhong was merely a businessman. If he was already extremely powerful, then why would the Hong Chamber of Commerce hire so many foreign experts? Was it because they had too many spiritual jades? Seeing that the 2 of them had a strange expression on their faces, yet they did not say anything. The man with the hedgehog hair immediately said angrily, "Fuck, are you too tired of living? Hurry up and hand over the things. I'll count to 3. If you don't hand over the spiritual jades and treasures obediently, then don't blame me for not letting you live. 1, 2. Just as the man with the hedgehog hair was about to count to 3, Lin Yi suddenly spoke. Instead of begging for mercy as everyone expected, he said with a face full of sarcasm, "Heroes of the underworld, may I ask a question? Did you all become a monk halfway through your training?" "What do you mean?" The masked men were all stunned after hearing that. Lin Yi shrugged and said with a faint smile, "Nothing. I was just thinking, since you all have your faces covered, why don't you put away your waist tag as well? Why didn't you put away your waist tag as well? Isn't that very unprofessional?" Duh. The masked men were shocked and hurriedly looked down in panic. Then their gazes finally focused on the leader of the group, the man with the hedgehog hair. He had a yellow waist tag on his waist, engraved with the words Wan Tong, which was clearly the symbol of the Wan Tong Grand Assembly. Under the gaze of everyone, even with his face covered, the embarrassment of the man with the hedgehog hair could be seen. His face was so red that it reached the roots of his ears. Clowns who can't be seen in public. Hong Zhong shook his head speechlessly. The people in front of him were not worthy of his attention. What he was referring to was naturally the all-access gathering. Although Hong Zhong was the one who was jointly targeted by the previous evil plan, as a businessman he still had to praise his clever means. But now it was obvious that they had lost, but they still used the inferior trick of sending people to rob them, which was looked down upon. Even if they sent people to rob them, they should at least send a more powerful person. Sending such a group of idiots with neither strength nor brains, was this an insult to people's intelligence? Being watched by his men behind him, especially by the long-haired man on the other side, the hedgehog hair suddenly became angry. "What are you looking at? Even if my identity is exposed anyway, this kid and the old man must die. As long as they are fed to the sea monster, no one will know." Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh after listening. Feeding the sea monster is such an interesting thing. I think it is more suitable for a man with a temperament like you. How about you give us a demonstration first? Demonstration? Demonstration your ass. The man with the hedgehog hair scolded, immediately picked up the giant machete beside him and shouted, "Get over there, I will chop him alive today." Several people behind him showed their weapons with ferocious faces. At the same time, a group of people led by the long-haired man also flanked Lin Yi from the other side. Hong Zhong was about to make a move, but he saw that Lin Yi had already made a move before him. Having just been promoted to the peak of the middle stage of Foundation establishment, Lin Yi wanted to test his strength, especially the move that he had recently developed. Condensing true chi in one hand and alchemy fire in the other, before the hedgehog hair group could get close, Lin Yi had already put his hands together, and then condensed a super bomb in his hand and directly bombarded it. Boom. With a loud explosion, the calm sea suddenly set off a huge wave, and a small mushroom cloud appeared in the sky, which did not disperse for a long time. Such a shocking movement directly stunned the long-haired man and his group. When they saw the hedgehog head and his group, who had clearly been blasted into charred black corpses, fell into the vast sea together with the ferocious birds and spirit beasts, and were eaten by several ferocious sea beasts in the blink of an eye, everyone was so scared that they almost peed their pants. Chapter 40-32. You're lying. Such a terrifying fiend actually pretended to be an expert at the peak of the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm. Wasn't he too good at pretending? It's your turn next. Lin Yi turned his head and smiled gently at them. Fuck. The long-haired man was so scared that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. His face turned pale and he hurriedly shouted at his subordinates, "Why are you still not running? Do you want to accompany that stupid hedgehog head down to feed the sea monster? I'm telling you, the center will avenge us." After saying that, the group of people hurriedly whipped the spirit birds under their feet and ran away at full speed. One of them lost his footing and fell directly into the sea. He was swallowed by the sea monster below, but they didn't care at all. In the blink of an eye they disappeared before Lin Yi's eyes. The speed of this spirit beast is quite fast indeed. Lin Yi paused, not at all surprised. He'd wanted to kill them all in one go, but he didn't expect the mount to be this fast. What did he threaten us with before he left? What did he mean? But it didn't matter. He wasn't afraid that others would see his trick. They only saw Zheng Tianjie's body and didn't see the power of Lin Yi's alchemic fire Zhenqi bomb. The bodies of the people killed by Lin Yi fell directly into the sea and were eaten by the sea monster. It was impossible for others to see them carefully, not to mention that Zheng Tianjie's body was disguised by Lin Yi. However, before he left, the man threatened Lin Yi, but he didn't hear it clearly. That's natural. Spirit birds have always been known for their speed, but they can't carry as much weight as ordinary flying spirit beasts. Moreover, ordinary people can't control them, and the flight process is not stable enough, so it's not suitable for our Chamber of Commerce. Hong Zhong paused and then said with concern, "I didn't hear it clearly either. I guess they formed a group of interest. Young hero Lin, are you okay?" Although Hong Zhong was amazed by Lin Yi's performance just now, he could also tell that Lin Yi had suffered some injuries. "It's nothing, it's just a minor injury," Lin Yi said with a nonchalant smile as he circulated the mantra in his body to heal himself. Even if he only used it at the lowest level, the power of this killer move, which was a combination of the vital Qi bomb and the core fire bomb, was enough to instantly kill an expert in the great completion of the Foundation establishment stage. However, the price he had to pay was also not small because if he used it at close range, he himself would also suffer from a considerable backlash. Although he could enter the space of the Jade Pendant to heal quickly, and Lin Yi could afford this price if he used it in actual combat, it would still be a move that risked his life. With one move, regardless of whether the opponent died or not, he would be the first to be heavily injured. This was a huge disadvantage. In addition, although the time needed to accumulate Qi for this move was obviously much shorter than that of the vital Qi bomb, it was still much slower than conventional martial arts. If the opponent had not spoken so much nonsense just now, Lin Yi was afraid that he would not have had the chance to prepare. It could be seen that this move was powerful, but if it wanted to become a conventional killer move, he would need to think of ways to continuously improve it in the future. "That's good, young hero Lin, have a good rest." Hong Zhong nodded at Lin Yi and did not ask too much. From Lin Yi's shocking move just now, Hong Zhong could actually easily guess that the death of Zheng Tianjie from Middle Island Alchemy Hall was most likely caused by Lin Yi. However, he did not intend to ask too much. If Lin Yi wanted to say, he would naturally say it. Since he did not want to say, then he would pretend that he did not know. In his eyes, there was no difference between Zheng Tianjie and the person from the Universal Chamber of Commerce who was killed just now. They were all competitors of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. As long as they threatened the Hong Chamber of Commerce, they would be killed without mercy. Lin Yi replied with a Just as he was sitting cross-legged, he heard the sound of an extremely fast bird flying behind him. Those people actually had the guts to go and return. Could it be that they saw that he was injured? Lin Yi was slightly stunned, but he immediately knew that he was wrong. This time there were only 3 people chasing after him. "Did you all see that move just now? Martial nephew, what do you think?" Nan Qinba asked one of the people behind him in a deep voice. Reporting to Martial Uncle, although it was too far away and I couldn't see it clearly, I can confirm that this feeling was exactly the same as when Master was killed. It can be seen that Lin Yi is definitely second Lin. Yuzha said confidently. "Then what are we waiting for? Big brother, let's hurry up and catch up. Nan Tianmen couldn't wait any longer. He was now only one step away from the gold core stage. His desire for the star ink stone was stronger than anyone else's. Good. It seems that after that kid used that move just now, he's already exhausted. As for that old man Hong Zhong, he's just a businessman. I've been in the North Island for so many years, but I've never heard of him being an expert. There's nothing to worry about. Let's do it. Nan Qianba ordered with a grin. In a moment, the bird that Nan Qianba and the other two were riding on had already appeared above Lin Yi and Hong Zhong's head. Sure enough, they caught up. These three people are really lingering around. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows slightly. Back at the auction, he had already noticed the existence of these three people. At that time he was really surprised for a while, but he didn't pay attention to them. Above his head, Nan Qianba said arrogantly, "Should I call you Lin Yi or should I call you by another name, Second Lin? My third brother, Nan Tianyong, was it you who killed him?" Lin Yi was about to speak, but Hong Zhong pressed down on his shoulder, indicating that he didn't need to pay attention to him and just focus on healing his injuries. Not talking? That means you're admitting it. The hatred of killing my master is absolutely irreconcilable. Martial uncles, please help this disciple. Yuzha pretended to have a sorrowful expression and wailed heartbreakingly. I don't need you to say it. Nan Tianmen curled his lips and pointed at Lin Yi. I'll give you two choices. One is to throw you down to feed the sea beasts and die without a complete corpse. The other is to take the initiative to hand over the star ink stone and the treasures you've been auctioning these past 2 days. Of course you'll still die, but I'll leave your corpse intact. Choose for yourself. I'm going to die either way. You're still as overbearing as ever. Hong Zhong suddenly laughed. However, last time, I only threw you onto the street to embarrass myself. This time, in the vast sea, if you get thrown down again you'll lose your life. Chapter 40:33. Old man Hong Zhong, listen up. This is the vast North Sea, not your Hong Merchants Association. There aren't any guest officials who can stand up for you. If you don't know what's good for you, I'll make sure you die together with this kid. Threaten the southern heavenly gate. Oh? From what you're saying, if I just stand by and watch, you'll let me live? Hong Zhong said in surprise. That's right, we're looking for this brat purely to avenge our third brother. We don't have any intention of going against the Hong Merchant Guild. Of course there's a prerequisite. Shopkeeper Hong better not come out and get in the way. After all, fists and feet have no eyes. If you accidentally get hurt, then there's nothing we can do. This time it was Nan Qianba who spoke. If they killed Lin Yi here, they weren't afraid that Hong Zhong would go back and tell others. With the righteous reason of avenging their third brother, Nan Tianyong, this was purely a grudge of the Jianghu. Even the higher-ups of the three great pavilions wouldn't interfere and would turn a blind eye to it. However, if they killed Hong Zhong to hide the news, it wouldn't be a good thing for Nan Qianba and the others. No matter what, Hong Zhong was an important figure in the Hong Merchant Guild. Even if they did it secretly, the Hong Merchant Guild would still be able to find some clues. At that time, they wouldn't be able to walk away unscathed. So that's how it is. It seems like you guys are quite tactful. You clearly had the opportunity to take advantage of me, yet you still maintain such restraint. You're worthy of praise. Hong Zhong said unhurriedly. Then he changed the topic. Unfortunately, you are still too stupid. What did you say? Nan Qianba's expression darkened. Southern Sky Gate and Yuzha also had unfriendly expressions. I said you guys are too stupid. You actually thought that I would just stand by and watch young hero Lin's matter. If this isn't stupid, then what is? Hong Zhong laughed mockingly. My relationship with young hero Lin is not something you can imagine. We've known each other for a long time. Lin Yi was slightly startled. He didn't understand the meaning of Hong Zhong's last sentence. Known each other for a long time? Was he trying to prove something to Nan Tianba? Old man, you're courting death. The South Heaven Gate's expression turned hideous, but it was filled with a hint of joy. If it wasn't for the fact that he was afraid of the influence of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, he would have dismembered Hong Zhong to vent the hatred in his heart. Originally, he didn't have this opportunity because Nan Qianba wouldn't have allowed him to do so. But now Hong Zhong was courting death, and he couldn't stop him even if he wanted to, so he couldn't blame anyone else. Shopkeeper Hong, I'll say it again. I don't want to become enemies with the Hong Merchant Guild, and I don't have any intention of killing you. You better know what's good for you. I'm sure you've heard that I'm not a very patient person. Killing someone on this vast ocean is just a small matter. Nan Qianba said with a gloomy expression. I've naturally heard of the three heroes of the Nan clan. However, aren't you a little too confident if you think you can scare me with just that? Hong Zhong's expression became a little playful. It looks like you're really courting death. Then I won't stop you. Die in peace, old thing. Nan Qianba suddenly stood up, emitting a terrifying aura from his body. Even the spiritual beast under his feet was trembling in fear, as if it was unable to maintain its posture. However, the weak spiritual beast did not show any reaction from Hong Zhong and Lin Yi. It was as if Nan Qianba's aura could not affect it at all. Deadly Overlord Fist. Nan Qianba's figure was like a savage demon god. The simple punch was accompanied by an incomparably domineering aura. Even the surface of the ocean that was tens of feet below began to ripple. The South Heaven Gate and Wuxia were behind him. They looked at Hong Zhong and Lin Yi as if they were looking at dead people. Even among the Golden Core stage experts, Nan Qianba was considered a troublesome character. With just a weak old man like Hong Zhong and Lin Yi's insignificant strength, they would not be able to withstand even a single attack. The only thing they needed to pay attention to right now was to make sure that the two of them didn't fall into the sea. After all, they hadn't gotten their hands on the Star Ink Stone and those other rare treasures yet. If they killed the two of them and missed out on the treasures, that would be a huge joke. However, facing Nan Qianba's shocking killing move, both Lin Yi and Hong Zhong maintained a calm expression as if nothing had happened. Lin Yi was still sitting cross-legged to heal his injuries, while Hong Zhong did not put his opponent in his eyes at all. Hong Zhong watched helplessly as the life-stealing Overlord Fist was about to reach his head. Finally, he lazily stretched out a hand and swatted it as if he was swatting a fly. Then, a giant golden palm suddenly appeared beside Nan Qianba and sent him flying with a single slap. The South Heaven Gate and Wuxia were both dumbfounded. As a Golden Core stage expert, not only did Nan Qianba not kill his opponent instantly, he was also sent flying by Hong Zhong's palm. Wasn't this too miraculous of a turn of events? Luckily, the two of them had been preparing to fish up Hong Zhong and Lin Yi's corpses. Now they were able to catch Nan Qianba before he fell into the ocean. Otherwise, no matter how strong Nan Qianba was, once he fell into the ocean he would only become food for the sea beasts. There was no other possibility. After being caught by the South Heaven Gate and Wuxia, Nan Qianba was still in a state of shock from the slap. After a long time he finally regained his senses. When he looked at Hong Zhong again, his expression was astonishingly filled with an unprecedented fear. As for the South Heaven Gate and Wuxia, they looked as if they had seen a ghost. Even Nan Qianba was sent flying by a single slap. If it was them instead, wouldn't they be slapped to the ground? He was clearly just a businessman. How could this ordinary-looking old man have such terrifying strength? Seeing that your uncle has some connections with my Hong Merchant Guild, I won't kill you this time. However, if there is a next time and you dare to jump up and down in front of me again, you better be prepared to die. A terrifying murderous intent suddenly flashed across Hong Zhong's calm expression. Before this, he was still somewhat concerned about Nan Qianba's background. However, now that he was the vice president of the Hong Merchant Guild, he, Hong Zhong, could be considered a person with real power even in the Middle Island, which was full of influential people. He was basically on the same level as Zheng Dongjue, so there was no need for him to be afraid. Even if he were to kill Nan Qianba, there wouldn't be too much trouble. However, he hadn't gone back to report on his new job yet. If he was too arrogant, it would be easy for others to criticize him. Chapter 40-34. Nan Qianba was completely scared out of his wits. Nan Tianmen and Wuxia did not have the guts to fight against the unfathomable Hong Zhong. They could only timidly nod their heads. Why aren't you scramming? Hong Zhong narrowed his eyes. The spirit beast beneath Nan Qianba and the other two instantly became frightened birds. It desperately flapped its wings and quickly fled. Elder Hong, thank you this time. Lin Yi slowly opened his eyes. Not at all, it's just a small matter. However, these people are not easy to deal with. Although they will restrain themselves a bit when they return to the northern island, young hero Lin should still be a bit more vigilant. Hong Zhong reminded him. Thank you for the reminder. Lin Yi smiled. With his current strength he still could not deal with an expert like Nan Qianba. However, it was more than enough to protect himself. In his phone he still had a trump card that he had not used yet. On the other side, Nan Qianba and the other two finally let out a sigh of relief after fleeing for half an hour. Only when they were several hundred kilometers away from Hong Zhong and Lin Yi did they slowly calm down. Among the three of them, none of them had thought that this would be the result. They originally thought that with Nan Tianba personally making a move, it would be a piece of cake. But in the end they had actually kicked such a shocking iron plate. Wuxia. Nan Qianba suddenly opened his mouth weakly. This time his injuries were not too serious. The key was that the psychological blow he suffered was too great. It was like falling from the clouds to the ground. Here, great martial uncle. Yuzha quickly pulled himself together and stepped forward. Nan Qianba looked at Yuzha and suddenly raised his hand to slap his face. Yuzha was caught off guard and was almost slapped off the back of the spirit beast. Fortunately, he grabbed the saddle and was able to keep his life. With great difficulty, he climbed back onto the back of the spirit beast. Before Yuzha could steady himself, Nan Qianba immediately slapped him again. Yuzha's cheek quickly swelled up. Seeing that Nan Qianba was about to make another move, Yuzha was scared silly. He quickly bowed down and kowtowed, begging for mercy. Great Martial Uncle, this disciple was wrong. This disciple was really wrong. I beg Great Martial Uncle to forgive this disciple this time. Then tell me, where did you go wrong? Nan Tianba said expressionlessly. Yuzha choked. He cursed in his heart that Nan Tianba had kicked an iron plate. However, if he were to say it out loud, it would be no different from courting death. If I remember correctly, you swore earlier that Lin Yi was Lin Heir. Nan Qianba's expression suddenly turned into one of uncontrollable anger. With Lin Yi's background and how close he is to Shangguan Laner, even Ram Jie spoke up for him. Even Hong Zhong, who had such a close relationship with him, was unbelievably strong. If he wanted to kill you, it would be a piece of cake. He could just ask Hong Zhong to help him. Why would he need to pretend to be Lin Heir? Hong Zhong had also said that he had known Lin Yi for a long time. If Lin Yi wanted a staring stone, then Lin Yi wouldn't hesitate to give it to him. Why would I need to compete with you? With his relationship with Hong Zhong, it was just a matter of a word. Does he have nothing better to do? Is he messing with you? Do you think there's something wrong with his brain, or do you think my brain was kicked by a donkey? These words. Southern Heavenly Gate also expressed his agreement. After thinking about it carefully, this was indeed the case. There was no need for Lin Yi to disguise himself as Lin Heir. This was also good. Although they were rebuffed, they could at least confirm that the staring stone wasn't on Lin Yi's body. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for them to steal something from Lin Yi with their own strength. Yuzha had always been confident about this. He couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed. He was still suspicious, but the move that Lin Yi used just now was exactly the same as when Lin Heir dealt with my master. It's exactly the same as when Lin Heir dealt with my master. How do you explain this? Southern Heavenly Gate thought about it and said, this isn't strange. Although I'm not a pill master, I can still see that the theory behind the pill firebomb isn't too complicated. Any pill master with a bit of talent would only need to see it a few times to be able to imitate it. He was an expert that cultivated the small phaseless god technique. In terms of imitating martial skills, he had the most authority. If he was a pill master and could create a pill fire, he would have learned the pill firebomb a long time ago. Yuzha choked, but he didn't give up. He couldn't help but quibble. Since Lin Yi is called Lin One, then could Lin Heir be his brother? It's just like how eldest martial uncle is called Nan Tianba and my master is called Nan Tianyong. This disciple always felt that Lin Yi's figure and temperament were very similar to Lin Heir's. Get the hell out of here. There's no use talking about this, I'll just throw you down. Nan Tianba said impatiently. If it wasn't for the fact that Yuzha had a good eye for treasures, he would have already personally dealt with this troublemaker. Yuzha was so scared that he shrunk his neck. He covered his burning cheeks with one hand and didn't dare to make another sound. This eldest martial uncle was famous for his decisiveness in killing. If he really made him unhappy, he might really lose his life. Now it seemed that Lin Yi wasn't Lin Heir. This point could be confirmed. As a result, the three of them could only turn their attention back to Kong Ming Ming. However, if they wanted to take any action, they would have to carefully consider young Master Su Lingchong's attitude. They didn't know that in the few days that they had stayed on the extreme North Island, the three great pavilions of the North Island had long been in a mess. The news of Su Lingchong's disappearance was now known by everyone. Everyone was talking about this matter during their leisure time. Su Lingchong was one of the top young masters in the Soaring Sky Pavilion. In particular, he held the important position of the eldest senior brother who was in charge of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. In the eyes of everyone, he was a person with a boundless future. A while ago, he was the host of eldest Miss Shangguan's birthday banquet and showed his face in front of many important people. However, no one expected that such an influential person who was the center of attention would actually disappear for no reason. Actually, Su Lingchong didn't disappear for a long time. At the very most, it was only about 20 days. For cultivators who often had to go into closed-door training for several months or even several years, it was simply a snap of the fingers. If it was an ordinary person, they would have long gotten used to it and wouldn't even think about going missing. However, Su Lingchong was the eldest senior brother who was in charge of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. Everything from top to bottom had to go through his hands. If he didn't show up for more than 20 days consecutively, this matter was very serious. Chapter 40-35. The matter was of great importance. Under the uproar of the whole city, the higher-ups of the three pavilions finally ordered the law enforcement hall to intervene in the investigation. All the elites were dispatched and there was progress in just one day. The last time Su Lingchong appeared in front of people was when he hosted the birthday party, and the last person he met was actually Shanghai Laner. One was one of the best young masters in the Soaring Pavilion, and the other was the first miss of the Soaring Pavilion. The weight of these two people was not something that ordinary people could handle. In the end, only the hall master, Ram Jie, could personally come forward to question them. Shanghai Tianhua had no intention of interfering in this matter. He allowed Shanghai Laner to take the little curly bear to go to the law enforcement hall. However, after Shanghai Laner arrived at the law enforcement hall, she only said one sentence, which shocked everyone present. That day at the birthday party, Su Lingchong wanted to rape me under the influence of alcohol. Fortunately, my little white also drank wine, and he saved me after he went into a drunken frenzy. Such an explosive inside story made several higher-ups of the law enforcement hall stunned. They opened their mouths wide and couldn't react for a long time. Only Ram Jie didn't have any strange reaction. He said directly, "In that case, Su Lingchong should have failed to rape you, and then fled to avoid punishment." It seems so. It took a long time for the people of the law enforcement hall to recover from the shock, and they all echoed with strange expressions. Issue a wanted notice to arrest Su Lingchong. Ram Jie immediately made a decision with no expression on his face. As soon as the wanted notice was issued, not only the three pavilions, but even the whole North Island was in an uproar. There were all kinds of speculations about Su Lingchong's disappearance, but no one thought in this direction. The top young master of the Soaring Pavilion raped the first miss of the Soaring Pavilion. This was simply breaking news that could not be heard for hundreds of years. When Su Yuanjing heard the news, his lungs were about to explode. This was also the reason why he didn't know that his grandson's lower part had been eroded by the little curly bear. Otherwise he would probably have fainted on the spot. Su Lingchong, his grandson, was a core figure whom he was cultivating as the successor of the Su family. Now that he had done this, even if he could come back safe and sound in the future, his reputation would be ruined. Hall Lord Gong Yang Shengguan Laner's words are illogical. Putting aside the fact that my family's Chong'er would never do such a foolish thing, even if he had drunk too much and lost his mind for a moment, how could a mere little curly bear stop him? Aren't you being too arbitrary by directly issuing an arrest warrant without saying anything? Su Yuanjing said with a livid old face. Ram Jie raised his eyes and looked at him. Facing this powerful elder of the Elders Guild, Ram Jie felt that it was impossible. He did not have the slightest reverence on his face as he said indifferently, "Since when did it become Elder Su's turn to question how my law enforcement hall does things?" Su Yuanjing choked on his words for a long time. He knew that Ram Jie never bought anyone's words. This was the authority given to him by the island master of the North Island, but he never thought that the other party would not give him face. Why would he run if he had nothing to do? When Su Lingchong is arrested and brought to justice, this matter will naturally come to light. Elder Su, you'd better think about how to explain it to Pavilion Master Shangguan. Ram Jie curled his lips in disdain, then immediately swung his hand and left, leaving Su Yuanjing alone in a daze. Let's not talk about the uproar outside. During this period of time, Su Lingchong had been in a secret room somewhere, wholeheartedly practicing the chrysanthemum treasure book that the mysterious man had left for him. Just as Su Lingchong was concentrating on his practice, an official document was suddenly thrown in front of him. With just a glance, Su Lingchong turned pale with fright. This was the arrest warrant issued by the law enforcement hall. How could this be? Su Lingchong suddenly felt dizzy. Being cut into a eunuch by the little curly bear with a pair of scissors was already a big blow to him. Now that this happened, not only could he not be a man, he could not even be the young master of Soaring Sky Pavilion. Power and strength, these were the last driving forces that supported him to live. If he could not even achieve this little ambition, then what was the point of living? Looking at Su Lingchong's despairing expression at this time, the mysterious man suddenly said, "Strength is the most important, everything else is just fleeting clouds. If you have the strength that I have, then you can say that you are guilty, then you are guilty. If you say that you are innocent, then you are innocent. No one in the North Island would dare to point fingers at you." Su Lingchong suddenly raised his head and looked at the mysterious man who was still covered in a black robe. He knew that the purpose of the other party deliberately bringing the arrest warrant this time was to threaten him, to make him give up the thought of escaping, and in the future he could only follow him wholeheartedly. Once the arrest warrant was out, it could be said that he had nothing now. Even if the mysterious man was willing to let him out, he did not have the guts to return to the three great pavilions. Even the Su family could not tolerate him. After all, what was said in the warrant was all true. Finally, Su Lingchong took a deep breath and promised, "Senior, don't worry, I will definitely practice the Chrysanthemum Treasure Book and work hard to improve my strength." This reaction was not at all out of the mysterious man's expectation. He nodded and said, "Not bad, you have ambition. When you have enough strength, I can find a way to cancel this arrest warrant for you, so that you can openly return to the three great pavilions in the North Island." Hearing this guarantee, Su Lingchong's eyes suddenly lit up, and he nodded repeatedly to thank him. At the same time, he could not help but secretly speculate about the identity of this mysterious man. Listening to the tone of the other party's words, it did not seem that he was perfunctory. Looking at the whole North Island, there were actually very few people who had the influence to cancel the arrest warrant. Could it be that this person was a senior of the three great pavilions? Or was it that North Island owner? While Su Lingchong was speculating in private, he saw that in the dark of this secret room, a figure suddenly appeared again. Like the mysterious man, he was covered in a large black robe. Normally speaking, every cultivator can change their mental cultivation method mnemonics once in the Tao of Heaven. However, you're already in the foundation establishment stage, so it's a bit late. In order to help you get used to it as quickly as possible, I invited a fierce person to give you some pointers. He's an expert that even my superiors think highly of, so you'd better show some respect. After saying this, the mysterious man turned to the person beside him and said, "Junior Brother Pao, I thank you in advance for letting you take time out of your busy schedule to come here to help guide me." The man in the black robe, who was called Junior Brother Pao, snorted and said, "Well, it's nothing. It's all for the organization." Chapter 4036. Su Lingchong was evasive. Thinking back to the time when Kang Ming flattered him, he could only bite the bullet and shout, "Gunslinger." As the young master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, it was always others who flattered him. When had he ever taken the initiative to flatter others? But he had to lower his head when he was under someone else's roof. In this situation, if he didn't know what was good for him, he would only be asking for trouble. Unexpectedly, just as Su Lingchong shouted "Gunslinger," he was immediately kicked into a corner by the mysterious man. He almost suffered internal injuries. "Gunslinger is for you to call? You mean you and I are of the same generation?" The mysterious man's tone was unfriendly. Su Lingchong was shocked. Ignoring the pain in his body, he hurriedly said, "Master Pao, your aptitude is not bad. You also have hatred in your heart. It is suitable for you to practice my unique Chrysanthemum Treasured Book." Junior Pao nodded and said, "Actually, you don't have to worry too much. The ultimate meaning of the Chrysanthemum Treasured Book is to take over someone else's body and be reborn. Although you are incomplete now, and are an incomplete man, as long as you practice with me in the future, as long as your strength reaches that level, you can take over someone else's body and be reborn." Taking over someone else's body and being reborn was an extremely rare thing even in the world of cultivation where experts gathered. Even with Su Lingchong's experience, he had only heard of rumors and had never actually come into contact with it. He didn't expect that the Chrysanthemum Treasured Book that the mysterious man wanted him to practice actually had such a legendary technique. "That's great, yeah. I want to take over Lin Yi's body." Su Lingchong immediately swept away the haze that had been hanging over him recently. No man would really want to be a eunuch. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, they would grasp it tightly as their last hope. It's good that there is hatred." A cold smile flashed across Junior Pao's face. He then handed Su Lingchong a piece of paper and said, "This is my summary of my experiences. It will be very beneficial for your cultivation of the Chrysanthemum Treasured Book. I'll give it to you as a reference. Also, this medicinal pill is to be swallowed in conjunction with the cultivation of the Chrysanthemum Treasure Book. I've already used less than half of this starring stone, so you can use it as well. Let this mysterious senior brother teach you how to use it." "Thank you, Master Pao. Thank you so much." Su Lingchong did not suspect anything. He received it and nodded his head to express his thanks. Right now, his mind was only filled with one thing, and that was to seize another body and be reborn. Looking at Su Lingchong's performance, Junior Brother Pao and the mysterious man looked at each other and laughed silently. In West Island, as soon as Ning Shuefei came back from the auction in the far North Island, she couldn't wait to find her best friend. If Lin Yi was here, he would be surprised to see her best friend was Han Jingjing. Ever since she came to Heaven Stage Island, Han Jingjing still maintained her interest in the secular world and always liked to study some strange mechanisms. Ning Xuefei, the daughter of the Ning family, also had the same hobby. After a chance encounter, the two of them hit it off immediately. Soon they became super best friends. It was a pity that the technology on Heaven Stage Island was limited. Without those electronic components, Han Jingjing could no longer make automatic medicine cauldrons. Therefore, there was no way to refine elixirs anymore. The two of them could only study some other delicate mechanisms together. Although Ning Xuefei did not like to practice, just like the King of Rags, she was a proper armament master. When she chatted with Han Jingjing, she accidentally found that they had a common master, that was Sun Seacombe. More or less, they had both received guidance from Sun Seacombe. With this unexpected relationship, the relationship between the two became closer. They talked almost everything. No matter what happened, they wanted to share it with each other as soon as possible. Jingjing, look, these elixirs are the biggest harvest I got from this trip to the far north island. What do you think of the quality of these elixirs? Ning Xuefei said with an expression of presenting treasures. The quality of these elixirs should be very rare even among the best ones. It's the first time I've seen such good elixirs since I came to Heaven Stage Island. They're just like the ones refined by Brother Lin Yi in the secular world. Han Jingjing suddenly said in amazement. Hehe. My eyes are very good, right? Do you want to know where these elixirs came from? Ning Xuefei pretended to be mysterious. How? Han Jingjing asked cooperatively. Ning Xuefei giggled and didn't keep Han Jingjing guessing anymore. She told Han Jingjing everything that had happened during the auction, especially about her and Lin Yi. Ning Xuefei told Han Jingjing everything that had happened during the auction, especially about her and Lin Yi. After listening, Han Jingjing's big eyes flashed and she asked, Feifei, that little fellow, what's his name? Ning Xuefei was stunned and scratched her head. I don't know, I forgot to ask. What does he look like? Han Jingjing asked again. Jingjing, why are you asking so carefully? Ning Xuefei looked up and down at Han Jingjing suspiciously. Suddenly she hugged Han Jingjing and laughed. I know. Jingjing, have you fallen in love with that young fellow after what I said to you? She thought. If there's a chance, I'll help you matchmake him? Han Jingjing suddenly blushed and wrinkled her nose. Forget it, you know that I already have someone I like. She talked to Ning Xuefei about everything in the common world, especially things related to Lin Yi. Ning Xuefei knew all about it. Alright, let's not talk about this for now. Let's continue to study the automatic casting mechanism today. I can't wait for the past few days. Ning Xuefei played around for a while, then dragged Han Jingjing to a secret room. This was a secret base that was specially set up for their research. Well, about this automatic casting mechanism, I've thought of a new idea these days. We can try it. Han Jingjing immediately put the matter of the little fellow behind her and discussed it excitedly. Of course, Lin Yi didn't notice it at all. After returning to the North Island, he also heard about Su Lingchong. Although it was a little unexpected, it was still reasonable. The attempted rape was a fact. Even if Shanghai Laner didn't take the initiative to report it, Su Lingchong certainly wouldn't have the guts to show up rashly. Especially from the original situation, his current situation was still unknown. As for his disappearance, it was normal. But what Lin Yi didn't expect was that with Su Lingchong's background, he would be beaten when he was down. Under the command of Ram Jia, the law enforcement hall was really confident. That's good. The law enforcement hall saved me a lot of trouble by doing this. Lin Yi looked at the wanted poster and smiled knowingly. Chapter 4037. The hatred formed at the birthday party last time could be said to be irreconcilable. Su Lingchong could jump out from the dark at any time to launch a sneak attack. With his strength in the peak of Foundation establishment, it was no doubt difficult to deal with. But now, not only the 3 pavilions but also other places in the North Island were also covered with wanted posters from the law enforcement hall. Su Lingchong didn't even dare to show up, let alone launch a sneak attack on Lin Yi. At least in a short period of time, Lin Yi didn't need to worry about his threat. However, people without foresight would have immediate worries. Soon Lin Yi received bad news. Hong Zhong was about to leave the North Island. As the incoming vice president of the headquarters of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, Hong Zhong's departure was a foregone conclusion from the moment he was appointed. What really gave Lin Yi a headache was what Hong Zhong told him before he left. Young hero Lin, according to your request, I have asked the headquarters not to deal with your identity as the honorary vice president publicly. Only the president and the executive vice president know about it. Don't worry, Hong Zhong said. Well, thank you, Mr. Hong. Lin Yi breathed a sigh of relief. This was a matter of course. As a newcomer in Blue Cloud Pavilion, if he suddenly made such an arrogant identity as the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, he would simply attract hatred. There would inevitably be people who would be envious and hate him. This was also inconsistent with Lin Yi's purpose of improving his strength in a low-key manner. However, what Hong Zhong said next made his face change slightly. I'm leaving today to go to Middle Island to take the position of the vice president. If everything goes well, the new manager of the North Island branch will be in place in 2 days. Young hero Lin, you have to be careful of this person. What do you mean? Lin Yi's eyes narrowed. This person's name is Si Haishao. He was originally the supervisor of Hong Ying Group in the headquarters of Middle Island, responsible for supervising the branch managers. This time, taking advantage of the vacancy in the North Island branch, he spent a lot of effort to fight for this position. Hong Zhong paused and then said, "There is one thing you still don't know, young hero Lin. Previously, Southern Sky Gate came to threaten me to give out the details of your other identity. At that time, they used Si Haishao's personal letter as a threat. So, this Si Haishao has a close relationship with Nan Tianba and the others?" Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a headache after hearing this. With his relationship with Hong Zhong, it would be easy for him to ask the Hong Chamber of Commerce for help in the future, such as purchasing the heart-devouring exquisite grass. Even if it was someone else with Hong Zhong's help, it wouldn't be a big problem for them either. However, if this successor had a close relationship with Nan Tianba and his group, it would be extremely difficult to ask the Hong Chamber of Commerce for help. Even if Hong Zhong was his immediate superior, the branch shopkeeper was a feudal lord and had great autonomy. If he insisted on not cooperating with such a small matter that had nothing to do with his principles, even Hong Zhong would not be able to do anything to him. Not bad, and this guy is from Hong Ying's team. His intelligence surveillance ability is far above that of a normal person. Once you are targeted by him, it will be very difficult for you to hide any secrets. So, young hero Lin, you must be careful. Hong Zhong reminded again. Lin Yi nodded and said, "I understand. Thank you for your concern, Elder Hong. Elder Hong must have faced many challenges on this trip to Middle Island. I wish you all the best. You will be promoted step by step." Hong Zhong smiled and said, "Then I will borrow young hero Lin's auspicious words. This old man will go to Middle Island to fight a preliminary battle. If nothing goes wrong, we will meet again on Middle Island." "See you on Middle Island." Lin Yi smiled slightly. Hong Zhong originally thought that the new branch shopkeeper, Si Haishao, would take at least a few days to arrive. However, he did not know that when he said goodbye to Lin Yi, Si Haishao had already arrived on North Island. However, he did not appear in public and had been investigating in secret. Before the troops and horses moved, the intelligence was already in advance. As the former Hong Ying Group's four-direction supervisor, even if Si Haishao became the shopkeeper of the North Island branch, he would not get rid of this habit that he had developed over the years. As for Nan Tianba and the others, since they were the local tyrants of North Island and had various connections with him, they were naturally the first choice for Si Haishao to understand the situation. "Supervisor Si, oh no, you should be shopkeeper Si now. I did not expect you to be transferred to North Island. This news really made us overjoyed. We have finally found a backer. In the future, please take care of us, shopkeeper Si." Southern Sky Gate said with a flattering smile. Nan Tianba was arrogant and disdained flattery, while Yuji's level was not high enough. Therefore, among the few of them, Southern Sky Gate had the closest relationship with Si Haishao. Well said, well said. We are all on the same side. As long as you help me in the future, I won't mistreat you guys, ha. However, this is my first time here, so my understanding of North Island is mostly literal information. As for the specific situation, I still need you guys to tell me in detail. Si Haishao said with an amiable expression. Okay. Southern Sky Gate was happy to show off, so he immediately nodded. Although they had looked down on Hong Zhong previously, the position of the manager of the Hong Chamber of Commerce's North Island branch was extremely important to anyone. Otherwise, Hong Zhong would not have been able to easily become an honored guest of Shangguan Tianhua, who was one of the top figures of the three pavilions. If they could curry favor with him, the benefits were self-evident. Especially after the few confrontations with Hong Zhong, they knew the background of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, so they were even more respectful. The three members of the South Heaven Gate immediately poured out everything they knew about the forces on the North Island to Si Haishao. They didn't even hide some of the secrets of the three great pavilions that no one knew about. In the end, Southern Sky Gate did not forget to mention Lin Yi. Although they were now sure that Lin Yi was not the second Lin they were looking for, after the incident on North Island, they had already become enemies with Lin Yi and Hong Zhong. Strike first and gain the upper hand. Now that they had a backer like Si Haishao, it would be a waste if they did not make good use of him. After listening to their narration, Si Haishao pondered for a moment and said, I think it's best to slow down the matter of finding trouble with Lin Yi. Now that Hong Zhong is in the limelight, once he goes to Middle Island and is separated from Lin Yi for a long time, their relationship will naturally fade. It won't be too late to make a move on Lin Yi then. Hearing this, Nan Qianba and the others looked at each other. That's not right, the meaning behind it was too obvious. Chapter 4038. From the Hong Ying group to the manager of the North Island branch, Si Haixiao's position had changed a lot. Not only did he have his own connections but more importantly, Nan Qianba and the others' uncles had spent a lot of money to help him get in touch with an amazing business performance. This made him, a supervisor who was not in charge of business, stand out in the Hong Chamber of Commerce and had the capital to compete for a higher position. Seeing that Si Haixiao had already put it this way, Nan Qianba and the others could not force him and could only nod silently. During this period of time, I'd better think of a way to investigate the whereabouts of Lin Air for you. Si Haixiao laughed. Although he was not familiar with the people in the place, he had a deep relationship with the Hong Ying Group's intelligence system. If he wanted to use the Hong Ying Group's intelligence force in the North Island, it was just a matter of a word. Thank you, Manager Si. Nan Qianba and the others were immediately overjoyed. They only wanted revenge against Lin Yi, but if they found Lin Air, not only could they avenge their third brother, Nan Tianyong, but they could also get a huge benefit like the Star Ink Stone. This matter was much more important. At the same time, Si Haixiao, Nan Qianba, and the others were planning on this side. After sending Hong Zhong away, Lin Yi went to find the Garbage King and gave him all the materials he needed, shocking the guy to the point where his jaw dropped. Although he listed 7 kinds of casting materials for Lin Yi and pointed out the way of auction, the King of Junk really did not expect that Lin Yi could buy them so smoothly. If it was him, he probably would not have the hope of collecting so many top-grade materials in his life. The casting materials had been collected, but the King of Junk did not immediately start casting. As a casting master, he needed to spend time to familiarize himself with these materials. Otherwise, if he acted rashly, the success rate would be worrying. Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't have much to do during this time. The professional, the King of Junk, was in charge of the preparations. As for the daily life in the Welcome Pavilion, because of Su Lingchong's sudden disappearance, Kang Mingming's group had obviously ceased all activities. Consequently, Lin Yi's life became peaceful. Murong Zhen gritted her teeth, but there was nothing she could do. Without Kang Mingming and the others to stand up for her, it would be impossible for her to defeat Lin Yi on her own. However, how could a vengeful creature like her give up so easily? Since there was no opportunity to push the boat along with the current, then he would take the initiative to create an opportunity and stir up more waves. While the King of Junk was making his final preparations, Lin Yi was cultivating as usual. Other than familiarizing himself with the new killer moves, he also needed time to stabilize his new realm. Previously, he had heard people say that every peak of the Foundation Establishment realm was an insurmountable threshold. The last time he broke through to the peak of the early stage of the Foundation Establishment realm was a clear example. This time he was at the peak of the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. If he did not diligently cultivate, then no matter how many pills he had, it would be useless. However, just a few days ago there was a rumor about Lin Yi. It was widely spread in the 3 pavilions. Boss, is it true that you like Miss Shangguan? When they got together, Qiao Hong asked with a mischievous look. Boss, is it true? Even senior brother Bitter, Xiao Ran, and Li Jingming had the word gossip written clearly on their faces. What do you mean? Lin Yi was confused. Junior brother Lin. You don't have to pretend in front of us. It's not shameful to say it out loud. Just admit it. Even an honest man like senior brother Bitter began to wink at him. Lin Yi was even more confused. He looked at them with strange expressions and asked curiously, What's going on? What do you want me to admit? The few of them looked at each other. In the end, it was still Xiao Ran who slowly explained, Recently there has been a very hot rumor circulating in the streets. Boss, you like Miss Shangguan, but unfortunately, you didn't confess to her during the birthday party. Su Lingchong realized the danger because he saw you alone with Miss Shangguan. That was why he attempted to rape you. This rumor could be said to have a nose and eyes, and it did somewhat corroborate the situation that day. In addition, the protagonists were influential figures like Shangguan Laner and Su Lingchong, so it was completely in line with everyone's needs for gossip. It was reasonable that it spread more and more intensely in a place like the 3 pavilions. Looking at the few people with a strong thirst for knowledge, Lin Yi shrugged helplessly. It's said that rumors stop with the wise. You guys don't really believe that there's such a thing, right? There's obviously a problem with the logic here. If I fail to confess to Shangguan Laner, then what's Su Lingcheng worried about? Just because he saw me getting closer to Shangguan Laner, he went crazy and tried to rape her. In the end, he ended up being wanted on the wanted list. Is Su Lingcheng so brainless? That's true. Senior brother Bitter and the others nodded one after another. In fact, they didn't really believe this rumor, but it was an obvious fact that Shangguan Laner looked at Lin Yi in a different light. In the end, they just wanted to know if Lin Yi was interested in this Miss Shangguan. However, this rumor suddenly came out. Is it purely because everyone is gossiping, or is someone playing tricks in the dark? Lin Yi couldn't help but have more doubts between his brows. Regardless of what more far-reaching impact it would have in the future, this rumor had already put Lin Yi on fire. Next, Lin Yi's every move would be paid attention to. It was really not a small trouble. When Lin Yi said this, senior brother Bitter and the others' eyelids twitched at the same time. Yes, if this rumor is taken seriously, then junior brother Lin, you're in danger. This is equivalent to becoming the culprit of Su Lingcheng's current situation. Su Yuanjing has always regarded him as the future of the Su family. It's hard to guarantee that he won't retaliate. That's a possibility. However, Su Yuanjing is an elder, and he has always presented himself as a righteous and honorable person. The possibility of him making a move against me shouldn't be high. After all, that would give others a chance to use him against me. Lin Yi shook his head. Compared to his own situation, he was more worried about Shangguan Lan. Although she had the dazzling halo of Shangguan Tianhua's only granddaughter, Shanghai Laner did not have much strength. She was a little naive and simple, and she often sneaked out with the little curly bear. If someone really wanted to target her, there was a chance that they would succeed. It was unknown whether they had a tacit understanding, or Cao Cao just arrived on time. While they were discussing, they saw a small figure in the distance running towards Lin Yi. It was the little curly bear. Chapter 4039. Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he didn't say much. Seeing that the little curly bear dared to come to the welcome pavilion in broad daylight, he sighed in his heart. Now that there was no big trouble like Su Lingcheng, his little senior sister was obviously not vigilant anymore. If it was in the past, she wouldn't have let the little curly bear come at this time. The purpose of the little curly bear coming was naturally to send a letter for Shanghai Laner. There were only 7 words in the letter. See you in the woods in 3 days. There were too many of them to count, and anyone else would have had no idea what they were talking about. Only Lin Yi himself knew which part of the forest he was referring to. 3 days passed by in a flash. Lin Yi arrived on time, and the location was the woods where he and Shanghai Laner had their first date. Sure enough, as soon as Lin Yi passed through the forest path, he saw Shanghai Laner waving at him from the pavilion. Little junior brother, I heard that you went to the extreme North Island a few days ago. How was it? Was it fun there? Shanghai Laner asked excitedly as soon as they met. It was alright, but this time I went to participate in the auction, so I didn't play much. Lin Yi smiled and nodded, but he was a little surprised in his heart. He had never told anyone about him going to the extreme North Island with Hong Zhong. How come even the big Miss Shanghai Laner had heard about it now? Little did he know, on the first day that Nan Tianba and the others returned from the extreme North Island, they urged the Welcome Pavilion's pavilion master, Hu Yunfeng, to report this matter to the higher-ups of the 3 pavilions. They accused Lin Yi, as a newcomer, of not following the rules and running around. Even if they couldn't let Lin Yi receive any substantial punishment, they still wanted to use this matter to disgust him. However, everyone's focus was on the wanted Su Lingcheng, so no one paid attention to such a small matter. Of course, if Lin Yi made any more mistakes in the future, this matter would inevitably be brought up by people with ulterior motives. At that time, it would be one disaster after another. That's a pity. I heard from Feifei that the extreme North Island is very fun. It's just that my grandpa never goes there and he never lets me go alone. Shangguan Laner's beautiful eyes turned and she suddenly said, how about we sneak out to play next time and don't let my grandpa know? Quack. Lin Yi was still wondering who the Feifei that Shangguan Laner mentioned was. When he suddenly heard such a sentence, he couldn't help but be shocked. He hadn't even done anything with this little senior sister, but there were already rumors spreading everywhere. If he really brought her to the northernmost island, wouldn't he be caught and criticized? What? Are you unwilling? Shangguan Laner frowned. Lin Yi reacted quickly, oh I see. Let's wait for a chance. The extreme North Island is heavily guarded. You can't just go in whenever you want. Alright then. Shangguan Laner pouted and suddenly said, little junior brother, this time you rarely go to the northernmost island. Did you bring a gift for me, your senior sister? Linny was thinking about this matter. He immediately nodded and said, I brought it. Saying that, he took out 2 strings of crystal blue necklaces from his arms, and handed one of them to Shangguan Laner. Shangguan Laner suddenly became happy. She held the necklace and cheered, Little junior brother, you have a conscience. Senior sister really didn't dote on you in vain. This necklace is so beautiful. I like it very much. Since little senior sister likes it, then it couldn't be better. Lin Yi smiled with relief and then introduced, These 2 necklaces, in fact, I found a blacksmith to guide me from the side these 2 days. I personally made it. Really? Shangguan Laner's eyes lit up when she heard this. The necklace was bought by someone else and the necklace that Lin Yi personally made. In her eyes, this necklace was completely different. This necklace was the result of Lin Yi's painstaking efforts. Of course it's true. I bought a pair of blue photon crystals at the Extreme North Islands auction, so I had a sudden impulse to make a pair of mother and child necklaces. After injecting vital chi, the 2 necklaces can sense each other. Little senior sister, after you wear this necklace, if you encounter danger and get nervous, the vital chi I inject will fluctuate, so no matter where you are, I can sense your position, Lin Yi explained. The idea of making a mother and child necklace was not purely a whim, but after hearing the recent rumors, Lin Yi thought of a way to protect Shangguan Laner in disguise. In this way, if she encountered any danger, Lin Yi would be able to sense it. It's so magical, then I can't let little junior brother down. Shangguan Laner immediately jumped for joy and wore the blue photon crystals necklace in front of Lin Yi. How is it, little junior brother? Does it look good on me? Shangguan Laner raised her neck and turned around. Her beauty was like that of a fairy descending to the mortal world. Even with Lin Yi's mental fortitude, he could not help but stare at her. It looks great, Lin Yi praised sincerely. Hee little junior brother's mouth is so sweet, I like it. Shangguan Laner teased innocently. On the contrary, Lin Yi, an old man, who had been in love for a long time, actually blushed in embarrassment. This time Shangguan Laner asked Lin Yi out for no special reason. It was purely for fun. Moreover, this little senior sister did not have any airs of a rich lady. It was relaxing and happy to be with her. There was a balance between work and rest. It was rare for Lin Yi to accompany her to relax for a day. The next day Lin Yi calculated that it was about time. He immediately went to the secret cave base of the King of Rags, and began to start the final countdown of casting. After these days of contact, Lin Yi had a good understanding of the King of Rags. He also believed that this casting master, who had never had any outstanding achievements, could cast a powerful magic weapon to his liking with these rare materials that he had painstakingly collected. However, as a casting master himself, Lin Yi naturally could not just be a carefree hands-off boss. Even if he could not control the whole casting process with his ability, it was not a big problem for him to help the King of Rags. Moreover, whether he succeeded or failed, he would definitely benefit a lot. The super rare materials, including the 10,000-year tree crystal and the ancient Pure Land, were included in the casting process. This time, it was almost an unprecedented feat in the entire cultivation world. Not to mention Lin Yi and the King of Rags, even the most powerful top casting master would be thrilled. The King of Rags had said to Lin Yi more than once that this casting would be recorded in history and make him famous all over the world. Chapter 40. The Garbage King didn't mention this change, but Lin Yi could tell from his actions that the guy was even more careful than Lin Yi, the person in question. He didn't want the slightest accident to happen. From the beginning to the end, the King of Wornout looked at the whole casting plan again and again and changed it tirelessly. Even the word nitpicking was not enough to describe the King of Wornout's strictness. After finishing the final preparations with the King of Wornout, Lin Yi asked, "Everything is ready. Is it time to start casting?" However, after the King of Junk cleaned his clothes again, he shook his head and said, "It's not working yet." "Why not?" Lin Yi paused. As an assassin, his patience wasn't bad, but after going through so many rounds of preparation, even his patience was running out. The King of Wornout deserved to be a research genius. Once he devoted himself to it, his persistence could not be tolerated by ordinary people. "Brother Lin, can you find some weapons or props that have been formed outside? It doesn't matter if they are of high or low grade. I have an idea that might be useful in casting," the King of Wornout said while rubbing his forehead. After thinking for a while, Lin Yi took out a ring and handed it to him, saying, "Will this ring of genuine chi work?" The King of Wornout's eyes lit up. He immediately nodded and said, "Yes, as long as it is a formed wizard weapon. It's just an auxiliary material. Anyway, it's better to have more of this kind of weapon just in case." If that's the case, I still have a few old weapons. Since I can't use them now, I can take them to forge for you. What Lin Yi referred to were the heaven-level weapons he collected in the secular world. It was a good time to make use of them. After informing the king of worn out, Lin Yi was about to find a secluded corner. He planned to take out those heaven-level wizard weapons from the space of the jade pendant. However, at this moment, an inexplicable throbbing came from his heart. The source was the genuine chi fluctuation of the mother of blue light necklace on his chest. Lin Yi had never thought that the mother and child necklace he had given to Shanghai Laner would come in handy in just a few days. Sensing Shangguan Laner's location through the mother-child necklace, Lin Yi suddenly found that Shanghai Laner was very far away at the moment, although she was still within the range of North Island. But from the looks of it, at least they had completely left the territory of the three great pavilions. The connection between the mother and child necklaces will only give a clear warning when Shanghai Laner feels danger and is nervous. Therefore, the possibility of Shanghai Tianhua taking her out can be ruled out. This little senior sister might really be in big trouble if she is so far away from the three pavilions. Just as Lin Yi sensed the crisis, far away in the wilderness on the other side of North Island. In a shabby martial arts field, Shanghai Laner was tied up. As for the little curly bear who was always by her side, he was knocked unconscious. He was put in a sack and thrown in a corner, with a strong smell of alcohol on his body. "Hey, what do you want to do by bringing me to this shabby place?" Shanghai Laner's behavior at this time was simply shocking. Not only was he not afraid like before, he even shouted angrily at the two black-clothed masked men in front of him. At the same time, she also secretly glanced at the little curly bear in the corner, with hidden hope in her eyes. The cause of the accident this time was this little fellow. If the little fellow hadn't come out to steal wine to drink, Shanghai Laner would not have rushed out. Otherwise, if she had stayed in the heavily guarded territory of Rising Sky Pavilion, the two masked men in black in front of her would not have had a chance to kidnap her. However, thinking of the magical performance of the little fellow after drinking the spiritual wine last time, Shanghai Laner still had some confidence in the bottom of her heart. Even Su Lingchong's family jewels could be erased. It should be no problem to deal with these two masked men in black who did not look very strong, right? One of the masked men in black glanced at her and said in a hoarse voice that was obviously deliberately changed, "Do you still need to ask? Of course it's to kidnap you. Is it strange to kidnap a rich lady like you?" "Say kidnap this lady, don't tell me you really dare to ask my grandfather for ransom?" Shanghai Laner curled her lips in disdain. Even if her own strength was not good, she could see that the strength of these two people was not to the extent of being abnormal. It was impossible for them to challenge her grandfather, Shanghai Tianhua. "Who told you that kidnappings must be for ransom?" A rich lady like you is really ignorant," the masked man in black replied mockingly. Shanghai Laner was immediately stunned. At this time, the other masked man in black also opened his mouth. It was a rather familiar female voice. "Without this big obstacle, Su Lingchong, boss will be able to smoothly ascend the position this time and become the son-in-law of Shanghai Tianhua. It's just a matter of time." The male masked man glared at her and carefully looked at Shanghai Laner. He turned his head and reprimanded, "Don't talk nonsense." The female masked man did not care. "What's there to be afraid of? When the rice is cooked, do you think we'll be afraid that this little girl won't admit it? We're only doing this because we have no other choice. Otherwise, with boss's relationship with her, although it's not bad, there's still a long way to go to get the approval of Shanghai Tianhua. After all, his identity is not good. He's just a newcomer in the welcoming pavilion, he's not good enough." As the two masked men talked, they paid attention to Shanghai Laner's expression. However, they found that this little girl did not have the doubt and understanding that they had imagined. Instead, she looked at the two of them as if they were crazy. These two people must be sick in the head. I don't know what they're talking about. Shanghai Laner did not pay attention to the two people's words at all. She only secretly glanced at the little curly bear and found that the little guy was snoring like thunder. She was speechless and rolled her eyes. How could he sleep at such a crucial time? This little guy was really unreliable. Shanghai Laner was speechless. The two masked men in black were even more speechless than her. They had deliberately racked their brains to come up with these words just now and deliberately said it to Shanghai Laner face to face. In the end, this little girl did not take it seriously at all. What could they do? They really did not know whether this little girl, Shanghai Laner, was too careless or her brain was really not good. The direction of the words was so obvious, how could she not have any reaction after hearing it? The two masked men looked at each other speechlessly, but there was nothing they could do. They could not repeat these words to her face, right? That would really make them crazy. Chapter 40-41. After the man walked into the broken martial arts practice field, he carefully looked at the two people outside. After making sure that no one was looking at him, he quickly turned around and walked to Shanghai Laner, whispering, "Miss Shangguan, I actually pretend to be with boss. In fact, I'm in Chao camp, but my heart is in Han camp. I can help you inform him. Although I dare not let you go, you can write a letter to your grandfather. I will send it for you and ask him to save you." Write a letter? How should I write it? Shangguan Lan turned to look at him. It's very simple. You just need to tell your grandfather that you were kidnapped by boss Lin Yi. The masked man in black guided her. Hearing this, Shanghai Laner's eyes curved into a beautiful crescent. Seeing that the masked man in black was staring at her eagerly, she suddenly smiled helplessly and said, "But I don't study much and I can't read." Quack. The masked man in black almost choked to death. "You are the Miss Shangguan, the pearl of Tianhua's palm. How could you say that you can't read?" The masked man in black was stunned for a long time. He didn't know whether it was true or not. After all, some cultivators had been cultivating since childhood. It was not impossible for them to be illiterate. So he said, "How about this, you tell me to write it and then you sign it?" Shanghai Laner continued to shake her head. "No, I've never signed it. In the 3 pavilions of the North Island, who dares to ask me to sign it? You?" Even under the black mask, the masked man's twitching expression could be seen. "Do you still want your grandfather to know that you were kidnapped by Lin Yi and ask him to come here to save you?" "No, it's fun here. Let's talk about it in a few days. I don't want my grandfather to worry about me, so that he won't ask me to cultivate all day long." Shanghai Laner looked like she was going to take things as they came. The masked man in black almost choked to death by his own saliva. This time he was completely at his wit's end. How could he deal with this girl? At this moment, outside the broken martial arts arena, the 2 masked men from before had already taken off their masks. If there were people in the welcoming pavilion, they would definitely be shocked. These 2 people were actually Kang Mingming and Murong Zhen. As long as we hand that chick's handwritten letter to Shangguan Tianhua, Lin Yi will be in deep trouble. "Deacon Kang, you're really smart." Murong Zhen laughed excitedly. "You flatter me. How could you come up with such a daring idea as kidnapping Shangguan Lan?" "Lady Murong's courage is truly admirable," Kang Mingming replied proudly. At the same time, he turned his head to look at the broken arena. "I just didn't expect that girl to be so stupid. She couldn't even hear such an obvious hint. Now we can only pin our hopes on Cha Wu." "Don't worry, Deacon Kang. Although Cha Wu is a fence-sitter with no loyalty, he's not one to be trifled with. Even if it's just to save his own life, he wouldn't dare to ruin our plan," Murong Zhen said confidently. As the 2 of them were talking, Cha Wu had already come out from the other side. His head was hanging low and he looked dejected and speechless. "Cha Wu, how did it go? Is it done?" Kang Mingming asked. "Don't mention it." Cha Wu looked extremely depressed. After listening to Cha Wu's report, both Kang Mingming and Murong Zhen were dumbfounded. How did Shangguan Tianhua raise his only granddaughter? She's already been kidnapped. How can she still be so open-minded? Is she stupid? Kang Mingming thought about it and made a decision immediately. A long delay may cause trouble. We can't wait any longer. Lady Murong, you should go back and report now. Anyway, Lin Yi has been appearing and disappearing mysteriously recently. We don't know where he is hiding. No matter what you say, you are right. This? All right. Murong Zhen hesitated for a while, but she nodded and agreed in the end. It was actually quite a risky thing to report Lin Yi. However, since Kang Mingming had already said so, she couldn't just reject him. If the 2 of them had an internal conflict, it would be over. After all, Shanghai Laner's identity was not to be underestimated. Every moment they waited would increase the danger. Murong Zhen immediately set off for the 3 major pavilions and went straight to the law enforcement hall to report. She claimed that she accidentally saw Lin Yi and his men kidnapping Shanghai Laner. As soon as she said that, the entire law enforcement hall was shocked. Last time she was raped by Su Lingchong. How long had it been this time? She was kidnapped again. Could it be that this year was the year of Shanghai Laner's birth? Not only was the report shocking, but the law enforcement hall's reaction, or more accurately, the hall master Ram Jie's reaction, was even more shocking. Within an hour after receiving Murong Zhen's report, the law enforcement hall directly issued an arrest warrant to arrest Lin Yi without even notifying his relative, Shanghai Tianhua. Such a decisive and swift reaction was like heaven and earth compared to the time when Nan Tianyong had been killed. Even Murong Zhen, the person who had exposed the truth, felt that it was unbelievable when he saw all of this. She thought that the law enforcement hall would at least interrogate her carefully. She had even made a mental draft in advance. However, she didn't expect that things would go so smoothly. It was so smooth that she was a little depressed. She had prepared for nothing. She hadn't even shown her ability, but she was not allowed to speak. However, thinking of what Su Lingchong had done before, it should be understandable. When it came to Shanghai Laner, the speed was indeed fast. As soon as the arrest warrant was issued, the three pavilions were in an uproar again. What was more surprising was that only 2 hours after the arrest warrant was issued, Lin Yi, who was still ignorant of all this, was directly caught on the spot. Seeing that his arrest warrant was jointly suppressed by a group of experts of the law enforcement hall, Lin Yi finally realized that all this was a conspiracy aimed at him. These days he was busy studying how to cast weapons with the King of Rags, so his thinking was somewhat out of line with the outside world. If it had been in the past, with Lin Yi's usual cautious style, he should have been vigilant when he found that Shanghai Laner was in danger. He would never swagger back to the welcome pavilion and even go up to see his arrest warrant. However, it was too late now. Falling into the hands of the law enforcement hall, Lin Yi couldn't escape by force with his own strength. Everything else depended on Ram Jie's mood. Judging from his contact with Ram Jie at the birthday party last time, with Ram Jie's arrogant and domineering personality, Lin Yi's intuition told him that he should not be the type of person who liked to play tricks. If he wanted to deal with him, there was no need for him to take such a big detour and even use such a sensitive person as Shanghai Laner to make an issue. Chapter 40-42. If he could reason with him and move him emotionally, he might be able to fight for a chance to escape when Ram Jie questioned him. However, Lin Yi soon discovered that he had thought of all this too simply. After he was caught, he was directly locked in the dungeon, and Ram Jie did not show up from the beginning to the end, nor did he give him any chance to speak. Being locked in the cold and dark dungeon without any response, Lin Yi was completely helpless. In the past, when Shanghai Laner was still here, he could still be rescued if he was locked in. But now that Shangguan Laner was missing, he could not even protect himself. Who would come to help him? As for senior brother Ku Bai and the others, their weight was simply not enough. They could not even enter the dungeon, let alone be of any help. Just when Lin Yi was at a loss of what to do, the dungeon door suddenly opened, and a burst of dense footsteps approached from afar, stopping only when they reached the door of his dungeon. Lin Yi could not help but secretly speculate in his heart. Looking at this posture, could it be that Ram Jie was finally ready to interrogate him? At this moment, not far from the door, an old but dignified voice sounded, "Open the door, all of you go out, this old man wants to see him alone." Lin Yi was slightly stunned until he saw the face of the person who came, and was immediately shocked. Although the other party was only wearing an extremely ordinary yellow robe, and at first glance, he was just an ordinary old man, but the aura that was revealed from his every movement was inexplicably awe-inspiring, and even could not help but give birth to a trace of the impulse to surrender. The person who came was actually Shangguan Laner's grandfather, Soaring Sky Pavilion's pavilion master, Shanghai Tianhua. Shangguan Tianhua swept his gaze across the prison cell. It was filled with filthy and smelly things. There were even all sorts of venomous snakes and venomous insects entrenched in them. He smiled faintly and said, "After so many years, this brat Gong Yangjie still likes to do this. I wonder where he got so many venomous creatures." After saying that, Shanghai Tianhua used his feet to clear away a pile of moldy straw. There were also a few venomous snakes entrenched on it. They sat on the ground without a care and waved at Lin Yi. "Don't just stand there. Sit down and talk." This was not the first time that Lin Yi had seen Shanghai Tianhua, but compared to the high and mighty image of the big shot at the birthday party last time, the one in front of him was... He had clearly changed into another kind of temperament, a kind of amiable temperament like that of an old man next door. The pressure from before had also disappeared in an instant. Lin Yi stared blankly for a long while before he walked over and respectfully greeted, "This disciple is Lin Yi. Greetings, Pavilion Master Shangguan." Shanghai Tianhua nodded and gestured for Lin Yi to sit down before saying, "At the last birthday party, I still remember that you gave little Lan, 2 supreme-grade foundation building pills. As a newcomer you gave such a precious gift. You are very thoughtful. I thank you on behalf of little Lan. Pavilion Master Shangguan is too kind. Little senior sister has taken good care of this disciple. Giving her a little gift to express my sincerity is what I should do." Lin Yi had already calmed down and restored his usual calm composure. Shanghai Tianhua couldn't help but secretly look up to Lin Yi. With his status and strength, not to mention a mere newcomer, even the higher-ups of the 3 pavilions would tremble in front of him. But this Lin Yi could recover in such a short time. He was really a heroic youth. Shanghai Tianhua had always had a unique eye for people. Simple words and actions were enough to see a person's background and talent in his eyes. As far as this old man knows, you are a newcomer in Blue Cloud Pavilion, and little Lan has never been to the Welcome Pavilion. There shouldn't be any interaction between the two of you. How did you get to know her? Shanghai Tianhua didn't directly ask about Shangguan Laner's disappearance. Instead, he asked in a casual tone, without the air of a high and mighty pavilion master. Was he testing me to see if I had any intentions? Linny didn't relax in the slightest. He immediately replied truthfully, the first time I met little senior sister was actually because of the little curly bear. It sneaked out and happened to be met by this disciple. At that time I didn't know why it was injured. In the end, little senior sister misunderstood that this disciple kidnapped it. Little Lan is simple. No matter what she does, she takes it for granted. Little White is her heart, so it's normal for you to be misunderstood by her. Because of Little White, this old man has been misunderstood and blamed by her. Shanghai Tianhua laughed heartily. Even in this gloomy and cold dungeon where no daylight could be seen, sitting next to him still felt like a spring breeze caressing one's face. It made one unconsciously trust and feel close to him. Could this be the legendary personal charm? Linny was secretly shocked. With the growth of his strength and vision, he now gradually looked at people differently from before. In the past, he looked at external strength, but now he paid more attention to internal strength. A truly powerful person must be able to intimidate the common people from the inside out. This point could be confirmed by many great figures. The pavilion master of Soaring Sky Pavilion in front of him was a clear proof. Last time, during the birthday banquet, little Lan said that Su Lingchong had ill intentions towards her, but in the end, his manhood was cut off by Little Bai in a drunken frenzy state. You should have played a part in that, right? Shangguan Tianhua asked meaningfully. As a grandfather, he didn't ask Shangguan Laner about this matter from beginning to end. The information he knew was limited to the confession that Shangguan Laner said in the law enforcement hall. However, these matters, even if he didn't openly ask, he could still easily deduce. After all, at that time, when Linny followed Shangguan Laner upstairs, this was something that many people saw. Linny didn't deny it. He nodded and said, "That's right. At that time, the situation was urgent and I couldn't care too much. I could only choose to attack Su Lingchong. Fortunately, he didn't succeed. With your strength, it's really hard for you to be able to restrain Su Lingchong, who is at the great perfection of foundation establishment?" Shanghai Tianhua smiled and suddenly asked, "Then do you like little Lan?" Linny was immediately stunned. To suddenly ask such an abrupt question, and the other party was the dignified pavilion master of Soaring Sky Pavilion. No matter how he thought about it, this situation was a little strange. After a moment, under the gaze of Shanghai Tianhua, Linny answered truthfully, "About this, I do indeed have a slight feeling. But before I came to Heaven Stage Island, I already had a girlfriend. Moreover, more than one." When faced with this answer, Linny originally thought that the pavilion master would burst into a rage. After all, Shanghai Laner was the pavilion master's beloved daughter. Just based on their identities, they were already completely incompatible. Not to mention that he had so many confidants. If it was any other parent, they would probably ask him to stay away from his granddaughter. Chapter 40-43. Don't be fooled by Shanghai Tianhua's gentle appearance at the moment. According to Murong Zhen's report, Lin Yi was currently a serious suspect in the kidnapping of Shanghai Laner. If there was no solid evidence, no matter how highly Shanghai Tianhua regarded Lin Yi, it was impossible for him to easily let go of this newcomer who was suspected of kidnapping his only granddaughter. There was only one thing that Shanghai Tianhua was most concerned about, and that was how to find his precious granddaughter. This was the reason why he condescended to see Lin Yi. Otherwise, as the dignified Soaring Pavilion master, it was impossible for him to appear in such a place. Actually, disciple already knows where little senior sister is. Lin Yi said slowly. Oh. Shangguan Tianhua was startled. No matter what method Lin Yi used to prove his innocence, it wouldn't be surprising at all. The fact that he knew Shangguan Laner's location was rather surprising. If Pavilion Master Shangguan doesn't mind, disciple can lead the way, but you have to let me out first. Lin Yi said with a burning gaze. Shanghai Tianhua took a deep look at Lin Yi and nodded. Well, this old man will do as you wish. If it was someone else, even if it was Su Yuanjing, a big shot in the Elders Guild, he would not dare to pat his chest and say that he could easily take Lin Yi out of here. After all, this was Ramjie's territory. Without Ramjie's approval, no one could take anyone away. However, Shangguan Tianhua was not one of them. Not only was he the pavilion master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, he was also the one who had helped and guided Gong Yangjie. If there was anyone in the three great pavilions who could intimidate Gong Yangjie, he, Shangguan Tianhua, would definitely be at the top of the list. Sure enough, with a simple order from Shanghai Tianhua, Ram Jie did not have any objections and directly nodded to do as he was told. From being locked in the dungeon. It had only been a short 2 hours since he saw the light of day again, but Lin Yi felt as if a lifetime had passed. If it weren't for Shanghai Tianhua, and if Ram Jie hadn't ignored him from the beginning to the end, he would have been exhausted to death in the dark dungeon that was isolated from the world. That was not an impossibility. Fortunately, he finally came out. Lin Yi stretched himself. It hasn't been too long. Hopefully Shanghai Laner is still alive and well. How do we go? Shangguan Tianhua asked from behind. Even with his calmness as the top boss of the three great pavilions, in the face of his precious granddaughter's safety, he had to be calm. He could not help but feel a little worried. Lin Yi looked around before his gaze fell on a flying spirit beast from the law enforcement hall in the distance. He pursed his lips and said, "That place is a little far. We needed to give us a ride." Okay. Shangguan Tianhua immediately led Lin Yi and the two of them stepped on the flying spirit beast. Without saying a word, they soared into the sky, leaving the law enforcement hall experts looking at each other. Lin Yi was an important suspect, and without the protection of the enforcement hall's experts, he was taken away by Shangguan Tianhua just like that. That was clearly illogical. However, the other party was the master of the Soaring Pavilion, and if he wanted to do something, even the hall master Gong Yangjie had no choice but to obey. If they, the underlings, were to point fingers or even want to intervene, they would simply be courting death. However, the one who was in trouble was Shanghai Laner. Speaking of which, it was also Shanghai Tianhua's family affairs. Although he was suspected of exceeding his authority by doing so, he could not be blamed. While the law enforcement hall experts watched the two of them leave, this scene also fell into the eyes of Murongzhen. As an important informant and witness, she still remained in the law enforcement hall to assist in the investigation. It was just that she was not strictly restricted. Murongzhen was suddenly shocked. She did not know why Shanghai Tianhua took Lin Yi out alone. However, judging from the direction of the flying spirit beast, it was clearly going straight to the dilapidated martial arts practice field where she and Kang Mingming kidnapped Shanghai Laner. There was no time to think about the reason. Murongzhen hurriedly left the law enforcement hall secretly, ran to a secluded place, and sent a message by Eagle to Kang Mingming, who was far away on the other side of the North Island. Shanghai Tianhua is suspected to be able to sense Shanghai Laner's location. He has come here with Lin Yi by flying spirit beast. Let's go. Looking at the scribbled note in his hand, Kang Mingming was so scared that he almost had a heart attack. Cha Wu, who was beside him, was so scared that his face turned pale. They kidnapped Shanghai Laner as a follow-up action of the previous rumor. They just wanted to frame Lin Yi. However, they never thought that Shanghai Tianhua, the master of Rising Sky Pavilion, would come in person. With their insignificant strength, they could not even face Lin Yi, let alone Shanghai Tianhua, a top boss with great magic power. If they were really targeted by him, they would not even know how they died. The speed of the messenger eagle is not much faster than that of the flying spirit beast. Deacon Kong, we'd better run for our lives. Otherwise we'll be doomed. Cha Wu hurriedly advised. The fear in Kang Xiaoming's heart wasn't much better than Cha Wu's. Although he didn't want his meticulously planned kidnapping plan to fail just like that, his life was more important. Shangguan Tianhua and Lin Yi would arrive at the scene in the next moment, and that would be the end of him. Wait. Even if we want to run, we can't just run like this. According to what I'm going to say, you should go to Shanghai Laner quickly and shout like this, and then run. Kang Mingming suddenly said. At this point he absolutely did not dare to take Shanghai Laner away. What if Murongzhen was right and the other party could sense Shanghai Laner's location? However, Kang Mingming still had some tricks up his sleeve. Even if he couldn't take Shanghai Laner away, he could still shout a few words to confuse them. Although Cha Wu was extremely reluctant, he did not dare to argue with Kang Mingming at this time. The more he delayed, the more dangerous it would be. He could only bite the bullet and do as he was told. Cha Wu hurriedly ran to the broken martial arts field. He suppressed the fear in his heart and said to Miss Shanghai Laner in a low voice, "Miss Shangguan, the boss said that he kidnapped you this time to show a hero saving the beauty. So later he will come to save you personally so that he can show off in front of your grandfather. Don't be fooled by him. This is all directed by him." Shanghai Laner raised her eyelids, and her long eyelashes suddenly blinked twice. She said, "What do you mean? I don't understand." It means that Boss Lin Yi will come to save you later, but in fact he is pretending. He wants to show a hero saving the beauty. Chao Wu explained helplessly. Save me? Then why is he pretending? Shanghai Laner asked curiously. Chao Wu was going crazy at this moment. Time was running out, and this lady's brain seemed to be not bright enough to understand him. He could only shout, "Anyway, you just need to remember that Lin Yi is a liar." Chapter 40-44. Chao Wu left helplessly. He didn't know if Shanghai Laner really understood what he said. Anyway, after meeting with Kang Ming Ming, the two of them could no longer care about anything else and immediately fled in embarrassment. Not long after the two of them escaped, Shanghai Tianhua and Lin Yi immediately descended from the sky. If Kang Ming Ming dilly-dallied any longer, they would really not be able to escape. With Shanghai Tianhua's powerful perception, he had already locked the position of his precious granddaughter in the sky. The two of them went straight into the broken martial arts arena. When Shanghai Laner saw this, she immediately said happily, "Grandpa Junior Brother, you finally came to save me." Although she was kidnapped this time, she did not suffer any substantial pain from beginning to end. She could also see that these kidnappers had ulterior motives and did not dare to really hurt her. But after all, she was in a crisis. Especially at the beginning, she was still quite frightened. Otherwise, Lin Yi would not have been able to sense her position through the mother-child necklace. Seeing that Shanghai Laner was not injured, Shanghai Tianhua's originally hanging heart finally fell to the ground. He turned to Lin Yi and asked curiously, "How do you know Laner's position?" Looking at the three pavilions of the North Island, Shanghai Tianhua's strength could be said to be at the peak, and the exploration range of his divine awareness was also extremely wide. But Shanghai Laner was kidnapped so far away that even he could not lock her position. On the other side, Lin Yi untied the rope made of sea beast tendons on Shanghai Laner's body. He smiled slightly and said, "I happened to cast 2 mother-child necklaces a few days ago, and one of them was given to senior sister apprentice. When there is a crisis, there will be a genuine chi fluctuation, so I know." When Shanghai Tianhua heard this, he was amazed and said, "I have heard that you are an alchemist before, but I didn't expect that you are also a blacksmith. As a newcomer you can be so versatile. You are a rare genius in the 3 pavilions." Pavilion Master Shangguan is overpraising me. I only know a little about this. Lin Yi smiled reservedly. "You're neither arrogant nor rash. That's rare. Blacksmiths are rarely seen in our soaring sky pavilion. To be able to forge such a mystical necklace is even rarer." Shangguan Tianhua nodded approvingly, and then suddenly asked with a playful expression, "But I heard that this mother-child necklace has always been a gift between lovers. Why did you give it to little Lan, or this?" Lin Yi was embarrassed and didn't know what to say. If he said that he didn't have any thoughts towards this senior sister of his, then he was clearly deceiving himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given her a mother-child necklace. However, if one were to say that he was really interested in Shangguan Laner, that was not entirely the case. It was just that he had a good impression of her in his heart and they had a good friendship. At this time, Shangguan Laner stood up and hugged Shangguan Tianhua's arm and said, "Aya, Grandpa little junior brother and I have a deep sibling relationship. It's much closer than lovers. We're friends of life and death." When Shangguan Tianhua heard this, he immediately laughed heartily. He laughed heartily. "Ha, good." However, while laughing, Shangguan Tianhua clearly looked at Lin Yi with a deep meaning. Some words. He just didn't say it out loud. Seeing this, Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Looking at the expression of this pavilion master Shangguan, it seemed that he had been misunderstood. However, this kind of thing couldn't be explained face to face. Maybe he would think that the explanation was a cover-up, and it would become more and more chaotic, so he could only remain silent. "Little Lan, did you see the appearance of those robbers who kidnapped you?" Shangguan Tianhua asked. Shangguan Laner shook her head. "No, they were all in black and their faces were covered tightly. I couldn't see what they looked like at all." Although she said so, she could still guess the identity of the other party from the previous strange words and deeds of these people, but she didn't want to tell Shangguan Tianhua. After all, there would be no suspense and it would not be fun at all. "Well, it seems that the follow-up arrest can only be handed over to the law enforcement hall. However, little Lan, you have to remember, you can't run around like this in the future, okay? This time, fortunately, Lin Yi brought me here in time and nothing serious happened. Next time you won't be so lucky." Shangguan Tianhua reprimanded with a straight face. "I know. This time, if it weren't for little White running out to steal wine to drink, I wouldn't have been so easily kidnapped by them." Shangguan Laner pouted. When she said this, the loud snoring of the little curly bear came from the corner. The three of them were stunned for a moment and then they laughed at the same time. After making a fuss for a long time, it turned out that the little curly bear, the fuse, was still drunk and sleeping. From the beginning to the end, he didn't know about the kidnapping at all. When he woke up, everything was over. It was really a dumb bear's dumb luck. Facing this little fellow, they really didn't know whether to be angry or laugh. Shengguan Tianhua shook his head helplessly. Seeing that there was no one around, it was meaningless to continue to stay here. He immediately called Lin Yi and Shengguan Laner to board the flying spiritual beast and set off to return to the three major pavilions. The return of Shengguan Tianhua and the other two immediately caused a sensation in the law enforcement hall. Since Shengguan Laner had returned unscathed and could testify that Lin Yi wasn't the culprit who kidnapped her, the suspicion on Lin Yi was naturally cleared. There was no need for him to return to that dark and gloomy dungeon. On the contrary, Murong Zhen, the person who came forward to report him, was going to get into big trouble this time. Framing Lin Yi was only a small matter, but providing false information to mislead the law enforcement hall was the real problem. If they really wanted to investigate, even if Murong Zhen didn't die this time, she would at least lose a layer of skin. She went for wool and came home shorn. No matter how she tried to exonerate herself with flowery words, she was going to be the scapegoat anyway. Of course, investigating Murong Zhen was the law enforcement hall's business. It had nothing to do with Lin Yi. If he wanted to take revenge, he could only do it in private. It was purely a personal grudge. As for reporting to the law enforcement hall, he had no interest in that. Firstly, there was no evidence. Secondly, Lin Yi didn't want to be too close to the people of the law enforcement hall. He followed Shanghai Tianhua out of the law enforcement hall. Before they parted, Shanghai Tianhua suddenly stopped and turned to Lin Yi. He said, "This time I owe you another favor. In the future, if you need anything, you can come to the Soaring Sky Pavilion directly to find me." After that, Shanghai Tianhua took the reluctant Shengguan Laner and the little curly bear and quickly disappeared from sight, leaving Lin Yi alone in a daze. In the three great pavilions of the northern island, Shengguan Tianhua's favor was a priceless treasure that no amount of spiritual jade could buy. If it were anyone else who had heard his promise, they would have been so excited that they would have forgotten themselves. Chapter 40-45. Does she really think highly of me, or is she hinting to me that this thing is just treated as a favor, and not to think too much, so that I can keep a distance from Shengguan Laner in the future? No one could give Lin Yi an answer to this question. He could only suppress it in his heart for the time being, and leave it to the future to prove it. At present, there was only one thing that needed his attention most, and that was the casting plan that was already on the bow. On the other hand, after the kidnapping incident, Shanghai Laner was directly grounded after being taken home by Shanghai Tianhua, and even the little curly bear was strictly ordered not to step out of the house. 3. W.X. With this lesson, no matter how hard Shanghai Laner racked her brains, she couldn't find an excuse to go out in a short time. However, what made Shanghai Tianhua quite helpless was that even if she was locked up at home, she couldn't expect Shanghai Laner to concentrate on her cultivation. In addition to playing with the little curly bear, she also had to take time to write letters to her best friend outside the North Island. She was very busy. Her best friend was the daughter of the owner of West Island, Ning Xuefei. Birds of a feather flock together. Except for an extremely special case like Lin Yi with Shanghai Laner's family background, even if she didn't have the temper and airs of a rich lady, ordinary people were destined not to be her close friends. They were at different levels and they couldn't talk to each other as equals. Naturally, there was no pure friendship. And in the whole three pavilions of North Island, there were very few people whose family background could be compared with that of Shanghai Laner. If the target was further locked on girls of the same age, it would be even more difficult to find them. Therefore, almost all of Shanghai Laner's best friends were on the outer island, and Ning Xuefei was the closest one among them. Different from North Island, West Island was not only a gathering place for female cultivators, but it still retained the legacy of the ancient matriarchal clan, and everything was decided by women. However, these female cultivators were very powerful, and they were not any weaker than the forces of the other sub-islands. Ning Xuefei's mother was the island lord of West Island. In the 5 great islands of heaven rank, powerhouses came forth in large numbers and experts were as numerous as the clouds. Being able to become the master of an island, even if it wasn't the middle island, meant that she was one of the few experts of the 5 great islands of heaven rank. Moreover, she was a woman, yet she was able to become an overlord. The difficulty of this could be imagined. In the ancient secular world, this island master of West Island was comparable to the Empress Wu Zetian, a legendary existence revered by countless people. Strictly speaking, Ning Xuefei's background was even more powerful than Shanghai Laner's. Of course, the main reason why the two of them could become best friends was that their personalities were compatible. As for his family background, they didn't care about it at all. A while ago, Ning Xuefei wrote a letter saying that she was going to the far North Island to attend the auction. Shanghai Laner thought that she would come to the North Island to play with her. However, her best friend didn't come and she always felt regretful. This time, in reply to Ning Xuefei's letter, Shanghai Laner told her all the depressing things that had happened to her recently, from the birthday party to the kidnapping this time. She said all of them in one go. Anyway, she was grounded at home and had nothing to do, so she simply shared them with her best friend. It was really hard for her, a young lady who claimed that she couldn't write. After a whole day of writing, she wrote a lot of papers and finally roughly said all these things. She sent them out unwillingly. A few days later, Shanghai Laner received Ning Xuefei's reply, and the content of the letter made her jump with joy. In the letter, Ning Xuefei said that she had gotten her mother's permission to come to the North Island to play with her. Like Shanghai Laner, Ning Xuefei had very few best friends. Now, after hearing all the things that had happened to Shanghai Laner, as her best friend, she naturally had to come and comfort her. As for the research of the automatic casting mechanism, naturally her other best friend Han Jingjing would take over. Because she was grounded at home by her grandfather, Shanghai Laner was now depressed. But now her mood was finally lifted again. Middle Island Alchemy Hall. Recently, there were two things that attracted the most attention in Alchemy Hall. One was the death of Jing Tianjia, and the other was the Minghun between Tian Chan and Jing Tianjia. She was at the age of a flower and wearing a charming bride's dress. Every girl who loved to dream would think of such a scene many times. Even a cultivator who was infinitely close to becoming an extraordinary immortal would probably have the same thought at this time. They would only envy the Mandarin ducks, not the immortals. However, what if the Mr. Right in front of her was a cold corpse? With the contrast of Jing Tianjia's cold corpse, the more beautiful Tian Chan was, the more pitiful she looked in the eyes of others. Even those who did not have much of a relationship with her could not help but sigh for her. If it were any other girl, no matter how bad the other party was, people would at most say that it was a flower stuck in a pile of cow dung. But Tian Chan, the Mr. Right, was not even comparable to a pile of cow dung in the eyes of ordinary people. However, this was only the opinion of others. Tian Chan was very satisfied with this. Although the Minghun with a dead person sounded very horrifying, as Jing Tianjia's widow, Tian Chan had a lot of benefits. Not only would there not be anyone who did not have eyes to harass her, but her status in the alchemy hall would also rise. Without so many complicated cultivation tasks and the need to participate in the alchemy hall's routine cultivation, compared to before the Minghun, Tian Chan's life was much more peaceful. Deep in the core of the alchemy hall, there was an extremely special room. Inside lived a strange patient. Originally, with Tian Chan's identity as a normal disciple, she naturally could not enter easily. But now, whenever she was free, she would come to visit this person. "Grandfather, how are you feeling today?" Tian Chan appeared at the door of the room again and greeted respectfully with a smile. A slightly hoarse voice quickly came from inside the room. "I'm not your grandfather. I have no relationship with the Tian family in the secular world. You do not have to purposely curry favor with me. I'm now a cripple. No matter how much you try to curry favor with me, it is useless. Jing Dongjue will not listen to me. If you want me to help you break off the engagement, you better give up." Tian Chan smiled slightly and said, "Grandfather, no matter what, you are Chaner's elder. Don't talk about elder. I'm not your elder. It is hard to say whose seniority is between the two of us. Who knows, you might even be my sister," the hoarse voice said impatiently. Chapter 40-46. This person was actually the once famous Vice Island Master of Heavenly Stage Island. He was the legendary figure who had gone mad because he had cultivated the creation battle art. His meridians had been severed and he was Tian Xing. Tracing back to their ancestry, the Will of Heaven and Tian Chan were actually from the same lineage, but 1,000 years ago, the Will of Heaven had used a special method to move to Heaven-class island by chance. However, they had always lived in a practitioner's tribe, and there had never been any outstanding practitioners in their family. The lifespan of the tribesmen was similar to that of ordinary people, so it was hard to calculate the seniority. According to what the Will of Heaven said, perhaps Tian Chan's seniority might really be higher than his, but with his age it was natural for Tian Chan to call him senior. The Will of Heaven had a close personal relationship with Zhang Liju, and after he went insane he had been recuperating in the elixir hall, but it didn't have much effect. The meridians in his body had long been broken into hundreds and thousands of pieces, and it was already a miracle that he was still alive. If he wanted to reconnect them, even with Zhang Liju's miraculous medical skills, he wouldn't be able to do it. I'm not the Vice Island Master. Do you think a lunatic like me would believe me if I said I was the Vice Island Master? You don't have to think about climbing up to the rich and powerful, and don't try to climb up to me, your relative. It's useless anyway. It's not as prestigious as Zheng Dongjue's granddaughter-in-law. Alright, leave the medicine there, you can leave. As usual, the Will of Heaven didn't open the door and directly asked him to leave. The Will of Heaven used to be the Vice Island Master of Heaven Class Island, a pinnacle figure who looked down on all living beings, but that was all in the past. Now, he was just a cripple who couldn't even take care of himself. With his strange and crazy temper, no one was willing to serve him, and they didn't even bother to look at him. But Tian-chan didn't show any displeasure, and shook her head helplessly. Placing the medicine at the door, she respectfully bowed and said, "Alright, Chan-er will come visit Senior in a few days. Chan-er will take her leave first." In the room, the disheveled The Will of Heaven had a strange and helpless look in his turbid eyes when he heard this. No matter how crazy he was, a person's heart was still made of flesh and blood, especially when he was in his most miserable and dejected state. A friend in need is a friend indeed. Whether Tian-chan treated him sincerely or not, could he really not see it at all? What was the use of seeing through him? He was just a cripple with broken meridians. If he was thrown on the street, he wouldn't even be as good as a beggar. What could he do? The room was silent for a long time. Suddenly, the crazy laughter of the Will of Heaven rang out again. Coming out of the room of the Will of Heaven, Tian-chan couldn't help but feel a bit worried. She came to the heavenly island and was able to see her blood-related elders. This was such a blessing, but the current state of the Will of Heaven really made her unable to feel happy. She hadn't walked 2 steps when a young man in white suddenly walked over from the corridor. After seeing Tian-chan, his eyes suddenly lit up and he greeted with a smile, "Sister-in-law, you went to see Elder Heaven again." Seeing this person, Tian-chan's eyes turned cold. A trace of disgust flashed across her face as she replied coldly, "Yes." This young man in white was called Jing Tianchu. He was Jing Tianjia's cousin. In terms of status, Tian-chan still had to call him brother-in-law. Jing Tianjia, who had high hopes on him, died tragically halfway. There were rumors in the streets that Jing Dongjue had already begun to shift his attention to Jing Tianchu. He intended to train him to replace Jing Tianjia's original position and become the person in charge of the Zheng family in the future. In terms of strength, Jing Tianchu and Jing Tianjia couldn't be compared at all. Although he had the halo of Jing Dongjue's grandson, the entire Pill Hall didn't take him seriously. He could only be regarded as a small character on the edge. But now it was different. Jing Tianchu had become Jing Dongjue's favorite person. He immediately began to act arrogantly. Now it could be said that he was in the limelight and had the posture of becoming Jing Tianjia's second. However, all this had nothing to do with Tian-chan. She hated the Zheng family from the bottom of her heart and didn't even want to say a word more. Elder Heaven must have given you face again, right? Sister-in-law, your character is too virtuous. If it was someone else, they wouldn't be willing to serve a crazy old man like this. Why do you want to get angry for no reason? Why don't I accompany you the next time sister-in-law goes? Jing Tianchu continued to say with a smile. Tian-chan looked at him indifferently and said, "No need. If there's nothing else, I'll go back first." After saying that, Tian-chan didn't want to bother with him anymore. She directly bypassed Jing Tianchu and left without looking back. Looking at Tian-chan's beautiful and graceful back, Jing Tianchu couldn't help but have a trace of lust in his eyes. He pinched his chin with one hand and sneered, "Still pretending to be a chaste woman in front of me? Well, the more character a woman has, the more interesting it will be to play with her in the future. There's nothing more delicious than dumplings and nothing more fun than... Hey, sister-in-law." With Tian-chan's current status as a widow, she was already a cooked duck in Jing Tianchu's eyes. She couldn't escape from his palm at all. As long as he sat firmly in the position of the Zheng family's young master, this beautiful sister-in-law would surrender to him sooner or later. Thinking of the beauty, Jing Tianchu couldn't help laughing. He couldn't help but praise his cousin Jing Tianjia in his heart. It was really a good time to die. Law Enforcement Hall, North Island. Shanghai Laner came back unscathed. This time the crisis, which was obviously aimed at Lin Yi, was solved without any attack. On the contrary, Murong Zhen, the informant, was now in huge trouble. There were risks when she came forward rashly. When Kang Mingming asked her to report Lin Yi, she had already had this bad feeling. But at that time, Shanghai Laner didn't cooperate in every way, and Kang Mingming obviously didn't want to show up. Cha Wu, a fence-sitter, was not reliable at all. She was purely forced to bite the bullet and do it in person. Now she failed to frame Lin Yi and was hurt. The bad feeling became a reality. Lin Yi went out with Shanghai Tianhua in a carefree and easy way. Murong Zhen, the informant, became a prisoner, locked in a dirty and smelly dungeon, with no one to answer her calls. Murong Zhen couldn't help but tremble with fear when she thought of the cruel methods of the law enforcement hall. She had a guilty conscience and she was a woman. No matter how treacherous and ruthless she was on the outside, once she was in this underground prison where she couldn't see the light of day, it wouldn't be strange if she was scared to the point of becoming a lunatic after a long period of time. Chapter 40-47. With the existence of the soul-searching skill, lying to the law enforcement hall was simply courting death. Murong Zhen's heart sank to the bottom the moment she was captured by the powerhouses of the law enforcement hall and locked in the dungeon. She knew that she was done for this time. Even if she had the slightest bit of luck, it would only be wishful thinking. It was a matter of great importance. Although Shangguan Lan'er had been rescued safely, it was a terrible thing to kidnap the first young lady of the Soaring Sky Pavilion. The law enforcement hall would definitely investigate this matter to the end, and she, the suspicious informant, was a ready-made breakthrough. Finally, amidst her extreme anxiety and panic, the tragic fate that Murong Zhen had been waiting for finally arrived. The people from the law enforcement hall had come to interrogate her. Even though Murong Zhen had already prepared his words in his head, he was not confident that his words would be able to fool the people from the law enforcement hall. She silently followed the people from the law enforcement hall all the way. With every step she took, Murong Zhen felt that she was one step closer to death. The despair brought about by this kind of dead end directly crushed her last bit of nerves. She suddenly squatted on the ground and began to wail loudly. The other prisoners in the dungeons around them all looked at each other excitedly, and frivolous whistles could be heard continuously. The law enforcement hall's experts were stunned. They looked at each other and turned to look at her. They scolded, "If you want to cry, cry outside. The dungeon is not a place for you to make a scene." Outside? Murong Zhen stopped crying. She looked up at the law enforcement hall's experts with tears in her eyes. "Don't you want to interrogate me?" The two law enforcement hall's experts laughed. "According to the rules, we were supposed to interrogate you. However, hall leader Gong Yang told us not to make things difficult for the informant. Otherwise, who would dare to provide clues for the law enforcement hall in the future? Therefore, we're not going to interrogate you now. We're going to let you out." Really? Murong Zhen was overjoyed. She had been in despair, but now she had a new lease of life. She was so happy that her head was dizzy. "Of course it's true. Do you think the law enforcement hall is so free that we have so much time to play with you? Are you done crying? If you're done crying, get up." The law enforcement hall's experts were speechless. At the same time, they shouted at the top of their lungs to calm down the other prisoners in the dungeon. If it wasn't for the fact that Murong Zhen was a beautiful woman, he would not have been able to do anything to her. He had already impatiently sent a kick over. "Oh, yes, this little girl will get up now." After making such a blunder, Murong Zhen's face couldn't help but blush in embarrassment. However, she was secretly puzzled in her heart. When did Gong Yangjie become so generous? For so many years. The law enforcement hall under the command of Ram Jie had always been known for its coldness and brutality. Those who were caught and brought here, even if they were innocent, would at least lose half of their lives. The number of people who had died in the law enforcement hall in the past 10 years was more than the number of people who had died in the previous 100 years. Logically speaking, there seemed to be nothing wrong with what he said just now, but it really didn't seem like Ram Jie's style. Moreover, he knew his own business. Now that the person involved, Shangguan Lan'er, had returned, Murong Zhen's so-called report was simply full of doubts. Could Ram Jie really not see through it at all? She was completely bewildered. After Murong Zhen came out of the law enforcement hall, she went straight back to the welcome pavilion. Kang Ming had already been waiting for her in her wooden house. "Miss Murong, that's great. You're finally back." Seeing that she came back safe and sound, Kang Ming immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Seeing that Kang Ming cared about her so much, Murong Zhen couldn't help but feel touched. Previously, because he forced her to take the risk to go to the law enforcement hall to report Lin Yi, her resentment also dissipated a lot. But Murong Zhen was also a scheming woman after all. Just by glancing at Kang Ming's happy expression, she quickly realized that this guy showed up here not because he cared about her at all. The reason why Kang Ming stayed here was that he wanted to know Murong Zhen's fate as soon as possible, so that he could judge whether he should stay or leave. The reason why Kang Ming stayed here was that he wanted to know Murong Zhen's fate as soon as possible, so that he could decide whether he should stay or leave. Seeing that Murong Zhen's expression was cold, Kang Mingming choked and continued to smile. I heard that Miss Murong was locked up in the law enforcement hall's dungeon. I was so worried. Now that I see that you're safe and sound, I can finally be at ease. Deacon Kang has to be on tenterhooks. This beauty is truly flattered. However, it is all thanks to Hall Leader Gong Yang that I was able to leave the law enforcement hall unscathed this time. If it wasn't for him speaking up for me, we would have been completely wiped out this time. Murong Zhen suppressed the resentment in her heart and pretended to be mysterious as she said this to keep everyone in suspense. As expected, Kang Mingming's eyelids twitched when he heard that. He quickly asked, all thanks to Hall Leader Ram? Ram Jie speaking up for you? What's your relationship with him? Even a young master like Su Lingchong would find it hard to speak up for a powerful and overbearing person like Ram Jie. How could he stand up for a mere Murong Zhen? Who knows? As the saying goes, even heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman. After all, the three great pavilions have more men than women. No matter how powerful and overbearing Hall Leader Ram Jie is, he's still a man full of vigor. Officer Kong, what do you think? Murong Zhen deliberately gave him a coquettish look. She knew that it was pure wishful thinking for her to hook up with a person like Ram Jie with her beauty alone. However, she used the tiger's skin to play up the tiger's flag. By vaguely exaggerating her relationship with Ram Jie, she wouldn't offend anyone. At the same time, she could also use it to deter Kang Mingming. She wouldn't have to be the scapegoat if something happened to him in the future. I guess so. Kang Mingming was a little uncertain now. All men were lustful. He was a clear proof. If Ram Jie really liked Murong Zhen, then he would have to reconsider his attitude towards Murong Zhen in the future. What should we do now? The kidnapping incident hasn't passed yet. If we want to deal with Lin Yi, it won't be easy. Kang Mingming said half helplessly and half tentatively. Murong Zhen glanced at him and shrugged. She backed off and said, don't look at me. I have no other choice now. If I continue to commit crimes against the public, it'll be too risky. I can't bear it. But if we just let Lin Yi do whatever he wants, would you be able to take it lying down, Miss Murong? Kang Xiaoming wasn't willing to give up. Even if I can't swallow it, what else can I do? Murong Zhen was also unwillingly. However, since things had developed to this point, she was already helpless against Lin Yi, who was getting stronger day by day. Suddenly Murong Zhen's eyes brightened. She suggested, 3 is better than 2. Why don't we ask Meng Tong to come and discuss it? Chapter 40-48. If it had been the previous idiot Meng Tong, the two of them wouldn't have paid any attention to him. However, after eating the Meridian heart-shattering pill, Meng Tong's strength had skyrocketed and his temperament had changed greatly. Especially since Meng Jueguang's sudden death, he had been in a state of seclusion and had become somewhat unfathomable. Maybe he would be a good help. Meng Tong and Lin Yi's grudge was as deep as theirs. They were natural allies and there was no doubt that he was reliable. However, Meng Tong, whose temperament had become even weirder, only scolded them coldly after listening to their conversation. Idiots! Murong Zhen and Kang Mingming could no longer hold back their disdain. They had always thought that their status was far above Meng Tong's, but now they were being looked down upon by someone who used to be a nobody. It was intolerable. However, just as their expressions changed, they immediately felt a violent and ferocious aura pressing down on top of their heads, causing them to be a little breathless. You're already in the middle stage of the foundation building realm? Kang Mingming and Murong Zhen were shocked at the same time. They never thought that in such a short time, Meng Tong would be reborn and break through to the middle stage of the foundation building realm. When Murong Zhen first came to the Welcome Pavilion, her strength was at the peak of the early stage of the foundation building realm. She was the only one who stood out. Someone like Meng Tong was nothing in her eyes. However, in just a few months, he had become a middle-stage foundation building realm powerhouse that she had to look up to. Strength determined the right to speak. If Meng Tong was still at the peak of the early stage of the foundation building realm, Murong Zhen and Kang Mingming would have fallen out with him right away because of his disdain. However, he was now a middle-stage foundation building realm powerhouse. His strength was completely above the two of them. That was a completely different story. Even if Murong Zhen and Kang Mingming were unhappy, they could only endure it for now. Meng Tong ignored the two's shock and continued to say disdainfully, with your meager strength, you can't even defeat me. How dare they kidnap Shengguan Laner and frame Lin Yi? It was truly a miracle that they were able to survive until now unscathed. Yet they still had the face to wonder how they could find them. Even Shengguan Tianhua has personally come out. Is it strange that such a powerful person has a way to find you? A series of merciless disdain and criticism. Both Murong Zhen and Kang Xiaoming's faces turned red and they were speechless. Looking back, they realized that kidnapping Shangguan Lan'er was really an act of obsession. It was really lucky for them to be able to live until now. Kidnap Shangguan Lan'er. This idea was proposed by Miss Murong in the beginning. It has nothing to do with me. Kang Mingming cleared himself. From the beginning to the end, he only wanted to deal with Lin Yi, unlike Murong Zhen, who had a personal grudge against Shanghai Lan'er. Murong Zhen was so embarrassed that he could not speak for a long time. After a long time, he said with a straight face, "Since things have come to this, why are you still talking about these useless things? You have the time to blame each other. It's better to think about how to deal with Lin Yi next." Now Su Lingchong is gone, and so is Meng Jueguang. Our backers are all gone. What else can we do? Meng Tong snorted disdainfully. If it was Meng Tong in the past, he would have jumped out to challenge Lin Yi a long time ago when his strength skyrocketed to the middle stage of the foundation building realm. He probably would not even bother to think about conspiracies. He just wanted to trample on Lin Yi to show off. However, his temperament had changed. He was no longer as stupid and naive as before. Instead, he had learned to endure. But we can't let Lin Yi go so easily. As long as we study him carefully, we can definitely find his weakness. Murong Zhen said unwillingly. Kang Mingming. You and Lin Yi are old rivals in the secular world. You should know his weakness the best. Meng Tong turned around and asked. His grudge with Lin Yi was real. No matter how his temperament changed, if there was a chance to kill Lin Yi, he would definitely not let it go. Kang Mingming thought about it and pondered for a moment. Well, this guy is affectionate and likes to show off. Other than that, there seems to be nothing. Hey, I got it. Meng Tong and Murong Zhen were excited at the same time. Say it. Lin Yi and Dongfang Badeo of Xuanji Pavilion are also rivals in the secular world. I heard that this old J8 lamp is doing well now. I will find him and think of a way together. Kang Mingming suggested. Although he had no friendship with Dongfang Badeo, the enemy of the enemy was a friend. Since they were all to deal with Lin Yi, naturally the more people, the better. Meng Tong nodded and said, That's good. By the way, also find Zhong Pingliang of your Chongtian Pavilion. We can't lose contact with these people just because Su Lingchong is gone. I think Zhong Pingliang is also a good person. Yes, how could I forget him in this kidnapping? If he was there at the beginning, we wouldn't need to find Chao Wu, this fence-sitter. Kang Mingming nodded again and again. In fact, it couldn't be said that he forgot. During this time, Kang Mingming had been hanging out with Murong Zhen. At the beginning, he didn't call Zhong Pingliang purely because of the man's exclusive mentality. He didn't want Zhong Pingliang to take the opportunity to get too close to Murong Zhen, this coquettish woman. But now he couldn't care about these miscellaneous things. It was more important to deal with Lin Yi. Kang Mingming immediately set off to find Dongfang Badeo. He had the identity of a new deacon. Even if Su Lingchong, this big backer, was gone, he was still relatively popular in the Welcome Pavilion. Everyone had to give him some face. More than half a year had passed. Looking at all the newcomers of the Welcome Pavilion and the 3 pavilions, if you want to list the most famous and most glorious newcomers, Lin Yi was undoubtedly ranked first, Kang Mingming was ranked second with the bonus of a new deacon, and the third person was Dongfang Badeo of Xuanji Pavilion. Although most of the people on Heaven Stage Island looked down upon the cultivators from the secular world, it had been proven that every time a person was transported from the secular world, they might appear to be down and out because they were ostracized, but in the end, they would often become elites and stand above most of the local cultivators on Heaven Stage Island. This was not surprising at all. Everyone who had the opportunity to come to the Heavenly Stage Island was a super elite selected from hundreds of millions of people in the secular world. Even if they couldn't compare with the top group of people on the Heavenly Stage Island, if it was just to compete with the ordinary practitioners on the Heavenly Stage Island, they were absolutely more than enough in terms of strength and shrewdness. If they encountered a little more opportunity, they could easily stand out. Chapter 40-49. For a long time, watching Lin Yi's brilliant performance, Dongfang Badeo said that he was not jealous at all. It was absolutely nonsense. Even in his dreams he wanted to step on Lin Yi. It was a pity that he was in the mysterious pavilion and had no intersection with Lin Yi of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, and it was difficult to pose any threat to Lin Yi. This feeling of power but nowhere to use it could make people crazy. Kang Xiaoming and the others simply couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him because the mysterious pavilion stood them up during the voting for the new deacon. If it wasn't for Su Lingchong and the others losing their backing, they probably wouldn't even remember that such a figure existed until now. In the face of Kang Mingming's visit, Dongfang Badeo showed great enthusiasm. Especially when he heard that they were going to join forces to deal with Lin Yi, he was extremely enthusiastic and agreed to join the team on the spot. Originally, Dongfang Badeo also had some intention of taking advantage of his seniority. He thought that after joining the team he could at least be a person who gave orders. However, when he saw the strength of Meng Tong and Murong Zhen, especially Meng Tong, a master in the middle stage of Zhuji realm, he suddenly shriveled. Dongfang Badeo did not dare to pretend and gave advice to everyone. The old men in our mysterious pavilion are self-contained and have a wide range of contacts. I heard a news related to Lin Yi a few days ago. I don't know if you have heard it? What news? Everyone asked. Lin Yi, that guy, seems to be preparing to cast recently. I heard from the old men in the mysterious pavilion that Lin Yi also followed Hong Zhong of the Hong's Chamber of Commerce to the auction in the extreme North Island. It seems that it was to bid for casting materials. I don't know where he got so many spirit jades to be so confident. Dongfang Badeo pinched his chin. Casting? Kong Mingming's eyes suddenly brightened and he said excitedly, "Isn't that just right? Let's go and destroy him. Even if we can't kill him, we will disgust him." Hearing this, Meng Tong and Murong Zhen also nodded one after another. This idea sounded a bit small. But at the moment they had no better way. What's more, if they let Lin Yi cast any magic weapon, and his strength soared, it was not a good thing for them. It turns out that, no wonder Lin Yi has been appearing and disappearing mysteriously during this time. Only then did Murong Zhen come to a realization. Then he said with a slight headache, "But if we're going to destroy it, we'll have to find the place where he forged the weapon first, right? It's like looking for a needle in a haystack with just the few of us. How are we supposed to find it?" Meng Tong thought for a moment and suddenly said, "Kong Ming, when you kidnapped him, you used a flying spiritual beast." "That's right, I borrowed it from someone I know in the Hall of Alchemy. Although we have flying spiritual beasts in the Welcome Pavilion, there are only a few of them and it's easy for people to notice." Kong Ming nodded. "That's good. Continue to think of a way to borrow a flying spiritual beast. When Lin Yi shows up next time, we'll follow him in the sky. No matter how sensitive his senses are, he won't be able to sense us. When that time comes, we just need to follow the clues and find his hiding place." Meng Tong said confidently. "That's right, that's a brilliant idea." Kong Ming and the rest nodded. With their strength alone, it was too difficult to follow Lin Yi on the ground. However, it would be a different story if they were in the sky. Not only would it be difficult to lose him, but it would also be difficult to find him. Under normal circumstances, it would be difficult to be discovered. After the few of them discussed the plan, they began to move. They asked Kong Ming to borrow a flying spiritual beast. On the other hand, Murong Zhen stayed in the wooden house to follow him. As soon as Lin Yi appeared, he would inform Meng Tong and the rest to take action. Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't notice any of this at all. His mind was completely focused on the forging process that was about to start. After the King of Jianghu's repeated delays, everything was ready now. Success or failure depended on this. Before starting, Lin Yi specially returned to the Welcome Pavilion to inform senior brother Kupa and the rest. Once the equipment forging started, it could not be stopped halfway. Nobody knew how long it would last. Therefore, it was necessary to inform these people in advance, lest they thought that Lin Yi had gone missing and caused trouble. This gave Kong Ming and the rest who were scheming an opportunity. After Lin Yi left, they began to follow him in the sky. Although Lin Yi was cautious along the way, he neglected the flying spiritual beast above him. Even if he raised his head occasionally, he would not think too much about it. Flying spiritual beasts were very common mounts on Heaven Stage Island, and there were often flying spiritual beasts above him. When Kong Ming and the rest were in the sky, they did not have any malicious thoughts about Lin Yi, so the jade pendant would not alert them. "What's this guy doing in the forest? Is he going to smith in the forest? He can't be that stupid, right?" Kong Ming was confused when he saw Lin Yi running into the forest after leaving the Welcome Pavilion. They were not blacksmiths, but they knew that the requirement for the stability of the surrounding environment was not lower than that of alchemy. God knew if he would catch fire if he were to smith in the forest. "Let's wait and see." Meng Tong and the rest were also confused. After hesitating for a while, they finally decided to stay put and let the flying spiritual beast fly back and forth in the sky, pretending to be busy. After a while, their eyes lit up at the same time. "He's out." However, Murong Zhen was stunned. "That's not right. This person is not Lin Yi. Look at his face. He looks completely different from Lin Yi." Women were always more attentive. Although they were not very high from the ground, they were still at a high altitude to ensure that Lin Yi would not notice them. Looking down from above, the person was just a peanut. At most, they could determine the person's identity by the position of the body. Very few people would pay attention to the specific appearance like Murongzhen. However, after she said that, Meng Tong and Kang Ming also realized that something was wrong. Although it was not very obvious, they could still see the difference if they looked carefully. It's really not Linny. Damn it. This forest is so dense that there's not even a place to stand. Normally there shouldn't be anyone here. Where did this guy come from? I was almost misled by him. If I had followed the wrong person, all my efforts would have been in vain. Meng Tong secretly rejoiced. At that moment, Kang Ming suddenly slapped his thigh and said, Wrong. This guy is Linny. You've all been deceived by him. What do you mean? Meng Tong and Murongzhen were stunned at the same time. Chapter 40-50. That's right. I still remember the last time Southern Sky Gate and Wuxia deliberately called Linny out. So that's what happened. If he really wanted to, it's not difficult for us cultivators to change a fake face at the last moment. Murongzhen also came to a sudden realization. Meng Tong's eyes lit up when he heard that. So, this guy is really Linny? That's right, this place is so remote that no one would come here. Besides, forging is a matter of life and death. It's reasonable for him to change a fake identity for concealment. While they were talking, Linny had gone directly to the secret base of the King of Rags. Now his mind was focused on forging, and he didn't notice the abnormality in the sky at all. Seeing that Linny suddenly went into a hidden cave after walking around outside for a long time, Kang Ming and the others were relieved and said excitedly, This is definitely right, this cave should be the place where he forged. Haha, Linny's dead for sure now that we found such a big flaw. Let's wait for a while, wait for him to start forging, then we will sneak attack together. Brother Meng Tong is now a master in the middle stage of foundation establishment. Together with a few of us, I don't believe that he can escape alive with so many people ganging up on him. Kang Ming smiled with a confident face. Meng Tong was not in a hurry. He signaled Kang Ming to let the flying spirit beast land and ordered, Don't rush, this is a rare opportunity, we have to make sure that nothing goes wrong. Let's stick to the previous discussion. Murongzhen and I will watch here first. Kang Ming, you go call Dongfang Badeo and Zhong Pingliang here, we have more people in case he escapes again. Okay, I'll go get them now. This time Linny is looking for death, looking for such a narrow cave with no way out, then we 5 will block the entrance, he won't escape even if he dies. Kang Ming replied with a smile. Kang Ming was about to leave. Murongzhen suddenly said, We can also inform Wuxia and Southern Sky Gate, tell them that Lin Yi is Lin Heir. They're not exactly the same kind of people as us, but they're Lin Yi's sworn enemies. Just in case something happens to us, they'll be double insurance. Kang Ming and Meng Tong looked at each other and nodded. Haha, well said Lin Yi, today we will see how you die. They immediately split up. After receiving the news from Kang Ming, Zhong Pingliang suddenly became anxious. From the beginning to the end, he was the one who knew the latest, and these people only came to inform him when he was ready to take action. Now even if he wanted to remind Lin Yi, there was no time and opportunity. Zhong Pingliang lowered his head, and his face seemed to be uncertain. Kang Ming couldn't help but squint his eyes in doubt. What? You don't want to go? Go. Of course I will go. Such a good opportunity for revenge, how can I not go? Zhong Pingliang suddenly raised his head and said. Although he couldn't warn Lin Yi in advance, it was better to go than not to go. At worst, he would expose his identity and counterattack. That's good, you go now and call the old bastard Dongfang Badeo. I will go to the soaring pavilion to greet Wuxia and Southern Sky Gate. I will come back immediately to take you there. Kang Ming ordered. He immediately rode the flying spirit beast and flew away. Zhong Pingliang responded, but he couldn't help but worry for Lin Yi. During this time he didn't have much contact with Lin Yi. He didn't know what Lin Yi's strength was now, but these people who were ready to attack him, the strength of this lineup was not simple. Although Zhong Pingliang had absolute confidence in Lin Yi's strength, it was limited to the premise of one-on-one. After all, Lin Yi was just a newcomer. No matter how strong his strength was, there was a limit. In the midst of anxiety, Kang Ming had gone to the soaring pavilion and returned. He took him and Dongfang Badeo to meet Meng Tong and Murongzhen. All the people were in place. Let's not delay, let's do it. As the one with the highest strength, Meng Tong naturally took the lead and entered the cave. Murongzhen and the others followed behind him in a single file. The safer way was to wait for Wuxia and Southern Sky Gate. At that time, maybe even a master of the Golden Core stage like Nan Tianba would be there, so it would be safe to deal with Lin Yi. However, after killing people they usually took the treasures and divided the spoils. After all, they were not on the same side. If they really waited for Nan Tianba, even if there was something good on Lin Yi, they wouldn't have a chance to take it. It was better to hurry up and get rid of Lin Yi before Yu Zhe and the others arrived. Anyway, with their strength, as long as there were no accidents, it was more than enough to deal with Lin Yi alone. Even if they couldn't get rid of him, they still had Southern Sky Gate as a backup. Just as Meng Tong and the others stepped into the cave, the tattered king, who had already begun to forge, suddenly changed his expression. Not good, someone came in. How did you know? Lin Yi was startled. The cave was long and narrow. Even with his senses, he was unable to sense the situation at the entrance, let alone the tattered king's strength. Brother Lin, you might not know this, but my master didn't dig this cave just to find a place to rest. Not only is the spiritual qi abundant and the environment is stable, making it suitable for forging weapons, he has also set up formations everywhere. As long as you merge your divine sense with the formations, you'll be able to sense the situation in every corner of the cave, explained the tattered king. Lin Yi came to a realization and asked, "Who are they? How many are there?" "There are 5 of them, but I'm not sure who they are." The king of Jianghu shook his head and said anxiously, "This is bad. Now that the forging has begun, it's too late to stop. We can't stop halfway and we can't be affected in any way. Otherwise, all our efforts will be in vain and so many precious materials will be wasted. Don't worry, leave them to me. You just need to focus on forging weapons." Lin Yi immediately stood up, patted the tattered king's shoulder to comfort him, and walked toward the entrance of the cave. He didn't know who had come in this time, but at this moment the arrow was knocked on the bow. No matter how strong the other party was, he had to find a way to resist. Indeed, there were people coming, and the jade pendant began to warn him. At the same time, Meng Tong and the others who had groped their way into the cave were amazed. Chapter 40-51. How did Lin Yi find such a good place? It looks like it's right next to the spirit jade mine. Pay attention to your feet, maybe you can pick up some spirit jades. Meng Tong and the others were amazed, but they slowed down and became more cautious. This place is obviously not something that Lin Yi could create alone. If there's a hidden master hiding here, wouldn't it be? Zhong Pingliang said, following Kang Mingming's train of thought. Zhong Pingliang's words made everyone's faces change. If there really was a master here, then they would have to think twice. However, Kang Mingming's face turned sinister. Master my ass. If there was a master, he would have come out to support Lin Yi. Why are you still hiding? That makes sense. Murongjin nodded, agreeing. Zhong Pingliang was secretly annoyed that he didn't scare them away. Just when they were feeling suspicious, a voice came from the depths of the cave. I was wondering who it was. I didn't expect it to be you guys. You're really haunting me. What? Meng Tong and the others focused their gazes. Seeing that there was no one behind Lin Yi, they all let out sighs of relief and laughed coldly. Or should we call you Lin Yi II? As expected of the rookie king who loves to show off, you still have the guts to show yourself at a time like this. Tell me, should we say that you're impressed, or should we say that you're stupid? Lin Yi wasn't surprised that someone had come out. Since these people were able to find this place, they'd probably already found out who he was. He smiled. I think it's better for you to say that yourselves. You've been through so much in the past and you still haven't learned your lesson. How dare you come into a cave to block me? Aha, who gave you guys this much courage, this much boldness? This is my courage. Meng Tong harumphed coldly before he even finished his sentence. Without saying a word, his figure suddenly burst forward. In the next moment, his legs carried the power of wind and lightning that could captivate one's mind. The strength of the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment stage was completely revealed. This kick was determined to succeed, and it went straight for Lin Yi's head. Meng Tong had cultivated the Thousand Legs technique, and was originally a speed expert. After taking the Meridian Heart-Shattering pill, his entire personality had changed. His speed was much faster than before, and it was so fast that people could not help but feel that it was strange. Lin Yi was slightly taken aback. He didn't think that Meng Tong's strength would improve this quickly. Against such a sudden and swift 25 forms of thousand kicks, Meng Tong didn't even have time to react. With his current strength, it would be very difficult for him to avoid it. In this narrow cave, the space left for him to move about was too limited. Since he couldn't dodge, he could only face it head-on. Now that he was forced to make a move, how could he block this overbearing 25 styles of thousand kicks? In a hurry, Lin Yi did not advance but retreated instead. He clenched one hand into a fist, and instantly condensed a fervent and turbulent fist intent. Before the frenzied fire fist was released, the temperature in the entire cave suddenly rose a lot. A suffocating heat wave hit him in the face. Bang! The 25th style of the Raging Fire Fist clashed with the 25th style of the Thousand Kicks in an instant. The aftermath of the collision of their powerful forces stirred up layers of sand and stones, causing Murong Zhen and the others behind Meng Tong to be covered in dust. This face-to-face. Meng Tong only felt a slight numbness in his leg, and then he was forcefully shaken back. At the same time, Lin Yi, who was opposite him, also shook under the powerful impact of the 25 styles of Thousand Kicks. The two of them exchanged blows. No one was able to gain the upper hand, and they were actually evenly matched. It's really powerful, but it's a pity. You're still going to die today. Although he didn't succeed in one blow, Meng Tong was already mentally prepared for this. He immediately followed up with an even more ferocious 26 styles of Thousand Kicks. At the same time, he shouted to the people behind him, "What are you waiting for? Attack together." Hearing Meng Tong's shout, Murong Zhen, who was behind him, hurriedly used a cunning phantom finger to coordinate with Meng Tong's 26 styles of Thousand Kicks to attack. However, because they were standing in a straight line, Kang Ming and the others behind him could not coordinate with each other. The cave passage was too narrow. If they attacked together, it was very likely that they would accidentally injure Meng Tong and Murong Zhen before they hit Lin Yi. Even so, Meng Tong had already made up his mind. In his eyes, Lin Yi's strength was at most in the middle stage of the foundation building realm. It was already very difficult for him to face his 26 styles of Thousand Kicks. It was already very impressive that he could withstand it. On the other hand, Murong Zhen's phantom finger was not very powerful, but it won from a tricky angle. It was a perfect match for the already powerful Thousand Kicks. As long as it went straight for the vital parts, it would be the straw that broke the camel's back. Lin Yi was not moved. As he quickly gathered an extremely powerful genuine qi in his palms, he sneered disdainfully and said, "You're despicable enough, but you're still too weak. You've all suffered losses in my hands, but you don't learn from your mistakes. You're still so stubborn even when you're about to die." Meng Tong and the others laughed hideously. However, before they could finish laughing, everything came to an abrupt end. Lin Yi suddenly attacked with the 24 styles of the Raging Fire 8 trigrams palm. The genuine qi that poured out of his palms instantly danced like wild snakes. It directly passed through his opponent's Thousand Kicks and phantom finger, then turned into a pair of giant palms again. Although it was launched later, it arrived first and hit Meng Tong's chest without any suspense. Meng Tong spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, like a kite with a broken string, he was sent flying by the palm. Even Murong Zhen and Kang Ming, who were behind Meng Tong, were caught off guard. They were all hit by the palm, one after another, and they all fell to the ground looking very embarrassed. How is this possible? I've been suffering for so long, and I'm already an expert in the middle stage of the foundation building realm. How can I still not defeat this kind of country bumpkin? Meng Tong's face was immediately filled with disbelief. His eyes stared at Lin Yi, who was approaching him step by step, and he could not help but murmur. For such a long time, Meng Tong had to suffer the destruction of the Meridian Heart-Shattering Pill every day. Being able to quickly improve his strength under such inhuman torture, Meng Tong felt that he had been reborn. He was not an existence that ordinary cultivators like Lin Yi could compare with. It should have been easy for him to defeat Lin Yi at the same level. However, he did not expect the reality to be so cruel. After his strength soared, he was confident that he would win for the first time. He did not even hesitate to ask Murong Zhen to cooperate with him to launch a sneak attack, but in the end he was knocked down by Lin Yi with one move. His ending was almost the same as before. This was too weird and ironic, right? Chapter 40-52. After a pause, Lin Yi glanced at everyone with evil intentions. "Speaking of which, have you guys played football before? Why don't we play football?" Kang Ming and the others' eyelids twitched at the same time. Without waiting for them to react, Lin Yi raised his leg and kicked Meng Tong, mercilessly sending him flying several meters back. Meng Tong, who had lost his soul, didn't even have the strength to make a proper movement to resist. This time, not only was Meng Tong at the front unlucky, but even Murong Zhen and the others, who hadn't reacted in time, suffered with him. After one kick, another followed. Lin Yi treated Meng Tong like a football and kicked him out of the cave. Murong Zhen, Kang Xiaoming, and the others were in an even worse state. Not only did they have to piss their pants, but they also couldn't escape the fate of being used as a human shield. Although they weren't injured directly, they all had bruises all over their faces. What the fuck, this was football? After being toyed with by Lin Yi, Kang Ming and the others wanted to die. They wanted to fight to the death several times, but Lin Yi controlled the rhythm and didn't give them a chance to stand up. In such a narrow passage, if they were to fall, fighting to the death would be wishful thinking. Among them, only Zhong Pingliang, who was at the back, escaped. Not only did he not suffer because of Lin Yi's intentional care, but he also deliberately blocked the escape route of the people in front of him. Without a trace, Lin Yi wouldn't have the chance to kick them so happily otherwise. After being kicked out of the cave, not only Meng Tong, but also Kang Ming Ming and the others couldn't stand up anymore. Not to mention fighting Lin Yi, even if they wanted to run, Lin Yi wouldn't give them the chance. Lin Yi looked around and said lightly, "In the wilderness there's no one around. It's a good place to hide a corpse, don't you think?" Kang Xiaoming and the others shivered in fright. They came here with only one goal in mind, to kill Lin Yi. They never thought that with so many of them, they would end up in a situation where Lin Yi could do whatever he wanted. "How dare you? Do you know what the crime is for newbies to kill each other?" Kang Ming Ming and the others quickly said. Lin Yi shook his head indifferently and smiled. "I don't know, but no one will find out anyway. Since you came to kill me, I'll kill you instead. There should be nothing to complain about, right? Everyone is an adult. We should be open-minded and reasonable. Don't you think so?" As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Yi was about to make his move. They'd been hindering him time and time again, and he really wanted to kill these people. Especially with Meng Tong's shocking rate of growth, if he continued to let them live, there would be no end to their troubles. He might as well go all the way. He might as well kill them all. Anyway, there was no one else here. After killing them and burying their bodies, no one would know. Even if the law enforcement hall investigated later, they wouldn't directly find Lin Yi. The risk was not great. One by one. "Let's start with you, Great Deacon Kang." Murderous intent was revealed. Lin Yi walked slowly to Kang Ming Ming, which really scared Kang Ming so much that he almost peed his pants. Dongfang Badeo was also scared. He shouldn't have come. From the beginning to the end, he had to be buried with them. It was really bad luck. Watching Lin Yi's hand coming to his neck, Kang Ming Ming was scared to retreat on the ground. After rolling and crawling away for a few feet, he had an idea and shouted, "Lin Yi, don't be arrogant. We came here to find you. There are other people who know. He is coming. If you dare to kill us, you can't escape punishment yourself. At that time, you will have to be buried with us." After listening to this, Lin Yi couldn't help but frown. He noticed that Zhong Pingliang was also secretly nodding to himself. If no one knew, he could kill them here. But now, if he killed these people, he would have to be buried with them. There was no way. Seeing Lin Yi's murderous intent finally converged, Kang Ming Ming quickly gritted his teeth and rolled up. He didn't dare to say any more nonsense to stimulate Lin Yi. Before the other party changed his mind, he quickly sat on the flying spirit beast not far away and prepared to leave. With Kang Ming Ming taking the lead, other people such as Murong Zhen and others also followed suit. They took Meng Tong, who was scared out of his wits, and hurriedly climbed on the flying spirit beast to escape. Seeing these people fleeing in panic, Lin Yi could only stop, although he was unwilling. Otherwise, if he really killed these people, he would be happy, but he would have to pay with his life. At that time, even if Shanghai Tianhua came forward, he might not be able to save him. Inexplicably, these people know the place where I forge. It's not a big trouble. Lin Yi had a headache. Due to the use of many rare materials, there weren't many precedents that could be used as reference. Even the king of junk couldn't be sure how long this forging would take. According to his past experience, it wouldn't be a short time. If Kang Ming Ming and the others came back to wreak havoc, he couldn't let his guard down. The only good news was that these people's backers were either dead or missing. If they wanted to face Lin Yi with their own strength, they would only end up like today. They were purely looking for trouble, so there was no need to worry too much about it. At that moment, a few whistling sounds came from above. Then, 3 figures descended from the sky and appeared in front of Lin Yi with unfriendly expressions. They were Nan Qianba, Nan Tianmen, and Yuzha. "Second Lin, we've finally caught you. My first and second martial uncles are here, let's see how you're going to escape." Wah! Yuzha laughed arrogantly. Previously, when they received Kang Ming Ming's report, they didn't believe it. After the incident at the extreme North Island, although they hated Lin Yi, they didn't believe that Lin Yi was second Lin. In comparison, Kang Ming Ming was more suspicious. But now, Lin Second was standing right in front of them. It didn't matter who his other identity was. All they needed to know was that Lin Second was the killer of their third brother, Nan Tianyong, and that Lin Second had the starring stone on him. Seeing the 3 people descending from the sky, Lin Yi was shocked. Previously, Kang Ming Ming said that someone knew they were here, but he didn't think that the people who knew were these 3 enemies. This matter was serious. Chapter 4053. As for Southern Sky Gate and Nan Tianba, The former was at the Foundation Establishment Perfection stage and the latter was an unfathomable gold core stage expert. If Lin Yi wanted to face such a strong enemy by himself, he had no chance of winning. Even the possibility of retreating was very small because the other side would not give him the chance to secretly prepare a killing move. Lin Second, you really made me look for you. Third brother has died for so long, he can finally rest in peace today. Nan Qianba's body emitted an indescribable killing intent. Even the birds and beasts within 100 feet of him scattered in fright. Southern Sky Gate had a sinister expression as he said, "Be a bit more sensible and hand over the star ink stone. I can make the decision to leave your corpse intact, but it doesn't matter if you don't want to say it. At most, I'll spend a bit of energy to use the soul-searching technique. But if I do that, you'll be in trouble. Have you heard of human swine? I'll cut off your arms and legs, dig out your eyes and cut off your tongue. I'll make you beg for death." Each one was more overbearing than the last. Lin Yi's heart trembled. His brain quickly turned to think of a way to deal with them, but his expression remained unchanged. He curled his lips and said, "So you're saying that I have to die today? Aha, could it be that you're still dreaming of living past today? You even asked such a stupid question, don't you think you're too stupid?" Yuzha laughed wildly. After suppressing his anger for so long under the hands of Nan Qianba and Southern Sky Gate, he finally found a punching bag. Then Yuzha turned to Nan Qianba and Southern Sky Gate and asked, "Martial uncles, although this person is Lin Yi without a doubt, this disciple thinks it's necessary to find out his other identity. If he really is Lin Yi, then we'll be better prepared to face Hong Zhong and the others in the future." Although Kang Ming had already said that Lin Yi was Lin Yi, it was still necessary to confirm it with his own eyes. Nan Qianba originally wanted to kill Lin Yi to avenge his third brother, but after thinking about it he nodded and said, "Fine. As for the whereabouts of the star ink stone and his other identity, just use the soul-searching technique on him. There's no need to waste time with him." "All right." The Southern Heavenly Gate immediately agreed. Using the soul-searching art would damage one's divine sense, but compared to the bountiful rewards of the star ink stones, this small price was negligible. "Hold on, you don't have to do anything. I can tell you directly that I am Lin Yi," Lin Yi said as he reached out and took off the thousand silk mask, revealing his true colors. Nan Tianba and the other two's eyes became serious. Seeing this, Yuzha was overjoyed. He turned to Nan Tianba and the Southern Sky Gate and said, "I knew it, this little brat was without a doubt Lin Heir. However, your acting was too good, causing me to be punished by the two martial uncles. Today I'll make you pay back 100 times over." He recalled his experience at the northernmost island, where Nan Qianba and the Southern Heaven Gate fought. It was Lin Heir and Lin Yi. To them this was a double grudge. Just as well we can settle old and new grudges at the same time. Now that Hong Zhong has gone far away to Middle Island, I want to see who else can save you. Second brother, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and do it." Nan Qianba clenched his teeth and said. The Southern Sky Gate nodded. He took a step forward and reached out his hand to grab Lin Yi. Even though Lin Yi was an expert at the peak of the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment realm, there was still a huge gap between their cultivation levels. Unless he used a trump card like the Pill Fire True Chi Bomb, his chances of winning against the Southern Sky Gate were slim. However, at this moment, Lin Yi suddenly smiled and said calmly, "Do you really think that since old Hong isn't here, no one can save me?" "What do you mean? Who else can save you? Why don't you tell us? It's not a wise choice to play tricks on us at a time like this. It will only make your death worse." The South Heaven Gate came to a stop and said with a hideous grin, "Trying to be mysterious? Do I look like such a senseless person? Why don't you just say it, the person who can save me is here and he's right in the middle of you." Lin Yi stared at one person with a burning gaze. It was Yuzha. Being stared at by Lin Yi made Yuzha's hair stand on end. Although he didn't know what the problem was, he had a bad feeling about this. "You mean Yuzha?" Nan Qianba and the Southern Sky Gate couldn't help but feel suspicious. The way they looked at Yuzha also carried a sense of judgment. Although they were martial nephews, they didn't have much contact with Yuzha before. They only relied on them after the Southern Sky Gate was killed, so they couldn't be considered to know him well. "How is that possible? I want to tear him to pieces to avenge my master. How could I save him? Martial uncles, don't fall for this brat's trick." Yuzha hurriedly denied. The Southern Sky Gate reacted quickly and said, "Brat, don't look down on us too much. You actually said that Yuzha would save you. Do you think we'll believe you with such a lowly attempt to sow discord? Do you think we're pigs?" "That's right, even if Yuzha had such thoughts, with his weak strength, wanting to save you in front of my eyes is simply a fool's dream. Nan Qianba also coldly laughed. Martial uncles are wise. This brat still hasn't given up on his evil intentions and wants to sow discord between martial nephews and the two martial uncles. He should be torn to pieces. Wuxia let out a sigh of relief and quickly added insult to injury. Seeing the three people's expressions become more and more unfriendly, Lin Yi remained calm. You've misunderstood. I didn't say Wuxia would directly save me. What I meant was, he will die in my place. What? You want me to die in your place? Is there something wrong with your head? Wuxia was stunned for a moment before laughing out loud. However, the bad feeling in his heart that he couldn't get rid of became even stronger. At the same time, Nan Qianba and the Southern Sky Gate both looked at Lin Yi like he was an idiot. They thought that Lin Yi had been scared to the point of losing his mind and was starting to talk nonsense. Doesn't it sound ridiculous? However, after you watch this, I think you'll change your mind. Lin Yi smiled. He took out his phone and pulled out a video he had taken earlier. What kind of bullshit is this? Nan Qianba and the other two couldn't help but be stunned. No matter how knowledgeable they were, it was impossible for them to have seen the development of smartphones in the mortal world. They immediately looked at each other in dismay. Chapter 40-54. Why was this thing similar to the legendary Xiang chicken? Wuxia, why are you in here? Nan Qianba and Southern Sky Gate asked curiously. Oh, I don't know either. Who knows what kind of sorcery this brat is using? Wuxia himself was also at a loss. Looking at the familiar scene in the video, his heart started to beat wildly uncontrollably. Following this, the scene changed. A familiar figure who was on the verge of death appeared, causing Nan Qianba and the South Heaven Gate to open their eyes wide. At this moment, no matter how shocked or slow Wuxia was, he finally reacted. Wasn't this the scene of Nan Tianyong's death? If this continued, wouldn't it be the scene of him killing Nan Tianyong? Wuxia suddenly quivered and finally found the source of the ominous feeling. If Nan Qianba and Southern Sky Gate were to see the scene of him killing his master, even if he had 10,000 lives, it wouldn't be enough to kill him. You still dare to play tricks? I'll kill you right now and avenge my master. In a moment of desperation, Wuxia suddenly yelled and attacked Lin Yi. Even if he couldn't kill Lin Yi in one go, he had to destroy the unknown thing in Lin Yi's hand first. Otherwise, he would live in fear for the rest of his life. However, Wuxia's attack was still a step too late. The scene of him killing Nan Tianyong with his own hands was clearly seen by Nan Qianba and Southern Sky Gate. Bang! Lin Yi raised his leg and kicked Wuxia several meters away. The entire place fell into a dead silence. After a while, Nan Qianba's voice, which was filled with anger, finally reached everyone's ears. Wuxia, did you kill third brother? No. Martial uncle, I'm innocent. This is all an illusion created by Lin Yi. Don't fall into his trap. Wuxia hurriedly defended himself with sweat dripping down his forehead. Nan Qianba and the South Heaven Gate were infuriated. If this was true, then they had been played like fools by Wuxia from the beginning. However, they had never seen a mobile phone before, and this video came from the hands of their enemy, Lin Yi. They had to carefully weigh the credibility of the video. But Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, "Isn't it too late to quibble now? With your eyesight, it should be easy for you to determine whether this video is real or fake. Besides, don't you know the soul-searching technique? Whether it's real or fake we'll know once we try." At this point, Nan Qianba and Southern Sky Gate were already 70 to 80% convinced. Being able to reach the peak of the Foundation Establishment realm and even the Gold Core realm, there was no need to doubt their shrewdness. Especially when it came to something as important as Nan Tianyong's death, trying to deceive them was easier said than done. Especially Nan Qianba, who had seen much of the world, immediately nodded his head. This is the Xiang chicken of the secular world? I've heard of these things. I didn't expect you to have them. Seeing the two of them looking at him with unkind eyes, Wuxia's legs immediately went soft. He hysterically continued to quibble, "Martial uncles don't believe him. How could I do something as disgraceful as killing my master? He's clearly trying to sow discord. If he used the soul-searching technique on me, even if I was wrongly accused, I would still become a cripple." Hearing this, Southern Sky Gate coldly said, "Don't worry. Even if I don't use the soul-searching technique, I can still determine whether it's real or fake. Third brother's corpse is still in the law enforcement hall's ice cellar. As long as I compare the scars on third brother's body, the truth will naturally come to light. If the final result is that you're deceiving me, you should just wait to be cut into pieces. I will definitely use you as a living sacrifice to third brother's soul in heaven." Nan Qianba's voice seemed to come out from between his teeth. The murderous intent in it made Wuxia tremble in fear. At this moment, Wuxia didn't know how to quibble anymore. He fell to the ground in a daze, his eyes filled with hatred as he stared at Lin Yi. At this moment, Southern Sky Gate suddenly said, "Big brother, even if you really killed third brother, we can't let Lin Yi go so easily. We still haven't taken revenge for what happened in the extreme North Island. Furthermore, he still has the Star Ink Stone that I want." To Southern Sky Gate, including third brother Nan Tianyong's death, everything else was just fleeting clouds. Only the Star Ink Stone was his target. "That's fine, then we'll take this brat away as well. It won't be too late to kill him after we've figured everything out." Nan Qinba's only thought now was to find out who killed third brother. Seeing that Southern Sky Gate was about to make another move, Lin Yi immediately said, "Catch me? Have you thought about the consequences of this? Miss Shangguan also knows that I'm here. If you don't catch the murderer and make a move on me, think about the consequences yourself." "Oh, that's right, Pavilion Master Shangguan personally promised me that I can look for him if I need anything. As disciples of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, don't you need to ask him for instructions?" Hearing this, the eyelids of Nan Tianba and the Southern Heaven Gate twitched. Shangguan Lan'er was nothing much, as she was just a young mistress with no real strength. However, Shangguan Tianhua was someone who could easily crush them to death with a single finger. If what Lin Yi said was true and they took Lin Yi away now, it was equivalent to publicly slapping Shanghai Tianhua in the face. The consequences would be unimaginable. Although Southern Sky Gate didn't want to believe these words, he remembered that Lin Yi was invited to Shanghai Laner's birthday banquet as a newcomer. Especially after the recent kidnapping incident, there were rumors that Shanghai Tianhua treated Lin Yi differently. This meant that these words were not fabricated. This risk was not something that Southern Sky Gate could take, nor could Nan Tianba. After hesitating for a moment, Nan Tianba clenched his teeth and coldly snorted, "Humph, I'll let you go for now. Let's go." After saying this, Nan Tianba grabbed the dejected Wuxia with one hand and jumped onto the flying spiritual beast. Southern Sky Gate looked at Lin Yi unwillingly, but in the end he didn't dare to make a move and bitterly followed. Seeing Nan Tianba and the other two fly away, Lin Yi finally let out a sigh of relief. Facing a Golden Core stage and a Foundation Establishment stage expert alone, even though they didn't really fight, the pressure was not something an ordinary person could handle. He'd probably be a corpse right now if he'd said anything wrong in that conversation. It was fortunate that he'd been smart enough to take a video of Wuxia killing his own Shifu, otherwise he'd be dead for sure. Chapter 4055. Who are you? The King of Tattered Rags was shocked to see an unfamiliar face. "Don't be nervous, it's me. I've always been wearing a mask. This is my true appearance. I'm really sorry for hiding it from you," Lin Yi explained. "Hey, it's you, brother Lin. It's okay. I can also make a mask that can change one's appearance. It's understandable that you have to keep a trick up your sleeve." The Tattered King smiled. Lin Yi nodded and asked with concern, "I've already taken care of the trouble outside. It didn't affect your forging, right?" "No, it's still the warm-up phase of forging. Although we can't stop halfway, at least for the next few days, we just have to wait patiently on the side. There's nothing to do for now," the Tattered King said. "That's good. I'm afraid that these people will ruin our plans." Lin Yi sighed in relief. He didn't stay idle after that. He sat on the side and discussed the subsequent forging matters with the Tattered King. This time, other than forging weapons for himself, he had another task, which was to observe and learn. No matter what, he was still a blacksmith. He should have some improvement in this aspect. Otherwise, he couldn't come back to the Tattered King for help every time he had a need for forging weapons in the future. At the same time, Wuxia, who was brought back by Nan Tianba, wasn't in a good mood. The three of them went to the law enforcement hall to examine the corpse and quickly came to a conclusion. Third brother Nan Tianyong was indeed killed by Wuxia. Because of the appearance, Nan Tianyong didn't examine it carefully. Now that he saw it, he knew that he was tricked by Wuxia. The evidence was conclusive. This time, Wuxia was completely unable to explain himself. The last trace of hope in his heart was also annihilated. This time he was completely disheartened. "You treacherous scum. How could third brother have a disciple like you? He must have been blind. I will cut you into 1,000 pieces tomorrow. I will be a living sacrifice for third brother's soul in heaven." Nan Tianba was so angry that his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. No matter who killed Nan Tianyong, he could accept it. However, it was Nan Tianyong's disciple who killed him. This was too intolerable. They wouldn't even be able to die in peace. Especially since he and the Southern Sky Gate had been tricked by a nobody like Wuxia for so long. Now that he thought about it, he couldn't help but feel embarrassed. How embarrassing. A traitorous disciple killing his own master, no matter what era it was. It would be a huge scandal no matter where it was. Although Nan Qianba and the South Heaven Gate did not want anyone to know about it, there was no such thing as an airtight wall in this world. The moment they had conducted the autopsy, the news had already spread. In less than half a day, the news of Wuxia killing his master had already spread throughout the three great pavilions. In the streets and alleys, almost everyone was talking about this matter. First, Su Lingchong attempted to rape her and escaped, followed by the Shangguan Laner kidnapping incident. Now the huge scandal of Wuxia murdering his teacher had been exposed. The three great pavilions, or more accurately the Soaring Sky Pavilion, had been hit by one wave after another. However, even if everyone knew about it, it did not change Nan Qianba's determination to kill Wuxia. This was his family's matter, even if it was the three great pavilions and the law enforcement hall. They had no right to interfere. Furthermore, it had already been known by others. Nan Qianba decided to no longer hide it. He publicly opened a sacrificial altar on the Soaring Sky Pavilion's plaza and, in front of countless people, sacrificed Wuxia to his third brother, Nan Tianyong. To Nan Qianba, although doing this might attract criticism, it was the best way to wash away the shame that Wuxia had brought to his family. The news spread like wildfire. By noon the next day, the Soaring Sky Pavilion's plaza was already filled with hundreds and thousands of people. Not only were there disciples from the Soaring Sky Pavilion, disciples from the other two pavilions also came to watch the show. However, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Nan Qianba and the Southern Sky Gate brothers suddenly stood everyone up. There was no other way. Wuxia had disappeared. Looking at the empty basement, Nan Qianba's domineering aura caused the three-corpse god to explode. However, at the same time, even he himself felt that it was unimaginable. From yesterday until now, he had not taken even half a step out of the room above. In this completely sealed basement, the only exit was right under his feet. It was surrounded by a tight defensive array, so it was impossible to escape from any other place. However, such an impossible thing had happened right in front of his eyes. Wuxia, who was supposed to close his eyes and wait for his death, had disappeared from the face of the earth without any warning. If it wasn't for the fact that he knew his big brother's temperament, Southern Sky Gate would have suspected that his big brother's heart had softened and secretly released Wuxia. However, this was impossible. Regarding the death of his third brother, Nan Tianyong, Nan Qianba could only let Wuxia suffer a few more cuts and die a more miserable death. He definitely could not let him live. After a long time, Nan Qianba faintly said, "It seems like an expert saved him." What? Southern Sky Gate was shocked. "Big brother, you personally guarded this place. Who could hide from your eyes and ears and save Wuxia from the basement? That's not possible, right?" "I also don't think it's possible, but there is always someone better than you out there. The truth is right here. What else can you say?" Nan Qianba helplessly said. This time, Southern Sky Gate was also speechless. In his eyes, Nan Qianba was a gold core expert and was extremely strong. However, in the three great pavilions, there were still many people who were stronger than Nan Qianba. What the two of them couldn't understand was that in these past few months, Wuxia had always been trying to please them. When did he manage to hook up with such a strong person? Wuxia's disappearance immediately caused a huge uproar. Not only did it cause Nan Qianba and the Southern Sky Gate brothers to lose face, it was also the second case of someone escaping and disappearing after Su Lingchong. The time between the two cases was less than a month. In the secret underground room, Wuxia slowly opened his eyes. Borrowing the dim light to look around, he suddenly trembled and begged, "Martial uncle, I beg you to spare my little life. It was Disciple's fault that I had evil thoughts. Disciple deserves to die. Disciple is worse than a dog, but Disciple is still useful to you. As long as you spare Disciple this time, in this life, no, in the next life, the life after that, I will work like a horse for you." Halfway through his words, he was suddenly interrupted by a black cloaked figure in the shadows. "Save it, I'm not Nan Qianba. You don't need to be afraid. I won't kill you, and I won't hand you over to Nan Qianba." Chapter 4056. Now that he had woken up, Wuxia instinctively thought that he was still in that secret room. He had never thought that he had already been moved without anyone noticing. Even though it was still an underground secret room, it was no longer the same room he had been in before. "Then, who are you? Why did you bring me here?" Wuxia rejoiced in his heart but immediately became vigilant again. Could it be that he had just left the wolf's den and entered the tiger's den? The dark and gloomy secret room in front of him was even more indestructible than Nan Qianba's, and there was nowhere to escape to. If this mysterious person really wanted to save him, why would he bring him to this kind of place? "You're quite vigilant. It seems that I didn't save you for nothing." The mysterious man paused for a moment and suddenly smiled meaningfully. "To be honest, I admire you very much. It's rare to see a person who can kill his own master with his own hands. In terms of temperament, you meet my requirements very well. What do you mean? Yuzha became more cautious. He inconspicuously moved backwards, trying to stay as far away from this mysterious person as possible. He had indeed killed Nan Tianyong with his own hands, but he still felt very guilty about this matter. Normally, he did not dare and did not want to take the initiative to think about this matter. However, from the mysterious person's attitude, this person seemed to admire him very much. Wasn't he a pervert? Seeing Yuzha's cautious expression, the mysterious person did not mind and lightly said, "It's nothing. I only saved you because I admire you. Otherwise, you would have been cut into pieces by Nan Tianba in front of everyone. However, don't think about running away now that you're here. That's not realistic. Also, I believe that you're not stupid enough to go out and seek death." After saying this, the mysterious person's killing intent almost materialized for a moment. Even if it was only for a short moment, the shock it gave Yuzha was unforgettable. This mysterious person in front of him. He was not an existence that Nan Tianba could fight against. Yuzha took a deep breath and finally recognized his current situation. His previous thoughts were not wrong. He had indeed just left the wolf's den and had immediately fallen into an even more dangerous tiger's den. "What does your excellency want me to do?" Yuzha stared at the figure in the darkness and asked. The mysterious person did not speak and threw something over. It landed in front of Yuzha and made a clanking sound. Yuzha was shocked. He thought that it was a hidden weapon that could kill someone, but in the next moment, his eyes suddenly widened as he stared at the stone in front of him, unable to move his eyes away. After a long time, Yuzha swallowed a few times, his face filled with disbelief as he stammered, This is star. Starring stone? Your eyesight isn't bad. There's no mistaking it. This is staring stone. However, half of it has already been used up." The mysterious man nodded calmly. "Used half." Yuzha couldn't help but stare blankly when he heard this. He observed carefully under the dim light. Only then did he discover that this piece of star ink stone was not the one he had seen at the Hong merchant house. Not only was its shape different, its color and foundation were clearly weaker. Even so, this was a treasure that Yuzha dreamed of. The star ink stone could allow one to perfectly break through to the most powerful golden core stage, and even if one used half of the star ink stone, the supplementary effects wouldn't be too bad. Seeing Yuzha's greedy expression, as if he wanted nothing more than to swallow the star ink stone into his stomach, the mysterious person laughed. "Not only will you be able to keep your life, but this half of the staring stone will also be yours. How about it?" Although Yuzha's mind was already clouded by the star ink stone, he hadn't completely lost his reason. Hearing this, he immediately hesitated and struggled. "Don't worry, I won't let you suffer a loss. This piece of star ink stone is only an advance payment to you, that's all." The mysterious person paused and then his tone changed. "Of course, if you don't agree, that's fine. I won't kill you. I will only return the item to its rightful owner and send you back to the hands of Nan Tianba." Yuzha quivered and remembered that with his current situation, he didn't dare to go out. Without the protection of this mysterious person, his fate would be death by 1,000 cuts. Thinking of this, Yuzha didn't hesitate any longer. He gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, I agree. Then what do you want me to do now?" The mysterious person wasn't surprised at this and said calmly, "There's nothing I want you to do right now. You just need to focus on cultivating here and quickly increase your strength. When I need you, I will naturally notify you." "I understand. No matter what, many thanks for your kindness in saving my life. In the future, if you have any orders, I will definitely go through fire and water and offer my life to you." Yuzha immediately swore and flattered. Unexpectedly, the mysterious person said mockingly, "You don't need to do this with me. You're someone who can even kill his own master without blinking. Do you think I will believe your cheap oath? Remember, never play tricks in front of me. If this happens again, I will make you regret not dying at the hands of Nan Tianba." After saying this, the mysterious person's figure flickered and disappeared right in front of Yuzha's eyes. It was a simple sentence, but the feeling of being seen through was even more frightening to Yuzha than the physical killing intent from before. He was filled with lingering fear. However, Yuzha's attention quickly shifted back to the star ink stone. All sorts of experiences had made him deeply understand that only when one's own strength was powerful, everything else was fleeting. This star ink stone was a cheat that could allow him to ascend the path of the strong. Yuzha's disappearance had caused a huge uproar in the three great pavilions. However, Linny knew nothing about it. During this period of time, he had stayed with the tattered king and focused on his great business of forging. 7 days had passed since Kang Mingming and Nan Tianba had come looking for trouble. As early as 3 days ago, the most basic warm-up stage had already ended. Now it was time for the most crucial part of forging. The more powerful the divine weapon, the higher the requirements for the forging master. There couldn't be the slightest mistake during the forging process. Even if there was a slight deviation of half a centimeter, the final result might be completely different from what one had expected. Extremely rare materials such as the 10,000-year tree crystal and the ancient pure soil would also be burnt to ashes. From then on, they would become a pile of waste, which made one sigh with regret. Not only was Lin Yi unwilling to see such a tragic result, but the tattered king who regarded forging as his life, was even more unwilling to see it. For the past few months, the tattered king had spent a lot of effort on forging. Even compared to Lin Yi, who had provided many extremely rare materials, the amount he had spent was no less. Chapter 4057. Since the beginning of the forging process, the king of Jianghu had been extremely tense. He was personally in charge of every step of the process and could not afford to make any mistakes. Lin Yi, on the other hand, wasn't idling around. It was a rare opportunity to observe the entire process from such a close distance, and in just a short 7 days he'd already learned quite a bit from the King of Garbage's teachings. In these 7 days, there were no deviations in the crafting process. Everything was going according to the script that the King of Jianghu had planned beforehand. The anxiety in his heart slowly faded away, and he started to feel more at ease. He was glad that he hadn't found the wrong person. Everything was difficult at the beginning. Since they had passed the most important beginning stage, the forging process was already half a success. Lin Yi thought that everything would go smoothly. However, on the 8th day, everything came to an abrupt end. That's it? Looking at the gradually calming casting pool, Lin Yi was dumbfounded. This was completely different from the plan that the King of Jianghu had told him about. At this moment, even the King of Jianghu himself was going crazy. Although he could not accurately predict how long the forging process would take, it was only the 8th day. According to the experience of many blacksmiths, the more powerful a divine weapon was, the longer the forging process would take. As long as a divine weapon was of a slightly higher grade, it was normal for it to take several months or even several years. But this time, the forging process had used extremely rare materials like the 10,000-year-old tree crystal and the ancient sacred soil. No matter what, it couldn't be weaker than other weapons, right? However, it was an indisputable fact that the casting pool had calmed down. Normally, such a situation would only occur when the final weapon was formed. However, it was only the 8th day. Looking at the lump in the forging pool, even a ghost wouldn't believe that it was a fully formed godly weapon. What should we do now? Lin Yi's mouth twitched. He turned to look at the King of Jianghu. This thing. Should I use it to smash people? Impossible. 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 The tattered king hammered his head as he paced back and forth around the forging pool, mumbling to himself. Lin Yi couldn't help but worry that the guy might just fall into the foundry when he saw how crazy he was. That would really kill him. Lin Yi, on the other hand, found it inconceivable as well. The whole plan was thought up by the King of Garbage alone, but he'd analyzed and discussed it with Lin Yi in detail during the process. To ensure the success rate of the forging, he'd done a lot of preparation beforehand. Lin Yi had specially gone to the far north island to bid for those high-level casting materials. There was only one ultimate use for it, and that was to ensure the stability and success rate of the crafting process. This was one of the reasons why the crappy king asked Lin Yi to take out a couple of sky-class weapons he didn't use and put them into the crafting process. Who would have thought that even after making such thorough preparations, it would still end up like this? This. Lin Huang asked. This. The king of the tatters. We failed. At this moment, the King of Jianghu squatted down. He stuck his face to the edge of the casting pool, which really shocked Lin Yi. Is this guy really going to take things too hard? Although the casting pool has calmed down, the temperature is still shockingly high. However, the temperature was frighteningly high. Even a foundation establishment expert would not be able to endure it. Just when Lin Yi was about to stop him, the King of Jianghu's eyes suddenly lit up. No, I know the reason. We haven't failed yet. Haven't failed yet? Lin Yi was stunned. Yes, we haven't failed yet. To be precise, we haven't completely failed yet. The King of Jianghu instantly became 100 times more energetic. Pointing at the casting pool, he explained to Lin Yi, "You'll know if you look closely. This pool has not completely cooled down, and the god weapon has not been completely shaped. It seems that if we don't find a way to solve the problem, it will remain in this lukewarm state. We still have a way to fix it." Hearing this, Lin Yi could not help but feel refreshed. After observing for a while, he confirmed that the god weapon was still changing at a speed that was hard to be seen by the naked eye. He immediately asked, "What problem should we solve?" "Solve the conflict between the attributes of the 10,000-year tree crystal and the ancient Pure Land." The king of Jianghu said with certainty, "Brother Lin, I've told you before that the most basic requirement for casting is that the attributes of all the casting materials must be compatible. Even if they are incompatible, we must find a way to neutralize them with other auxiliary materials. This is the problem we're facing now." "How could it be? The 10,000-year tree crystal is of the wood attribute, and the ancient Pure Land is of the earth attribute. How could there be a conflict between the two?" Lin asked curiously. It was common sense that wood and earth were mutually reinforcing. The king of Jianghu shook his head and said, "You're wrong. These two materials are too rare. It's difficult to understand their specific origins, so we've all made a mistake on this most basic question. The 10,000-year tree crystal is of the wood attribute, but the ancient Pure Land is not of the pure earth attribute. If it's not of the earth attribute, then what is it?" Lin was puzzled. Even if he did not understand its origin, how could the standard soil of the ancient Pure Land be of any other attribute? "I've read about the ancient Pure Land in my master's notes. Although its attributes were not clearly mentioned, it was mentioned that the ancient Pure Land usually only appears in the craters of ancient volcanoes." The king of Jianghu said excitedly, "Now you understand. Although the ancient Pure Land has the earth attribute, it also has the fire attribute. Therefore, to a certain extent, there is a conflict between the attributes of the 10,000-year tree crystal and the wood attribute of the 10,000-year tree crystal." Only then did Lin understand. He nodded and said, "No wonder such a strange situation occurred. Under normal circumstances, if it was a simple conflict of attributes, it would have completely failed by now. It turns out that the ancient Pure Land's earth and fire attributes are both conflicting and compatible with the wood attribute of the 10,000-year tree crystal." "That's right. Fortunately, my mistake wasn't too fatal. Otherwise, I wouldn't even have a chance to remedy it, and I would be even more ashamed to face you, Brother Lin," the king of Jianghu said awkwardly. Chapter 4058. Don't worry, Brother Lin. Since we've found the root of the problem, I'm confident that I can succeed as long as we can solve the problem of the attribute conflict." The king of Jianghu promised. "That's great, but how are we going to solve this problem now?" Lin asked. The process of forging could not be stopped halfway, and with the current situation, the lump inside could not even be considered a semi-finished product. It was even more impossible to take it out now. If everything goes as expected, the forging pool will continue to be in this state. However, to be on the safe side, it's better for me to stay here and keep an eye on it. Therefore, I can only trouble Brother Lin to find some materials to make up for it, so that we can continue forging," the king of Jianghu said as he took out a pen and paper, then listed a list of materials and passed it to Lin. Lin took a glance and asked, "Are these materials common?" "Most of them are common, so we should be able to buy them directly. However, there are two that we'll have to try our luck. Fortunately, we're not in a rush and I'll find a way to control it. Even if it takes longer, it won't be a problem. Being slow is also a stage of forging, so taking longer might not be a bad thing," the king of Jianghu analyzed. "All right, I'll think of a way to make up for the materials. I'll leave it to you, Brother Wang." Lin immediately set off. Hong Merchant Guild. After Hong Zhongyuan went to Middle Island to take up his post, it was now Si Haixiao's territory. At this moment, there were two familiar faces in the private room. They were Nan Qianba and Nan Tianmen. "Shopkeeper Si, we have a presumptuous request. We hope you can help us find someone." Nan Tianmen and Nan Qianba looked at each other and pleaded. Oh, could it be about Lin? There's no news yet, but I've already sent people to investigate. Si Haixiao casually answered as he drank the high-quality spiritual tea. "Actually, we already know Lin-Er's true identity and his whereabouts. This guy is the Lin I mentioned to you before. However, we're looking for someone else. You've met him once before. He's my unworthy martial nephew Wuxia," the Southern Heavenly Gate said awkwardly. He and Nan Qianba had already searched everywhere they could, but they still couldn't find any trace of Wuxia. They had no choice but to run over to ask Si Haixiao for help. After all, Si Haixiao was a supervisor. Letting him borrow the eyes and ears of the Hong Ying group to find out Wuxia's whereabouts was much better than relying on the two of them to run around blindly. "Ask about Wuxia? Don't you know the whereabouts of your own martial nephew?" Si Haixiao was taken aback. "Since we already know that Lin is Lin II, we should think of a way to deal with Lin first. Why bother looking for Wuxia?" "Sai, shopkeeper, see, there's something you don't know. We only learned recently that the culprit that killed third brother wasn't Lin Yi, but Yujia's rebellious disciple. The South Heaven Gate briefly explained the recent events to Si Haishao. Such a complicated inside story made Si Haishao click his tongue in wonder. Yuzha killing his teacher. Although it had caused a lot of commotion recently, it was mainly focused on the three great pavilions. It didn't spread much in the marketplace. Furthermore, he had been busy reorganizing the Hong Chamber of Commerce recently. In order to erase the traces left behind by Hong Zhong's many years of business, he had no time to care about this kind of gossip. I didn't think that this kid would actually be a traitor despite looking so much like a dog. Fine. This shopkeeper will send a message to the old partner of the Hong Ying group who is in charge of the North Island and let him investigate for you. Since the matter has become so big, the eyes and ears in the North Island should take the initiative to pay attention to Yuzha's whereabouts. After Si Haishao said this, he immediately wrote a note and had someone send a letter with a bird. Since they were both in the North Island, the news spread very quickly. In just the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Si Haishao received a reply. Unfortunately, the other party's reply was that they didn't receive any news regarding Yuzha's whereabouts. Nan Qianba and Southern Sky Gate were both extremely depressed. Now that the missing Yuzha had become the two brothers' laughingstock, if they let him go on like this, the prestige they had established in the Soaring Sky Pavilion would probably be completely gone. Seeing the two of them like this, Si Haishao comforted them. Actually, you don't need to be too discouraged. That kid Yuzha can hide for a while, but can he hide forever? The Hong Ying group has so many eyes and ears in the North Island. As long as he appears, don't worry about not being able to find him. This is all just a matter of time. Also, isn't that Lin ready-made? Although Yuzha killed Nan Tianyong, there's still a problem with him. Nan Qianba and Southern Sky Gate both nodded. We also know that Lin isn't a good person. When he pretended to be second Lin and took away the Star Ink Stone, it was actually because he had bad intentions. Everything started because of him. Otherwise, third brother wouldn't have ended up being killed by his own disciple. That's right, so this shopkeeper is prepared to help you deal with him, Si Haishao suddenly said. The two of them couldn't help but look at each other in surprise. Although Si Haishao had previously agreed to help find second Lin, the perfunctory meaning behind it could be seen even if they were blind. Why did he suddenly take the initiative now? Don't be so surprised. These 2 days your uncle, Nantian Polaris, just happened to send this shopkeeper a letter. He asked this shopkeeper to help him teach a lesson to an enemy. He made this enemy when he went to the secular world to be a guide. Guess who it is? Si Haishao said with a playful expression. It can't be Lin, right? The two of them instantly looked at each other. That's right, it's this Lin. Speaking of which, this kid is really at odds with your family. In the secular world, he went against your uncle and now he's going against the two of you. It's really rare to see a newcomer who dares to provoke others like this. Si Haishao laughed. Nan Qianba and Southern Sky Gate both had an expression as if they had seen a ghost. They immediately reacted and said, since there's a grudge against uncle, then we can't let this kid go. Let's do as shopkeeper Si says and deal with Lin first. Si Haishao nodded and said, now that Hong Zhong has gone to the Middle Island, distant water can't put out a nearby fire. Moreover, it said that he's also in trouble, so it's easy for us to deal with Lin. However, we still need to plan this matter first and find a good opportunity. It's best if Lin takes the initiative to come to us. Otherwise, as the shopkeeper of the northern island of the Hong Merchant Guild, it wouldn't be good for me to go to the welcoming pavilion to find him. Yes, shopkeeper Si has thought things through. Southern Sky Gate agreed. Chapter 4059. Nan Qianba and Southern Sky Gate looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. The North Island is like this. There are no female cultivators here, so it can't be compared to the Middle Island. However, if shopkeeper Si wants to play, we brothers know a good place. Since I don't have anything to do, why don't we go and relax together? Si Haishao immediately became interested and suggested. That's great. Shopkeeper Si, as the host, we haven't had a chance to welcome you. This time we can be the host and treat you as a welcome. The two nodded. For them, Si Haishao was a good backer and they needed to find a way to curry favor with him. Since Si Haishao was interested, it couldn't be any better. They only needed to spend some spiritual jades to get closer to such a person. This was something they couldn't ask for more. After coming to the North Island, Si Haishao had been busy eliminating the influence left by the previous Hong Zhong. After holding it in for so long, it was hard for him to restrain his desire. The three of them hit it off and immediately went out together. Although there weren't many female cultivators on the North Island, The place Nantianba and Southern Sky Gate brought Si Haishao to was the largest cultivator village around the three pavilions. The people here were all ordinary people. It was similar to the secular world, with restaurants, brothels, casinos, and other places of entertainment. Cultivators were humans too, with 7 emotions and 6 desires. Apart from cultivating, they still had various needs. When they needed to indulge themselves, they would often come to the cultivator village. Nan Qianba and the South Heaven Gate brothers had long been a frequent visitor here. There was only one common currency in the 5 great heavenly islands, and that was the spiritual jade. Since this was only a village where ordinary people lived, even the best brothel would not be able to afford such a small amount of money to the high and mighty cultivators. With just a few spiritual jades, one could easily play with the most beautiful and skilled female cultivators. Although they were just ordinary women and not superior female cultivators, if the quality wasn't good enough, quantity could make up for it. It was enough for Si Haishao to have fun. While Si Haishao and Nan Tianba were enjoying themselves in the cultivator village, Shanghai Laner, who was now grounded at home by Shanghai Tianhua, finally saw her best friend, Ning Xuefei, who came all the way from West Island. It was rare for the two girls to run into each other. Both of them cheered excitedly, adding a bit of liveliness to the usually tranquil Hualan house. They were also best friends who could talk about anything. Ning Xuefei and Han Jingjing were like-minded because of their similar hobbies, while she and Shengguan Laner were similar because of their similar personalities. Almost everything was a common topic between them. "Come on, little Lan, quickly tell me about the rape. Oh, and about your kidnapping. You didn't explain it clearly in the letter." Ning Xuefei's eyes lit up with excitement. Even though Shengguan Laner was heartless. When he heard this, his face darkened and he said speechlessly, "Fei, you came all the way here just to ask about this. Aren't you here to comfort me?" Sob, I'm so sad." "Aya, of course I'm here to comfort you, little Lan, but it's such a fun thing. As a best friend, don't you want to share it with me? I'm also concerned about you." Ning Xuefei rolled her eyes and quibbled. All right. You always use the excuse of comforting people to rub salt into my wounds. I'm really defeated by you." Shengguan Laner could only surrender helplessly. Although Shengguan Laner deliberately pretended to be depressed, she could no longer hold back her smile after a while. She laughed and played together with Ning Xuefei. Being pestered by Ning Xuefei, Shengguan Laner told her everything that had happened recently in detail. Ning Xuefei was amazed. Shengguan Laner didn't say it in detail in the letter before. Especially when they heard that Little White took a giant scissors and wiped off Su Lingchong's penis, the two girls laughed back and forth, gave a thumbs up, and praised Little Curly Bear for being wise and capable. In the two things that Shengguan Laner had experienced recently, whether it was Su Lingchong's attempted rape or being kidnapped a few days ago, the protagonist was the same person, Lin Yi, in addition to herself. Why does the name Lin Yi sound so familiar? After hearing this, Ning Xuefei couldn't help scratching her head. After thinking hard for a long time, she suddenly patted her head and said, "By the way, I've heard this name long ago when I was in West Island." "Really?" Shengguan Laner couldn't help but be stunned. Although she liked her junior brother very much, Lin Yi was just a newcomer after all. If he was a little famous in the 3 pavilions of the North Island, it was reasonable, but even Ning Xuefei, who was far away in West Island, had heard of him. This was impossible, right? "It's true. I told you in the letter before that I have a good friend from the secular world. Her name is Han Jingjing. She often talks about Lin Yi to me, but whether this Lin Yi is the same person as the Lin Yi you mentioned, I don't know." Ning Xuefei tilted her head and said, "I remember that junior brother is also from the secular world. Is the Lin Yi he mentioned to your friend really the same person?" Shengguan Laner thought about it and suddenly felt that it was very possible. She immediately suggested with great interest, "Why don't we go to ask junior brother now?" Hee, little Lan, aren't you grounded by your grandfather now? How can you go out?" Ning Xuefei said with a smile. "If I am alone, Grandpa will definitely not let me go out. But now you are here, Fei. As the host, I will take you out to play. You will definitely agree," Shengguan Laner said with confidence. She was bored at home these days and wanted to take the opportunity to sneak out to play. "Okay, but before looking for Lin Yi, I want to go to the Hong's Chamber of Commerce first," Ning Xuefei said. "Why do you want to go to the Hong's Chamber of Commerce? To buy something? Didn't you just go to the auction in the far North Island recently?" Shengguan Laner asked curiously. "No, I'm going to the Hong's Chamber of Commerce to find a young man." Ning Xuefei's mouth curved slightly like a kitten. "Looking for a young man?" Shengguan Laner was even more puzzled. She looked at Ning Xuefei up and down and asked curiously, Fei, which young man are you looking for? Why are you looking for him? I won't tell you now. I will tell you when I find him. Ning Shuefei said mysteriously, you will know when the time comes. He has a lot of good things in his hands.